I'm going to start this series off by prefacing that it isn't going to be the most realistic scenario. It was just an idea that was suggested to me, and I thought it was interesting. Anyway, for Chi-Chi to be in a position to become a goddess of destruction, there would have to be many changes to even get her to that point. We know Chi-Chi wanted to be a wife and have a family, but if she ever did, I think that would stop her from wanting to become a goddess. After all, it would make her outlive her entire family, and that'd basically be the exact opposite of her goal. Also, she likely wouldn't be Beerus' first choice to be his successor. We know he had a brief obsession with finding the Super Saiyan God, so his first choice might have been a Saiyan. For her to be chosen, none of the Saiyans could be in a position where they could be chosen. I know that Goku would never want to be a god of destruction, but if he was alive, I don't think Chi-Chi would choose to be one, since that would mean outliving her husband. This would also affect things with other Saiyans such as Broly, Paragus, and Tarbell. I'm getting ahead of myself, as things like that won't come into play until far down the road. I just wanted to mention these things ahead of time to give my thought process behind writing this series. This way it won't be a surprise when I make some choices for the story that I normally wouldn't make. Now, time to get into the story, as we begin in the Emperor Pilaf saga. The first change in this timeline would come after Master Roshi put out the fires on Mount Frypan. This time, Chi-Chi seeing Master Roshi using the Kamehameha to put out the fire at her home inspires her. After Goku mimics the Kamehameha and after Roshi offers to train him, this gives her an idea. She wanted to learn how to protect herself as well, so before he goes to leave, she'd approach him. Back then, Chi-Chi wasn't the brash girl she later became. Instead, she was more on the meek and timid side. So, her approaching him took a lot of courage on her part, and when she first speaks up, her voice likely comes out so quiet that Roshi couldn't hear her. When she realizes he didn't hear her, she repeats herself, but louder this time. Chi-Chi repeats her request for him to train her, as she would say that she wants to learn how to protect herself and her home, so that she wouldn't have to rely on others like they just did with Roshi. Her father might be a bit reluctant to let her go with Roshi, but I don't see him being one to say no to his daughter. Roshi might be reluctant to do so, but then Goku would butt in and say she could tag along with them. After all, he plans to go train with Roshi after his adventure for the Dragon Balls is over, so they could travel together. Chi-Chi would be excited by this prospect, and her being protected by Goku might put the Ox King's mind a little more at ease. He'd relent and allow her to go with Goku on his adventure. Roshi then tells Chi-Chi that if she can handle going on an adventure with Goku, he'll train her, though he also makes Goku promise to take care of her, and he'd enthusiastically agree to do so. Before he does leave, Oolong is still forced to disguise himself as Bulma to fulfill what Goku promised him. Regardless, after Roshi leaves, the others get ready to leave as well. Chi-Chi goes and packs some of her stuff for the trip, so that she can have it when she goes to train with Master Roshi. She then says bye to her father, as she, Goku, Oolong, and Bulma then leave together. They were on their way to search for the last Dragon Ball, and unbeknownst to them, Yamcha and Puar were following them. Regardless, after they arrive in Fungus Town, people still flee once they see Bulma in a rabbit outfit. While Bulma goes shopping for capsules, Chi-Chi goes with her, and Oolong goes to refuel the car, though they all are allowed to get what they wanted without having to pay for it, which confuses them. Eventually, when Bulma goes shopping for clothes, that's when they first hear about the rabbit mob from the shopkeeper. He soon chases them out since he thought Bulma was pretending to be part of the mob, so they return to the others. The rabbit mob soon approaches them and tries to hit on Bulma, so she tells Goku to beat them up. This time, Goku would use the power pole to defeat one of them while Chi-Chi defeats the other with her helmet. They still call for backup, so their boss, Monster Carrot, soon arrives. He turns Bulma into a carrot, and when both Goku and Chi-Chi try to attack him to save Bulma, he threatens to eat her if they get any closer. Since they couldn't get closer, the rabbit mob starts to beat them down. However, Yamcha has Puar turn into a bird and steal the carrot, while he comes in and beats up the rabbit mob. Without Monster Carrot having the carrot anymore, they force him to turn Bulma back to normal. Yamcha leaves after they are defeated and before Chi-Chi has a chance to recognize him. Goku then ties up the rabbit mob and takes him to the moon, where they are made to make mochi. They then leave Fungus Town and head through the Mushroom Forest, but their car is soon destroyed by Shu in his robot suit. He steals the Dragon Balls, so Goku and Chi-Chi chase after him on the Flying Nimbus, but all they find is the empty robot suit. After they return, they still realize they still have one Dragon Ball, Goku's, though they also don't have a car anymore, since Bulma's capsules were stolen as well. Yamcha comes in and offers to give them a ride, but this is when Chi-Chi recognizes him from earlier. She'd question why he left earlier after confessing his love, and she'd ask if he was shy about it. Before he can answer, It likely gets played off in a gag moment where she tries to let him down gently, since Goku promised to marry her. Anyway, they go to Emperor Pilaf's castle together, and they easily get trapped inside of it. Emperor Pilaf still tries to torture Bulma into telling him where the last Dragon Ball is by blowing a kiss, but it's to no avail. So, after sending her back, they knock out the heroes with the gas and then go retrieve the Dragon Ball. As usual, Shenron is summoned, but Goku also manages to blow a hole in the wall with the Kamehameha. This allows Oolong and Puar to transform into bats and escape, as they then fly towards Shenron. Before Emperor Pilaf can make his wish, Oolong runs in and wishes for a pair of panties. The Dragon Balls then scatter, and Emperor Pilaf has the heroes move to a metal room with a glass ceiling. Things didn't go the same with Goku eventually telling the story about Grandpa Gohan and how he told him not to look at the full moon because of the monster that comes out during it. The heroes realize that the monster was actually Goku, so Bulma tells him not to look there, which causes him to look where she pointed. He then transforms into a giant monkey, which would be a bit of a shock to Chi-Chi, since her crush can do this, though she might relax a bit after realizing that he isn't trying to attack the heroes at first. As usual, the Pilaf gang tries escaping in their plane. Yamcha helped the heroes run away, while Goku throws part of the castle at the Pilaf gang's plane, causing them to crash. However, Goku then turned his attention towards the heroes, so Yamcha ends up grabbing his tail when he gets the chance. Since this causes Goku to lose his power, and since he saw Chi-Chi use her helmet earlier to behead the dinosaur, he has her use her helmet to cut off his tail. She is a bit reluctant to do this at first, since it would be hurting her crush, but she eventually does so to protect the others. Goku quickly returns to normal, but since he was now naked, the embarrassed Chi-Chi looked away. They cover him up with a cloth and he sleeps until the next morning. Once he is awake, Oolong gives him his pants to put on. After putting them on, he realizes he lost his balance, and this is when he is told that he lost his tail. Though he quickly gets over it, much to the disbelief of the others. He then asks about his power pole, and after being told that it's likely in the rubble, he and Chi-Chi run off to look for it. While they are looking for it, both Yamcha and Bulma talk about never being able to get their wishes. Though after they heard what each other's wishes were, they decided to become a couple. After Goku and Chi-Chi found his power pole, they return, and Bulma offers them to come to the city with her and Yamcha. She and Goku both turn this down, as they're going to train with Master Roshi. Bulma then offers Oolong to come with them, and he agrees since he has nowhere else to go. Goku then suggests to Bulma that they hunt for the Dragon Balls next year, but she turns this down since she doesn't need them anymore. When he questions how he'd be able to find them without her, she gives him the Dragon Radar. After telling him how to use it, they all say their goodbyes, as Yamcha, Oolong, and Bulma get into her plane, while Goku and Chi-Chi get onto the Flying Nimbus. Before making their way towards Master Roshi's, they go to Goku's house. This way, they can rest up and Goku can pack some of his things for his stay at Master Roshi's. After they are well rested and after he is packed, they get onto the Flying Nimbus and take off towards Master Roshi's house to begin their next adventure. When Goku and Chi-Chi arrive at Kame's house, they find Master Roshi distracted by watching an aerobics video. Goku ends up shouting in his ear to get his attention, but Roshi says to give him a minute. As usual, Goku says he's hungry, so Roshi directs him to his fridge, and he ends up eating everything that was in it, regardless. After Roshi finishes watching his video, he asks them what they're there for, and they say to train. He'd ask about how Chi-Chi handled herself on the adventure with Goku, since doing well in it was his condition for training her. They tell him the truth about how she handled herself well and even managed to take down some of the bad guys, like parts of the rabbit mob. When he expresses surprise at her making it, this might cause Chi-Chi's anger to have a brief outburst, as she'd be angered at him assuming she wouldn't make it. After collecting himself, he agrees to train them, though his first task might not happen. Normally he tasks Goku with finding a hottie, but he might not want to risk seeing another outburst from Chi-Chi. So, at least for now, Launch isn't found by the heroes. Maybe she'll show up again later, if the chance arises. Roshi says he'll start their training the next day, so he lets them rest for the rest of the day. Something I briefly want to talk about is how strong Chi-Chi would be at this point. We're never told how strong she is during the Emperor Pilaf saga, but I've seen people estimate Bulma to have a power level of 4 and Yamcha to have a power level of 9 during that saga. So, I'd estimate Chi-Chi to have a power level of 6, since she's stronger than Bulma but weaker than Yamcha. Now, back to the main story. The next morning, they would get ready to begin their training, but they are interrupted by the arrival of someone. He introduces himself as Krillin, and says that he came here to train with Master Roshi. Since he already has 2 steel students, he was going to turn them down until he bribed them with the dirty magazines. After he agrees to train them, Roshi puts Kame House into a capsule. They then take his boat to a bigger island and Roshi sets up Kame House there. For their training, the first thing they do is test their speed by doing a 100-meter dash. As usual, Goku redoes his dash since his shoes were busted. Regardless, out of the 3 students, Goku ends up being the fastest and Chi-Chi is the slowest. Master Roshi then demonstrates his own speed, and he easily goes faster than all of them. Their next test is to find the rock that Master Roshi wrote the turtle symbol on, and he then throws it off of a cliff. After they begin to chase it, Krillin still trusts Chi by writing on a rock, but Roshi was able to tell it wasn't his handwriting. When Goku and Krillin eventually get into a fight over the rock, Krillin still loses but pretends to throw it. Goku goes to chase it, but Chi-Chi ends up tricking Krillin into giving her the rock. He likely had a bit of an interest in her, since in his eyes, she's a pretty girl. So, she would use this to her advantage and trick him into giving her the rock. She then delivers the rock to Master Roshi, so she gets to have dinner while Krillin and Goku have to go without it. Without Launch being there, they never get sick from eating pufferfish, since it would have been Master Roshi who made the dinner. The next morning, they finally begin their training in the Turtle School way. Nothing about their training would be majorly different than how it is shown in the manga. Throughout their training, Krillin might be more mellow around Chi-Chi, since as I mentioned earlier, in his eyes she's a pretty girl. There might be a bit of a love triangle, with Krillin liking Chi-Chi, with Chi-Chi liking Goku, and with Goku, well, just being Goku. This likely won't last for long, as Chi-Chi would turn him down early on, since Goku already promised to marry her. However, she and Krillin might become closer during this timeline, so they'll be more like actual friends than they were in the actual story. Also, throughout their entire training, whenever they had free time, I could see Goku trying to show Chi-Chi the Kamehameha. She likely would have approached him about it one day, since Roshi wasn't going to show them any moves and she saw him mimic it before. It would likely take a while for her to learn it, but by the time their training with Roshi was over, she would have learned how to do so. Krillin also might have joined in on these side training sessions they had to learn it as well. By the end of their training, Goku's power level normally went from 10 up to 26, and Krillin's went from 8 up to 22. For Chi-Chi, since she had 2 stronger training partners to train alongside, I had her power level triple, so it went from 6 up to 18. Anyway, after their training is done and before they go to the tournament, Master Roshi has them take off their turtle shells to see how high they can jump. He then gets them clothing to dress nice for their arrival, and once they arrive at the tournament grounds, Master Roshi gives them Turtle School uniforms. Once the preliminaries begin, they all fly through their matches with relative ease. Yamcha would still come up to them, so they quickly catch up. After the preliminaries end, outside of the tournament, Bulma, Quar, and Oolong run into Master Roshi. Not long after, Goku, Chi-Chi, and Krillin find them. It's soon announced that the finalists need to draw lots, so they head back inside to do so. For the final tournament, I had Chi-Chi take the spot of Ranfan, as she likely defeated her in the preliminaries. So, after the lots are drawn, the fights would be as follows. Match 1 is Bacterian vs Krillin, Match 2 is Jackie Chun vs Yamcha, Match 3 is Nam vs Chi-Chi, and Match 4 is Goku vs Giran. The first match goes exactly the same as it did in the manga, with Krillin beating Bacterian. Nothing changes about the second match either, so Jackie Chun still beats Yamcha, with the third fight being between Nam and Chi-Chi. This is where the first major changes would happen in the tournament. From power scaling I've seen, Nam was estimated to have a power level of 25, so he would be stronger than Chi-Chi. After they enter the ring, they both likely started off politely by giving a bow. When the fight starts, Chi-Chi's attacks would be aggressive, so her combos put Nam on the defensive. She avoids some of his heavy strikes early on, and even gets a clean throw in at one point. He'd realize her speed, so he changes his tactics and tries to wear her down. He uses his cross-arm dive to try and knock her off balance and put her onto the defensive. She manages to dodge this, but just barely, by rolling out of the way, which impresses Mom. When she tries to close the distance and strike his midsection, he grabs her wrist and sends her flying over his shoulder. She manages to scramble to her feet, and he gives her one last chance to yield. By this point, she'd likely have started to get a bit frustrated with this fight. Her attacks would likely grow sloppier as a result. As she was determined to prove herself, she refuses and charges him, but he sidesteps this and knocks her out of the ring with a heavy blow. After the fight is over, Chi-Chi would be a bit disappointed about losing in the first round. Jackie Chun would approach her after the fight and tell her that she fought well. He would point out how she had spirit, but she also had frustration, which clouds the mind. She'd respond that she thought she was ready, and he points out that she was ready to learn. He'd say that through this fight, she learned what she can and can't do. Before he walks off, he'd advise her not to only focus on striving to get better than Nam, Goku, or anyone else. She should only strive to be better than that girl who stepped into the ring today. He also advises her how to nurture and control that fire she's got inside of her, since it can be useful down the road. After walking off, she then exits the ring, going on to cheer both Krillin and Goku on from the sidelines. The rest of the tournament stays the same with Jackie Chun still winning. He then sneaks off to change out of his disguise. Master Roshi then meets up with the others and congratulates his students on their performance, along with telling them that there will always be someone better out there, and their true training is only just beginning. He then treats them to dinner, and as usual, Goku ate so much that Master Roshi had to spend all of his winnings. While they are leaving, Yamcha asked if they were going to go back to training with Master Roshi. He tells them that they need to go and blaze their own trail, as they need to train by themselves. Goku decides to go search for his grandfather's Dragon Ball. Krillin wasn't sure what he was going to do, so he decides to go and stay with Master Roshi until he can figure it out. As for Chi-Chi, Bulma invites her to come to West City. She can still train while she's there, but they can also go shopping together and just generally have some girls' time together. Since she wants to follow Roshi's advice of blazing her own trail, she agrees to this and decides to go with Bulma. Goku then gets out of the car and gets on the flying Nimbus as everyone else says goodbye to him, while the rest of the heroes are making their way back in the car. It's revealed Bulma lost the capsule with the airplane in it. Yamcha's car also ran out of gas, so they're all having issues on their return home. They do eventually make it, though, and Bulma introduces Chi-Chi to her parents at Capsule Corporation. Her parents allow her to stay there, so that's what she does for the time being. The beginning parts of the Red Ribbon Army saga would go the same as usual, up until Goku comes to Capsule Corporation looking for Bulma. Before I get into what Goku does once he arrives at West City, I'm going to talk about Chi-Chi's time there with Bulma. As promised, Bulma would take her on shopping trips to various stores around the city. These are relatively uneventful trips, except for one day. While they're going through the city one day, they notice a commotion happening at the bank. When they approach, it's revealed that it's being robbed by none other than Launch. Since there are likely innocent people in the bank, I think Chi-Chi would step up to take on the robber before she can flee. Launch wouldn't stand any chance against her, so after being knocked out by the young girl, she is delivered to the nearby police. The rest of their trip, and her time in West City, is mostly uneventful. She likely trains every day, perhaps at an indoor gym at Capsule Corporation. Regardless, one day after she and Chi-Chi get back to Capsule Corporation, they see Goku waiting outside with the police officer that's shown him the way there. Chi-Chi would be happy to see him, so she'd likely embrace him with a hug before he explains why he's there. After Bulma fixes the radar, she decides to come with Goku, and Chi-Chi does as well. Before they leave, Bulma shows them the micro watch she invented, which allows her to shrink down so they can carry her while they're on the flying Nimbus. Though she also grabs her father's capsule case instead of hers, but she doesn't realize it. They soon arrive near where the next Dragon Ball is, but since it seems to be in the ocean, she tries to use her capsules. This is when she realizes it's her father's, and they're full of his dirty magazines. So Chi-Chi and Bulma land on the island while Goku goes into the water to look for it. Bulma still ends up being attacked by some Red Ribbon Army soldiers, but Chi-Chi is able to protect her instead of her needing to call for Goku. They then realize that Kame House is nearby, so they go to see Master Roshi and ask if he has an underwater vehicle. Since Launch doesn't live with him, she wouldn't want the micro watch and trade for it. Instead, she gives him her father's capsules with the dirty magazines in it as a trade. Before they leave, they briefly talk to Krillin and explain why they're there. He asks them if they're going to search for the pirate treasure while they're in that area, as he has Master Roshi explain the legend of it. Krillin asks Master Roshi if he can go with them, and he agrees. They didn't leave, but while they're on their way towards the Dragon Ball, Bulma realizes she left her backpack with the other Dragon Balls in it back at Kame House. After they dive underwater, they enter a trench, but General Blue follows them in his submarine. Back at Kame House, Captain Dark and his men land there, but they are quickly confronted by Master Roshi. The old master easily defeats them all, and he has the only soldier he didn't knock out take all of the Red Ribbon Army's aircraft off of his island. Back with Bulma and the others, they soon arrive in the cave inside of the trench. They are able to make their way through the booby-trapped cave with relative ease. As for General Blue's men, they're all killed when they try to go through the trap. The heroes still get into a fight with the pirate robot, so Goku and Chi-Chi stay back to hold it off while Krillin and Bulma escape. While they're escaping, they try to leave an arrow to show Goku and Chi-Chi the right way to go, but General Blue changed it to point the wrong way. After defeating the pirate robot, because they followed the wrong directions, they get grabbed by a giant octopus which they defeat with their Kamehamehas. Bulma and Krillin find the treasure chest, but General Blue confronts them and easily beats up Krillin after using his telekinesis. Goku and Chi-Chi soon arrive, and Goku begins to beat down General Blue. However, when he uses his telekinesis on Goku to hold him in place, Chi-Chi is able to knock him away, causing him to lose his focus. Together they'd knock him out, but with the two of them having knocked him out, he's likely unconscious for longer than usual. Goku, Chi-Chi, Krillin, and Bulma then escape the collapsing cave together, leaving General Blue in there. With him being unconscious for longer than usual, he is likely trapped in the cave and dies in there. Once they're out of the cave, Bulma reveals she took a diamond and Goku reveals that he found a Dragon Ball. It then go back to Kame House, and Bulma gives a diamond to Master Roshi to pay for his lost underwater vehicle. Without Launch being there in this timeline, Master Roshi actually gets to keep it. Also, with General Blue being dead, the entire part of going to Penguin Village is skipped. As Goku prepares to leave, Bulma and Krillin both decide to stop traveling with him, but Chi-Chi decides to tag along. So, they both leave on the Flying Nimbus in search of the next Dragon Ball. They'd arrive at the sacred land of Korin earlier than usual, so they're already there by the time Captain Yellow arrives to attack Bora's tribe for the Dragon Ball. Together with Bora, they help fend off the Red Ribbon Army. After they defeat them, Goku gets the Dragon Ball from Bora, which turns out to be the 4-star ball. Meanwhile, back at the Red Ribbon Army headquarters, Commander Red still hires mercenary Tao to kill Goku and Chi-Chi, along with hiring him to get the Dragon Balls. Though with General Blue being dead, he can never arrive to give them the Dragon Radar, and mercenary Tao never has to kill him. He soon takes a pillar from the building and throws it, as he then rides on it towards the sacred land of Korin. Back with Bora, he explains to Goku and Chi-Chi what Korin's tower is. They are soon interrupted by the arrival of mercenary Tao, and when Bora tries to attack him, he kills Bora. Goku and Chi-Chi would both try to attack Tao, but they wouldn't stand a chance. This is where I was torn on what to do next, since Goku normally survived just because he was holding a Dragon Ball. In this timeline, it wasn't likely for both of them to be holding a Dragon Ball, so both of them wouldn't survive. I was only torn on what to do next since Chi-Chi is supposed to be the main character of this timeline, but it was also hard to see her being the one to survive instead of Goku. In the end, I decided on having Chi-Chi being the one to survive, mainly because I think this could be the start of things that might spark the desire for her to get stronger. So, I'm going to say that when Goku found the 4-star Dragon Ball, Chi-Chi offered to carry it for him, since he was carrying the other 3 that they already found. Anyway, during their fight with mercenary Tao, Goku is still hit with the Dodon Ray, but this time it actually kills him. As for Chi-Chi, she would be enraged by this and try attacking Tao in a desperate onslaught, though he uses the Dodon Ray against her as well, seemingly killing her. Tao then picks up Goku's bag that contained the Dragon Balls, but before he can leave, Appa tries throwing a rock at him. Tao sends this flying back at Appa, but he spares him as he then leaves on the pillar he came in on. Before returning to the Red Ribbon Army's headquarters, he goes and gets a new outfit made since Goku destroyed his. Now this is also when Tao calls Commander Red and informs him that he'll return in 3 days, but Commander Red also tells him that he is missing one of the Dragon Balls, so Tao promises to retrieve it before he returns. Back with Appa, he buries Bora and Goku, but when he tries to dig a grave for Chi-Chi, she starts to wake up. It's revealed that she survived only because of the Dragon Ball, but unlike Goku who was still his happy-go-lucky self, Chi-Chi would be feeling a lot different. She would be feeling guilty over her surviving just because she held Goku's Dragon Ball for him, rage because of Tao killing someone she cared for in front of her, and a drive to get stronger as she doesn't want to be that powerless again. Not only does she vow to revive Bora and Goku, but she also vows to defeat Tao and the Red Ribbon Army. Just like Goku did, she begins to climb Korin's tower. It might be harder for her to do since she wasn't as strong as Goku, but with her drive to get stronger and avenge Goku, she would be able to do so. Just like Goku did, after meeting Korin, she trains with him to try and get the sacred water. Even though she's slightly weaker than Goku was, I think she could achieve this goal in 3 days because of her determination to avenge Goku. As usual, it ends up just being regular water, as Korin reveals that it was climbing the tower and trying to get the water that made her stronger. Because of her drive to avenge Goku, I gave her a higher power boost than the one he received since I think she would have been training even harder than he did. Though I also had to give her a higher boost so that she would realistically be able to defeat Tao. Goku's power level normally went from 26 up to 126. But with the boost I gave Chi-Chi, her power level went up from 18 to 123. After she finishes training, she begins her descent from the tower. Mercenary Tao still arrives and Appa tries to attack him. Chi-Chi should theoretically be able to call for the Flying Nimbus, so she's able to save Appa just like Goku did. with her being more driven here. In her fight with Tao, she likely kills him with a Kamehameha instead of him being seemingly defeated by his own grenade. After all, I don't think Chi-Chi would be holding back against the person that killed Goku. The rest of the saga goes mostly the same, but when Chi-Chi was using the Flying Nimbus to get to their headquarters, Bulma would still use her drone to see what they're doing. The heroes would be confused about where Goku was, as they didn't know he died. Yamcha, Master Roshi, Krillin, Oolong, War, Bulma, and even Turtle all get into a plane and take off to help her in her fight against the Red Ribbon Army. Before they even get the chance to help, Chi-Chi takes down the Red Ribbon Army in the same way Goku did. And as she's leaving on the Flying Nimbus, she spots the heroes and lands to talk to them. While talking with them, she reveals she defeated the Red Ribbon Army, which surprises them. And she also mentions how she climbed Korin's tower, which shocks Master Roshi as well. And she also reveals Goku was killed by mercenary Tao. They would obviously be saddened. After saying she can't find the last Dragon Ball, Bulma has them all return to Kame House and she can't fix the radar here. Once they arrive and Bulma begins to work on it, she quickly realizes that nothing in it is broken. So, she speculates that maybe something swallowed the Dragon Ball, since that would block the radar from being able to find it. This is when Master Roshi speaks up, as he tells them that they might be able to find it by going to see Fortuneteller Baba at her palace. After Master Roshi uses a map to show them where she is located, they get ready to leave. Chi-Chi, Krillin, Yamcha, and Puar get into the plane and take off towards Fortuneteller Baba's palace. Before going to Fortuneteller Baba's, Yamcha stops at a tailor to get new clothes for Chi-Chi since hers were ruined in the fight with mercenary Tao. While they wait, she uses the Flying Nimbus to go tell Appa about what they're doing, and he joins her as she goes back to the others. Regardless, after arriving at Fortuneteller Baba's palace, and after they are brought to her, she tries to charge them 10 million zeni to help them find the Dragon Ball. They don't have that much money, so she leads them to the arena as she tells them that they'll have to fight her 5 fighters. Then, Hora and Appa still try to sit it out at first, so it's just Chi-Chi, Krillin, and Yamcha who initially agree to fight her fighters. At first, things generally stay the same, as Krillin still loses after getting his blood sucked by Fangs the Vampire. The heroes then ask if Puar and Appa can participate and fight together, which Baba allows them to do. They still win, and Yamcha tells them to rest, as he steps into the ring. Yamcha still fights against See-Through the Invisible Man, and by following Krillin's plan and bringing Bulma and Master Roshi there, he is able to win. However, when it gets to fighting Bandages the Mummy, Yamcha loses against him. As for Chi-Chi fighting Bandages the Mummy, she easily defeats him in one hit just like Goku did. When she fights Spike the Devilman, the Devilite Beam wouldn't work against her either, so he is defeated by her as well. The biggest changes come when Fortuneteller Baba's last fighter steps out. Normally this fighter was Grandpa Gohan, and after he surrendered, it was revealed that Fortuneteller Baba brought him back to Earth that day because she foresaw Goku coming that day. In this timeline, without Goku being able to come there, she likely would have foresaw Chi-Chi coming instead. So, I had an idea for who this last fighter could be, even though we don't know a lot about them. The idea I had about who could be Baba's last fighter was Chi-Chi's mother. We don't know a lot about her except that she died from an illness the same year that Chi-Chi was born. If including filler episodes from the anime, we saw a picture of her, and in it she is wearing a similar outfit as the one Chi-Chi wore during the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament. That's what gave me the idea that she could have been a fighter, and I even came up with a potential name for her so I didn't have to keep referring to her as Chi-Chi's mother. Chi-Chi's name comes from the Japanese word meaning milk or breast. For her mother, I chose the name Miruku, since it's another Japanese word for milk. While I don't have art for her mother, I think she would be wearing a mask like how Grandpa Gohan was, but hers might look more like an ox as a reference to her being the Ox Queen. Anyway, when she comes out, Chi-Chi wouldn't recognize her at all. She likely wouldn't seem familiar to her like how Grandpa Gohan did to Goku. Regardless, at Miruku's request, they make their way to the arena outside for their fight. With having never seen Chi-Chi's mother in canon, we don't know how strong she is. Personally, I assume that if she was a fighter, she likely would have been strong enough to impress the Ox King. So, like how Grandpa Gohan was stronger than Goku during their fight, I'm going to say that Miruku is stronger than Chi-Chi. When their fight begins, both of them are restrained at first. Miruku is calm and composed as she uses more traditional moves, while Chi-Chi is being defensive in an attempt to read her unfamiliar fighting style. With Chi-Chi somewhat fighting in the Turtle School style, Miruku would begin predicting her moves early on. After all, she likely fought with the Ox King before, and he probably used the Turtle School style in the past. Without Chi-Chi recognizing her more traditional fighting style, she would likely struggle with countering them at first. Chi-Chi eventually starts going all out, but Miruku holds her own with her techniques and counters. She likely becomes frustrated not being able to land a hit, which causes her to fight sloppier. So Miruku uses a punishing strike that knocks her back. It isn't likely that Master Roshi would have known who Chi-Chi's mother was like how he knew Grandpa Gohan. so no one ends up recognizing her yet. Regardless, Chi-Chi eventually uses a desperate blast of ki to create an opening. This explosion of energy from the young girl briefly catches Fortuneteller Baba's attention. Before Chi-Chi can land another hit, Miruku speaks up. She tells her it's been enough and she saw everything that she wanted to see, so she bows and stops fighting. After she stops fighting, she hops out of the ring, surrendering. Chi-Chi was confused by this, as she knew this woman easily could have won. So, she approaches her and asks why she didn't try to win. Miruku then takes off her mask, revealing her face and tear-filled eyes, as she says that she didn't come here to win. She came here to see how far her daughter has come. Chi-Chi freezes after hearing this and seeing her face. While she wouldn't have been old enough to remember her, she recognizes her face from the paintings of her that were hanging in her house. In disbelief, Chi-Chi asks if this is really her mom, and Miruku confirms it. Chi-Chi would likely begin to cry at this point, as she'd run forward and tackle her mother into a hug. While they are having their heartfelt reunion, she would notice Chi-Chi's confusion, and she would explain about how Fortuneteller Baba is able to bring the dead back for a day. After hearing this, Bulma would ask if it was a coincidence that Miruku was here this day, and Master Roshi would explain that his sister could see the future, so she knew they were coming today. Regardless, after she and her mother talk for a while, it's eventually time for Miruku to go back to Otherworld. Fortuneteller Baba then reveals the location of the last Dragon Ball. Chi-Chi uses the flying Nimbus to go to its location, and after running into the Pilaf gang, she'd easily defeat them. Now that she got the last Dragon Ball from them, she returns to the heroes of Fortuneteller Baba's palace. She then gets Upa and takes them to the sacred land of Korin. Once they arrive, they summon Shenron, and instead of just wishing for Bora to be revived as usual, they word the wish as wanting the good people killed by the Red Ribbon Army and Mercenary Tao to be revived. Upa has a tear-filled reunion with Bora while Chi-Chi has one with Goku. After Shenron leaves, Goku grabs the 4-star Dragon Ball before it can shoot off. Chi-Chi and Goku then go to Fortuneteller Baba's palace, and on the way there, Chi-Chi fills him in on everything. Goku also talks about his time in Otherworld, and how he got to see his deceased grandfather there. Once they arrive, they discuss what they're going to do next, and Yamcha reveals he is going to train under Master Roshi. Goku thought this meant they were all going to be training together, but Roshi suggests him to go run around the world until the next World Martial Arts Tournament. This is also when he tells him that the next tournament is 3 years from now. Goku and Chi-Chi agree to this, but before they leave, Fortuneteller Baba pulls Chi-Chi to the side. I'm going to take a little bit of inspiration from Moscow X's series about Chi-Chi being a Z-fighter, as in that series she learned how to use magic. In this timeline, I think magic could be of use to her, and it could also be a good stepping stone into helping her learn more about the divine energies of the world. So, I'm going to try my best to go my own way with her magic so that it doesn't seem too similar to that series. Also, we don't know a lot about how magic works in Dragon Ball, so a lot of it is left up to interpretation. So, after pulling Chi-Chi to the side, Fortuneteller Baba offers to teach her how to use magic. She would mention how she noticed a latent power hidden inside of her during her outburst of energy, and that learning magic could help draw it out. Not only that, but with the use of magic, she can tap into outside forces and amplify how much power she can use. This would appeal to Chi-Chi, especially after Goku's earlier death since she vowed to never be that powerless again. She also wanted to try and forge her own path like Master Roshi suggested them to, and this would be the perfect opportunity for her to do so. She briefly thinks over this offer, but she soon accepts, so she goes to tell Goku and the others that she will be training here instead. She'd also recommend for Goku to go and train with Korin if he gets a chance. Goku prepares to leave on the flying Nimbus, but Master Roshi stops him and suggests that he go around the world without it since he would get more training that way. Once he leaves, Baba whispers to Roshi, asking if the Master should practice what he preaches. So, Krillin, Yamcha, Bulma, and Puar are all roped into running with Master Roshi back to Kame House. Now that they are gone, Fortuneteller Baba tells Chi-Chi to rest up, as her training in the arcane arts starts bright and early the next morning. Though she also brings up the matter of the payment for her training, since Baba likely wouldn't do this for free. They did end up with the Ox King having to send the money to Fortuneteller Baba, and after she receives it, Chi-Chi officially becomes her student. She heads inside, and after she is shown to the bedroom she'll be staying in, she goes to sleep for the night. Magic in Dragon Ball is a bit more complicated than just ki, as we don't fully know how it works in this world. We know that it can be used for things such as healing, conjuration, transmutation, or sealing. It can even be used to replicate techniques that normally use ki. There are also times where it can be used to manipulate energy, like how Moro drained energy from his surroundings to redirect it into his attacks. My point is that when it comes to Chi-Chi learning how to use it, a lot of it is up to my own interpretation, since besides those ways it can be used above, we don't know a lot about how it works. Based on how Moro took energy from his surroundings for his attacks, I think that could be one of the major differences between ki and magic in this story. Instead of relying on the energy inside of your own body to use ki, magic needs to tap into energy centers outside of your body. Anyway, When her training with Fortuneteller Baba begins, she has to start with the basics. She is so used to using the energy from within her that she needs to get used to identifying the external energy flowing in the world around her. This would likely be the longest stage of the training for Chi-Chi, as she would fail miserably at first. She would continue to fall into the old habit of trying to apply the logic of using ki to magic, and it just doesn't work. One potential exercise for her would be to sit in a dark room blindfolded and try to identify the external energy sources around her. This way, she actually has to slow down and listen instead of just projecting. Another exercise would involve Baba taking her to various places around the earth that have natural sources of power, like standing stones, sacred springs, and old forests. While there, she would have to meditate so that she could get a better feel of these sources of power. Also, this sort of gives her the chance to travel the world and experience other things like Goku is currently doing. Her last major exercise would kind of be a test to see if she's ready to move on to the next stage of her training. Baba sets a candle down in front of her and tells her to light it without using ki, so she can only light it by making a spark from the ambient energy. The main lesson in this stage, besides that magic comes from the world around her, would be that the more she tries to force using magic, the less it'll listen to her. Now that she's learned how to sense external energy, Baba begins teaching her different ways to interact with it. So, the main lesson of this stage would be for her to learn how to guide magic in different ways. One such exercise would be for her to use either dowsing or runes to find buried objects, so she can't use her ki or logic to find it. Instead, she has to rely on external cues and her intuition. When it comes to learning about dowsing, Baba hides a magical object underground in a garden and also has decoys buried in it. Chi-Chi is then given dowsing rods, and she has to use them to find the hidden object. To do this, she would have to calm her mind and walk slowly, letting the dowsing rods guide her. If she tries to force it or guess logically, it wouldn't work. And if she ever tried to use ki, Baba would scold her and make her start again after she moves where the object is hidden. When she finally clears her mind and lets the dowsing rods work without trying to direct them, they lead the way to the hidden magic object. As for the runes, Baba gives her a small bag of wooden runes carved with magical glyphs. She then teaches her a chant that is used to wake the runes before a reading. Once again, she hides an item for Chi-Chi to find and tells her to use the runes to find it. When she tosses the runes, they scatter, with some of them glowing faintly. Through this exercise, she has to learn how to read the patterns they fall into, as they are sort of like a coded map. When she eventually learns how to read the runes and their patterns, she finds the hidden object. After this, her next exercise would be to learn how to bind basic spells to objects, like a paper talisman. One of the basic spells she learned is a fireproof charm, and Baba shows her how to put it into the talisman by meditating and chanting over it. When she successfully does so, Baba tests her by lighting her sleeve on fire. Chi-Chi uses the talisman on this small fire, and it is snuffed out on contact with it. She also learns how to make other talismans that utilize different spells, such as a binding talisman, which can paralyze someone for 5 seconds, a tracking talisman, which sticks to his target and glows when she is within 10 meters of them, and a silencing talisman, which when pressed on someone, they can't speak for a minute. But that last one is likely demonstrated in a comedic moment, as Baba places it on Chi-Chi when she was annoyed with her. Anyway, her last exercise for this stage is to learn how her emotions affect her magic in the world around her, both for better or worse. This is to show that magic doesn't just respond to her intention, but it amplifies her emotion. So she needs to learn how to notice her internal state and how it affects the world around her. For example, when angry, her hair might flicker like it's blowing in the wind, fires can surge and candles can burst into flames, and her spells can grow out of control unless she centers herself. When saddened, her magic might dim or falter entirely, her talismans can fail to activate, and her force will waver. Then when she is focused or confident, her magic is clean, controlled, and elegant. Her talismans will activate faster and grow brighter, and she can do more advanced tricks like move a floating orb of fire through a moving maze with her finger. That's just some examples, though, as there's plenty more emotions that could affect her magic. I'd be here all day if I tried to list out all of them and their effects. Before moving on to the next stage, Baba tests her again by provoking her. She mentions the time Tao killed Goku to anger her. This is when we'd get the first hint that Chi-Chi's magic is more inclined towards destructive things like fire, hinting at the rage within her. She lashes out, and her magic, which is now swirled with bits of fire, burns a nearby tree. Baba doesn't scold her, but advises her that she isn't ready to learn how to use fire magic yet. What she just showcased was powerful, but she wasn't in control. When she can learn how to control her rage to the point that she can choose not to recklessly burn things, she'll be ready to learn fire magic. The next stage of her training isn't marked by specific exercises, but when a breakthrough happens. One day, while she was meditating and continuing to train to tap into external sources of power, Chi-Chi sees what looks like a flickering flame out of the corner of her eye. As it gets closer, she realizes that it looks like a phoenix chick that just hopped out of a pile of ash. No matter where she goes, She notices it following her. So, she goes and asks Baba about this, and she explains it to her. This isn't just a creature, it's her familiar, and it's a mirror of her will, her inner fire now seen. While it doesn't fight or speak, it serves as a guide for her magical growth from this point on. Not only is this a symbolic rite, but it is also a transition point in her training, as her familiar represents her connection to the element she subconsciously aligns with. Fire. Baba points out that not many reach this path in their training, so it can symbolize that great things await her in the future, such as divinity. I didn't originally plan to name her familiar, but I changed my mind. The name I decided on for her is Hochoko, which I came up with from the Japanese word for hot chocolate. I used hot chocolate as the basis for her name as a reference to Chi-Chi's name being based on milk, since hot chocolate traditionally uses milk in it, and because the hot part can tie to Chi-Chi's use of fire magic. I also thought it was fitting for something like a phoenix, since when hot chocolate was originally made by the Mayans and Aztecs, it used chili peppers in it. Before moving on to the next part of her training, I briefly wanted to discuss why I chose the phoenix for her familiar. The phoenix is said to represent things like renewal, rebirth, hope, and triumph over adversity. I thought this was fitting for Chi-Chi in this timeline, since a human going on to become the goddess of destruction would be a huge triumph over adversity. Also, it can somewhat tie into rebirth, since the general personality of a destroyer doesn't completely fit with Chi-Chi's original motherly side and ambitions. So, she'd have to go through some change, or rebirth, to better align with those goals. I also chose the phoenix because there are some ties between phoenixes, or phoenix-like creatures, and different religions. For example, Bennu, which is an ancient Egyptian deity linked with the sun. Creation and rebirth may have been the inspiration for the Greek phoenix. Lastly, I also thought they were fitting with the theme of the goddess of destruction in general. A phoenix ties into what Beerus said about destruction coming before creation. Before a phoenix is reborn from their own ashes, they die in a burst of flames. With that out of the way, I can move on to the next stage in Chi-Chi's training, which is when Baba finally begins to teach her about fire magic. While Baba doesn't use it much herself, she still knows enough to help guide Chi-Chi through this training. We don't know this for sure. I think it'd be likely that Baba knows other witches as well, so she could bring in others more well-versed to fire magic to help train Chi-Chi. As a brief side note, I took inspiration for her fire magic from firebending in Avatar: The Last Airbender. In that series, firebending is described as being driven by the breath, but emotionally, it's about desire and willpower, which I think fits well with Chi-Chi's battle between wrath and control. Also, throughout her training with fire magic, Hochoko will appear around her, occasionally sitting on her shoulder or just wandering around her. She will also appear around her even when she isn't training, such as in fights when she uses her magic. Anyway, the first stage of her fire magic training would be all about drawing energy from the world and channeling this raw magical energy into sparks. It also involves learning about fire as an extension of her emotions and will. Baba makes a circle out of charcoal around Chi-Chi and places a dry oak leaf in the center of it. She also sprinkles some crushed red herbs and ground cinnamon around the leaf for scent activation. Her task is to ignite the leaf without touching it, so she can only ignite it by channeling the flames into her hands and by projecting her intent through her breath and focus. This exercise is also to help Chi-Chi learn how to balance her emotions, since if she focuses too much, nothing happens, but if she lets her emotions spiral, the flames backfire. So, it's highly likely that there's many times she gets burnt early on, but Baba would be able to help heal her. For her next exercise, Baba hangs dozens of wax-drenched cords around the room, but only one of them has been enchanted to ignite. Chi-Chi must use her magic to sense how a cord wants to be lit and then catch it on fire. This is to teach her that fire isn't always about brute strength. It can also be about resonance, and that some things are meant to burn. Then for the last exercise of this stage, Baba places flat stones along a hallway. Each stone has been enchanted so that they will only ignite if a certain emotion is sensed. This is to teach Chi-Chi how to use her different emotions to channel flames, not just her rage. She needs to walk barefoot across the stones, and ignite the correct stones when she feels the emotion that is tied to them. Baba would likely be there to help guide her into feeling these emotions. For example, when it comes to grief, she could bring up something like Goku's death in an attempt to stoke the feeling of grief. Now that she can ignite flames, the next stage of her training is to learn how to control it. Baba sets up a circle of many paper flowers around the candle for the first exercise of this stage. Chi-Chi has to light the candle from a distance without igniting a single flower, though she is also further hindered by only being able to use 2 fingers to direct the flame, and she has to stay outside the circle of paper flowers. This is to further teach her control, as a poorly shaped flame can easily hurt the innocent in a fight. To continue teaching her control, the next exercise begins when Baba summons a large, floating mirror. Chi-Chi must use both of her hands to project fire and trace magical sigils on the mirror's surface. The mirror can reflect her fire, so if her emotions run wild, it will bounce the flame back at her. For the last exercise of this stage, the training ground is covered in damp soil and tiles soaked in oil. She must use flame pulses under her feet to dash from stone to stone without slipping or burning the terrain. This is essentially to teach her about how she can use fire to enhance her mobility. Finally, the last stage of her training about fire magic involves different ways to utilize it. For the first exercise, Baba fires magical darts that are infused with a different emotional frequency at Chi-Chi. If any of them hit her, she will feel that emotion, so she'll have to continue to learn how to control them. Her challenge here is to create a flame aura around herself, not to destroy the darts, but to deflect them. Before getting into the last exercise, I briefly want to mention that in between her training with magic, Chi-Chi would have continued to practice her martial arts. Which, the next stage of her training ties into this, as Baba enchants a training dummy to randomly attack with fists or ki blasts. The goal is for Chi-Chi to learn to imbue her martial arts with both regular magic and fire magic, so that she can use both in tandem. Baba got this idea from noticing Chi-Chi continuing to train her martial arts skills in her free time. Anyway, after this exercise, Baba has one final trial for her before she can pass her training. Before getting into this trial, there's something I briefly want to mention. By now, Chi-Chi would be 16 years old, since that is the same age Bulma was at the start of Dragon Ball, and since Chi-Chi is also a human like Bulma, she is no longer the size of a child. With that out of the way, Baba then sets up a trial in the forest that is full of spiritual energy. She then sends Chi-Chi in alone, as she tasks her to defeat the beast there. This ends up being a massive, fiery bird, but Chi-Chi still prepares to fight her. During their fight, she prepares to destroy her, but before she can, she notices something. The eyes for this bird are the same as Hochoko's. She hesitates and embraces her, but the flames don't harm her. Instead, she merges with her, and she would feel a surge of power from this, but I'll explain more about that later. Regardless, after they separate is when Baba reappears. She explains that she momentarily enhanced Hochoko to test her, and she passed. When looking at Hochoko, Chi-Chi realizes that she seems bigger now, as her wings have started to grow. She also burns hotter now and leaves a trail of embers in her wake. With this trial now passed, they return to her palace, as she congratulates Chi-Chi on finishing her training in magic, though she would also tell her that she has just barely scratched the surface, as there are plenty of things she can still learn about magic. Regardless, this would be around the time the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament is set to begin. So, after thanking Baba for training her, she begins to make her way to Papaya Island to meet up with the other heroes. Now that 3 years have passed after the last tournament, Master Roshi, Krillin, Yamcha, Bulma, War, and Oolong all catch a plane to the tournament grounds. Chi-Chi likely would have arrived around the same time as them, so she catches up with the others. While they're waiting for Goku to arrive, Roshi still secretly registers himself for the tournament as Jackie Chun. Regardless, Master Shen still comes over and briefly taunts Master Roshi. After he and his students walk away, Goku arrives and catches up with the others as well. Before getting into the preliminaries, I'm going to briefly talk about how strong Goku and Chi-Chi are. While Goku did die and missed out on training with Korin after he was resurrected, I think he would have trained with Korin like Chi-Chi recommended him to. So, after training with Korin and then running around the world, he'd be roughly as strong as he usually was at this time. As for Chi-Chi, since she was still training in martial arts alongside her training in magic, I gave her a slightly higher boost than what Goku got. This would bring her power level up to 184, which isn't far from Goku's power level of 180. When the preliminaries begin, all of the heroes make it through them. As for Chi-Chi, her final fight in the preliminaries would be against Pomput. Just like when Goku fought him, she easily defeats him with a flurry of attacks. Then when they draw lots for the tournament, Jan still has Shatsu rig the drawing. The matches are mostly the same as usual, except Chi-Chi is taking the place of Pomput, so the last match of the first round is between Chi-Chi and Goku. This means that nothing changes in the tournament up until their fight, as they then enter the ring together, and before they start the fight, they briefly bow to one another. Chi-Chi starts by rushing at Goku with a flurry of attacks, but with them being so close in power, they both land good hits. However, Goku was blocking slightly more of her hits at first. She would realize this early on, but she wouldn't panic. Instead, she decides to finally reveal what she has been training for over the past 3 years, as she begins to use her magic. Her hands start to faintly glow red as sparks flicker in her palms. With a quick sweep of her arm, she causes these sparks to scatter around Goku like fireflies. She doesn't stop there, as she then causes the sparks to flare up, so Goku jumps back to pat out the sparks on his gi. While he would realize this isn't ki, he wouldn't have any real way to counter her magic. It's at this time that Master Roshi realizes his sister taught her magic, as he sees her in the stands mocking him and cheering for Chi-Chi. Regardless, Goku lunges forward to try and pressure Chi-Chi before she can cast a spell again. This time, when she stomps forward, she causes flames to burst beneath her feet. When she goes forward, this closes the distance between them, as she then lands a fiery palm against his chest. He skids backwards, briefly coughing from the smoke of his now singed clothing. He gets serious and unleashes his own flurry of rapid strikes, forcing her to block desperately, which almost overwhelms her. However, just like Fortuneteller Baba taught her to do, she centers her emotions to get control of herself. She then exhales and unleashes a stream of fire outwards towards Goku, which forces him to leap high into the air. In a move that surprises Goku, she manages to control the stream of fire while it's in the air, thus causing it to change his path towards him. At the last moment, he just barely manages to dodge it, and in a similar moment to Nam from the previous tournament, he tries to dive at her with a finishing blow. Chi-Chi plants her stance and uses her flames to make a barrier, and when his fist connects with it, the burst of flames forces him off balance. Now that she has an opening, she imbues her next attack with her flames, as she then knocks Goku out of the ring with a fiery roundhouse kick. He would be singed in days from this, but after he gets up, he would congratulate Chi-Chi on the amazing fight. As Jackie Chun was spectating the fight, he would be a bit surprised to see that Chi-Chi had managed to utilize magic alongside her martial arts. However, he would also be proud that his former student started to go down her own route like he suggested her to. Regardless, for the next round, this means that Chi-Chi's fight will be against Krillin. Things stay the same up until it's time for their fight, before the next match begins. Goku tries to give Krillin a heads up about it being tough to handle Chi-Chi's magic. Once Krillin and Chi-Chi enter the ring, they bow to each other, but they then agree not to hold back against each other, which, the estimate I've seen for Krillin's power level at this time was 113, so Chi-Chi is stronger than him. At first, they rush each other as they begin to trade blows. To try and get the advantage, Krillin tries fainting low, sweeping her legs, and then jumping up to use a downward kick. She just barely manages to roll away, avoiding being pinned, but he then tries throwing a barrage of ki blast to conceal himself for a sneak attack. However, she uses the barrier of her flames, so when his blasts hit it, they burst into harmless puffs of smoke. Krillin still keeps dashing in and out, which forces her to expend energy defending. Eventually, he even manages to land a clean punch on her cheek, but she steadies herself. Just like she did against Goku, she uses a flaming kick. He manages to block it, but the heat of the kick forces him back. When he charges back in, she secretly makes a barrier of sparks around the arena's edge. He doesn't notice this at first, so when he tries to push her out of bounds, he is caught off guard by the sparks flaring up. Since this cut off his path and boxed him in, Chi-Chi rushes forward and lands a heated strike to his chest. Krillin makes a gamble of trying to leap into the air and using a diving kick to catch her off guard, even though he saw that leaping up like this didn't work for Goku. She ignites flames beneath her feet and launches herself upwards to meet him mid-air. After encasing her fist in flames, their blows collide, but in an explosion of heat, he is thrown downwards. He lands hard inside of the ring, forcing the announcer to begin the count, but he doesn't get back up in time. She helps him up and they congratulate each other. But Krillin also mentions that Goku wasn't kidding about it being tough to fight her. Anyway, this means that the final match is between Chi-Chi and Tien, and once they enter the ring, she tries to be respectful by bowing, but Tien doesn't return the courtesy. Instead, he taunts her by saying that her magic tricks won't save her. She just smirks and gets into her fighting stance as she begins to charge her fire magic in her hands. They quickly begin to clash in a flurry of blows, but with the added perception of his third eye, Tien was dominating these close-range exchanges. They're also close in both speed and power, so she can't rely on being able to overpower him like she could against Krillin. She eventually recovers from one of his hits and backflips away, as sparks ignite between her hands. Then she causes fire to whip outwards towards him, but he leaps backwards. Tien eventually grabs her, and just like he did against Goku, he uses his volleyball play. After spiking her towards the ground, she uses her flames to cushion her fall. As she then rolls to her feet, they begin to trade blows again, but when Tien uses the solar flare, she is blinded. However, she manages to put up a barrier of flames between herself and Tien at the last second, so when he tried to rush in, his hands were burnt against the barrier. As usual, Master Shen has Shatsu intervene by using his telekinesis on Chi-Chi, which allows Tien to beat her down at first. However, Tien and Shatsu both start to disobey Shen, so he goes to kill Shatsu. Before he can, Master Roshi uses a Kamehameha to send them flying. At this point, Chi-Chi was beginning to get tired, but so was Tien. However, some of her feelings of helplessness and grief like she felt against Tao when Goku died rose up, causing her flames to intensify to a dangerous level. The ground beneath her began to crack and blacken, but Tien steadied himself as he realized she was fighting with her own emotions. He charged forward once more, as he thought her struggling with her emotions would be his opening, though he also tried to use his Tri-Beam, but at the last second, she regained control of herself. She spread fire across the ring's edge, which forced Tien to bounce precariously, so he missed when he fired the Tri-Beam. She soon advances with fiery strikes once more, but Tien tries using the Four Witches technique to retaliate. He begins to overwhelm her with simultaneous attacks, as she desperately tries to block them. In a last-ditch effort, she channels all of her power and magic into a final punch. They both dive in for a final blow, as her flame-wreathed fist collides with his chest at the same time his punches land on her. The explosion from her flames sends them both skidding back across the arena, smoke billowing around them. This leaves Chi-Chi and Tien in a similar situation that Goku and Jackie Chun were in during the previous tournament. It comes down to whichever of them can get back to their feet first. But even though Chi-Chi tried her best, Tien not being as tired as her gave him the strength to be the one to stand up first. After he is announced the winner, Tien likely goes to talk to the heroes, though he wouldn't feel that his win was just through luck in this timeline since it didn't end with something like Chi-Chi getting hit by a car like Goku normally did. While they were talking, Master Roshi suggested that they had dinner together. Goku still realizes that he forgot the Dragon Ball and Power Pole, so Krillin volunteers to go get them. Shortly after he leaves, they hear him scream, so they rush off to see what happened. Once they arrive, they find out from the tournament announcer that a monster attacked and took both the Dragon Ball and the tournament roster. He also mentions how Krillin tried to fight off the monster, but he died against it. This obviously angers both Goku and Chi-Chi, and they ask Bulma if she has a Dragon Radar. After she says that she does, they then take the Dragon Radar from Bulma as they prepare to leave. Master Roshi tries to stop them, but they both get on the Flying Nimbus and leave to chase after the monster who killed Krillin. After Goku and Chi-Chi left to chase after Krillin's killer, the other heroes were left at the World Martial Arts Tournament arena. Oolong still finds a paper with a symbol on it, which causes Master Roshi to explain that it's the symbol of the Demon King Piccolo. So, he tells them the story of King Piccolo and about how his master, Mutaito, sealed him away in a rice cooker. Meanwhile, at King Piccolo's ship, he still reveals that his plan is to wish for eternal youth and then show the martial artists what real power is. Back with Master Roshi, he realizes that they stole the tournament roster to hunt down and kill any martial artists. Then with Goku and Chi-Chi, they eventually catch up to Tambourine. While they theoretically could overpower him when fighting together, Tambourine is able to win since they were still tired after the tournament. As usual, he destroys the Flying Nimbus and knocks him down towards the ground. Back with the rest of the heroes once again, they all decide to return to Kame House to come up with a plan. Tambourine then reports to King Piccolo to deliver the Dragon Ball he's collected in the tournament roster. King Piccolo still orders him to kill every martial artist on that roster. Now as for collecting the Dragon Balls, he creates Symbol to go and collect them. Both Tambourine and Symbol then leave to follow out their assigned missions. At Kame House, while the heroes are trying to figure out what to do, they see the news broadcast about Nam having been killed. They realize that they are in danger as well if they stay there, so they leave. Master Roshi also asks Bulma how long it'd take her to build a Dragon Radar, and she says it'd take half a day. Eventually, Goku and Chi-Chi wake up, as Goku then sniffs out the cooked fish as usual. After they eat it, they meet Yajirobe and briefly get into a fight with him since they stole his fish. However, they are interrupted by the arrival of Symbol, but Yajirobe easily kills him with his sword. After Yajirobe cooks and eats Symbol, Goku, Chi-Chi, and Yajirobe introduce themselves to each other. Back with King Piccolo, he immediately sensed Symbol's death, so he went to call on Tambourine. Tambourine had just got done killing Goran as he then took off to go after Yamcha. Regardless, King Piccolo ordered Tambourine to find and kill the one who killed Symbol. Back with Goku, Chi-Chi, and Yajirobe. They were in the middle of explaining what the Dragon Balls are when they are interrupted by Tambourine arriving. When they get into a fight with Tambourine, it'd be a way easier fight than normal this time, as he wouldn't stand a chance against both Goku and Chi-Chi. When Tambourine tries to fly away, Goku uses his Power Pole and Chi-Chi uses their fire magic to launch themselves into the air. They both use a Kamehameha which easily vaporizes Tambourine. Then with King Piccolo, once he senses Tambourine's death, he decides to take on the killer of his children himself. After King Piccolo arrives, Yajirobe finally remembers who that is, so he gives Goku and Chi-Chi the Dragon Ball he had before running away. Regardless, after King Piccolo hops down, they both prepare to fight him. In terms of power, while both of them are individually weaker than he is, together they would overpower him. So, Chi-Chi gets into her fighting stance, but Goku lets his anger over Krillin's death overtake him as he rushes in. This catches King Piccolo off guard, but after he throws off his weighted cape, he briefly begins to dominate the fight. However, Chi-Chi then begins to use her magic, and Hochoko can be seen flickering nervously behind her. She begins firing bursts of flames to try and corral him, but he easily swats them aside. He almost breaks Goku's arm after grappling him, but Chi-Chi manages to knock him away with a fiery kick. After regaining his bearings, King Piccolo uses his explosive demon wave. Goku just barely dodges while Chi-Chi uses a hastily made barrier, but while it does stop most of the blast, she is still thrown back hard. At this point, Chi-Chi tells Goku that they need to coordinate their attacks or they'll never win. Goku rushes in again to press King Piccolo with melee attacks, thus forcing him to defend. As for Chi-Chi, she weaves in streams of fire and magical barriers to disrupt King Piccolo's counters. At one point, King Piccolo manages to grab Goku, but Chi-Chi hits his hand with a searing burst of flames, forcing him to let go. Now that he realizes they're actually dangerous, he tries to end things by channeling his full power into a blast. In return, Goku begins charging a Kamehameha. As for Chi-Chi, Hochoko lands on her shoulder. She begins to channel her magic into forming a wave of fire. At the same time, King Piccolo unleashes his demonic wave. They unleash their blasts as they collide in the middle. It's seemingly even at first, but after Goku and Chi-Chi channel their full power into their blasts, it begins to overpower King Piccolo's. It punches a hole straight through his chest, but before he collapses, he still coughs up one last egg and sends it flying. They then turn their attention to King Piccolo's ship, and after boarding it, they likely get into a fight with Piano. This would be an easy fight for them, so Piano is easily killed. Unbeknownst to them, the Pilaf gang likely escapes while they are dealing with Piano. Regardless, after destroying his ship, Goku and Chi-Chi, who are now both exhausted, collapse onto the ground. They're likely in rough shape at this point, as King Piccolo did manage to get some good hits in, and using their full power took a lot out of them, so they still might have to ask Yajirobe for help to take them to Korin's tower. This way, they can get senzu beans to heal before meeting up with the other heroes. Speaking about the heroes, with them not immediately knowing that King Piccolo is dead, Master Roshi would likely try his original plan of hiding the Dragon Balls before trying to steal King Piccolo's. When King Piccolo never arrives, they would rightfully be confused about where he is. They might try to follow the Dragon Radar to the last 2 Dragon Balls to figure out what is happening. Back with Yajirobe, Goku, and Chi-Chi, he is eventually able to get them to the top of Korin's tower. Once there, they are given senzu beans, so they are fully healed. With King Piccolo already having been defeated, they wouldn't need to drink the Ultra Divine Water yet. Instead, Goku just gets another Flying Nimbus from Korin before they head to find the heroes. When they meet up, they would explain how they defeated King Piccolo, which shocks all of them, especially Master Roshi. Anyway, with Shenron never being destroyed, and with King Piccolo having been reincarnated, they are able to summon him right away. As usual, everyone who was killed by King Piccolo and his sons are wished back to life. They were then about to return to Kame House, but before they do, Korin speaks telepathically to both Goku and Chi-Chi. He tells them to return to his tower, as God has summoned them to train them, but he doesn't tell them what they're training for. After passing this on to the heroes, they're shocked as usual, but they don't get time to react before Goku and Chi-Chi use the Flying Nimbus to go to Korin's tower. Unbeknownst to them, Kami talked to Korin to tell them to come up to the lookout for training to take on the reincarnated King Piccolo. Once they arrive, with Korin knowing about the upcoming threat about King Piccolo's reincarnation, I could see him suggesting they drink the Ultra Divine Water to get stronger. It's hard to say if he would suggest this, since it was dangerous, but if the world really was in danger again, I think he would. He could also have them do this as one last test to prove that they're qualified to meet Kami. Regardless, they should both be able to survive this and get stronger because of it. Goku's power level normally went from 180 to 260, so if I use that same multiplier for Chi-Chi, her power level goes from 184 to 266. Anyway, Korin gives them the bell they need to meet with Kami, and by using the power pole, they go up to Kami's lookout. They would meet Mr. Popo there, and after presenting the bell to him, they have to beat him in a fight to meet Kami. Even though they might be stronger than what Mr. Popo is, especially when fighting together, they still can't land a hit on him. Eventually, Kami interrupts them talking with Mr. Popo by saying that he'll meet with them, so Mr. Popo takes them to Kami. They mistake him for King Piccolo and try to attack him, but Kami easily flicks them away. Kami then explains who he is and asks them to train there, as he explains he summoned them to take care of a future threat. In exchange for training there, they must go to the next World Martial Arts Tournament and defeat King Piccolo's reincarnation. They agree, so they begin their training, which will last the next 3 years. As for the others on Earth, Yamcha, Krillin, Tien, and Chiaotzu all begin training for the next tournament as well. 3 years have now passed since the last World Martial Arts Tournament. As usual, Master Roshi's still the first one to arrive at the tournament grounds. Bulma, War, and Oolong are the next to arrive, so they briefly catch up with Master Roshi. Then when Chi-Chi and Goku arrive, they still don't recognize Goku at first. Anyway, the last of the heroes to finally arrive is Tien, Chiaotzu, Krillin, and Yamcha. Before the preliminaries begin, all the heroes briefly talk and catch up. When Tien gets the chance, he secretly asks Master Roshi if he planned to join the tournament, but he tells him that he isn't. Regardless, once the preliminaries begin, they go the same as they usually do. The only difference is that since Chi-Chi killed Mercenary Tao all those years ago, Chiaotzu gets to make it through the preliminaries. This means that Tien could have had Chiaotzu rig the drawings of lots again if he really wanted to. However, I decided to keep it the same as it was in the original tournament, since I thought the fights in it were the most interesting possibilities anyway. The only difference in the bracket is that the first fight is between Chiaotzu and Tien. After they enter the ring, their match begins with Chiaotzu trying to use his telekinesis to push Tien off balance. Even when he throws in some ki blasts, Tien easily dodges them and throws in a blast of his own. Though Chiaotzu does narrowly dodge it, Tien then dashes forward as he parries everything Chiaotzu throws at him before knocking Chiaotzu backwards. Chiaotzu then uses his telekinesis to hold Tien in place and begins to charge a blast. However, after using more of his power, Tien breaks out of Chiaotzu's telekinesis, appears behind him, and knocks him out with a chop to the neck. This also means that Tien never receives a scar on his chest in this timeline. Before getting into the next match, I briefly want to talk about how strong Goku and Chi-Chi are after training with Kami. I gave them the same power boost Goku normally got through his training with Kami. So, Goku's power level is 242 when wearing his weighted clothing, but 306 when he isn't wearing it. As for Chi-Chi, her power level is 248 when wearing her weighted clothing, but 313 when she isn't. Also, while this doesn't have to do with her power, a brief thing to mention is that Goku and Chi-Chi likely started dating by now since they would have gotten closer over the last 3 years. Anyway, with that out of the way, we can get into the second match, as they both enter the ring and start by bowing to each other. Their fight starts with a clean exchange of their different martial arts abilities, as neither takes the advantage yet. They're both holding back, gauging the abilities of each other as they trade blows. Eventually, Goku starts using acrobatics and flips to dodge more of her moves while also feinting like he was going to use the Kamehameha to trick her. As for Chi-Chi, she begins to blend in her magic, but not in huge blasts. Instead, she uses smaller blasts of flames to push Goku off balance. When he does eventually use the Kamehameha, Chi-Chi uses her magic to absorb some of his energy and redirect it upwards. This would shock Goku, as he hasn't seen her do that before. But they both would realize that they're essentially evenly matched. While they could take off their weighted clothes and go all out, I don't think they would. Instead, they would try to conserve their power for whichever one of them has to face the real threat of Piccolo Jr. later in the tournament. However, they do begin to stop suppressing themselves while they're wearing their weighted clothes. Once they rush in at each other again, Chi-Chi gains the upper hand because of her fiery precision. They clash in midair with a punch and flaming kick respectively, and Chi-Chi is the first one to land. After sliding back, she coats her arm in flames at the same time Goku lunges in. They both land clean hits on each other, with Chi-Chi being pushed back a bit. As for Goku, he is pushed out of bounds with a burst of flame she countered his hit with. She then helps him up and congratulates him on the good fight. Normally after this match is when Goku proposed to Chi-Chi, but since he likely didn't forget about his promise, his proposal wouldn't happen here. Regardless, the third match goes the same as usual with Piccolo Jr. defeating Krillin. As for the fourth match, Yamcha still loses against Shen, though Goku and Chi-Chi would realize that Shen is actually Kami in disguise. This brings us to the second round of the tournament, with the first fight of this round being between Tien and Chi-Chi. As usual, they bow first when entering the ring before rushing at each other, as Tien's forearm meets Chi-Chi's shin. Immediately, Tien begins to use rapid, precise hits, but she manages to deflect them all. She eventually grabs his wrist and flips him over her shoulder. Tien then rockets upwards, thinking he might have a better shot of fighting her in the air, but she follows him. They begin to trade blows once more, as they were going so fast the audience couldn't keep track of them. When Tien tried to blindside her from above, she used her ki to make a burst of air pressure that pushed him back. After they land, Tien then splits into 4, as they then surround her and fire synchronized ki blasts. Chi-Chi leaps into the air again and deflects him with rapid sweeps of her arm. This time, they regroup and try unleashing a second volley, but Chi-Chi uses her magic to make a barrier around herself. Once their volley subsides and she lands again, they begin to circle around her. However, she realizes that each of the Tians are weaker than what they were together, so she dashes between them in a blur, using one precise strike on each of them. This knocks them back into the middle of the ring, as they then collapse into a single, battered Tien. He staggers to his feet before charging in, but she lands her own hit on his chest, and with a forceful burst of energy, she sends him flying out of bounds. After their fight, they congratulate each other for the good fight as usual. As for the next fight between Piccolo Jr. and Shen, it goes the same as usual. Nothing would really change, so Kami is still stealed away once Piccolo Jr. reversed the evil containment wave. This technique might briefly interest Chi-Chi, since it does seem like it's a magic technique, as King Piccolo mentioned it being a spell. Anyway, Piccolo Jr. still swallows the jar containing Kami so that the heroes can't get it without killing him and Kami in the process. During the break between the matches, this is when Goku and Chi-Chi finally explain everything about Piccolo Jr. being the reincarnation of King Piccolo. Regardless, this brings us to the last match between Chi-Chi and Piccolo Jr. After they step into the ring, Chi-Chi doesn't waste any time, as her magic flames begin to surround her. Up above, her Phoenix Choco begins to circle her, as sparks of golden flames trail from her wings. Right after the announcer tells them to begin, Chi-Chi and Piccolo Jr. rush at each other. They begin with trading blows, but when he jumps back and extends his arm, she grabs it and swings him over her shoulder, sending him into the air. He retaliates with a shockwave, but she uses her magic to send it back at him. She then rushes in to try and hit him with a flame-encased fist, but he uses a blast to send her down into the ground. Piccolo Jr. then starts using a barrage of ki blasts, and some connect with her, but she then mutters an incantation to form a barrier around herself. Once the barrier falls, she decides to use her full power, so she takes off her weighted clothing. He stops holding back as well as they begin to trade blows once more. After trading blows for a bit, he launches into the air and fires a blast down towards her once more. It just barely grazes her shoulder and almost knocks her out of the ring, but she uses a burst of flames to push herself back in. It was at this point that Chi-Chi decided to try and show off something that she has been working on over the last 3 years. She saw how Goku developed the Super Kamehameha, so she tried to make her own variation of it. Her thought process was to try and incorporate both her ki and magic into one devastating attack. It took her a while to figure out how to combine the two energies, but with the guidance of Kami, she was able to do so. However, this does take a lot out of her, so she can only combine magic and ki in bursts. She calls this version of the Super Kamehameha the Arcane Kamehameha. The blue core of the Kamehameha is surrounded by chaotic swirling beams of multicolored arcane energy rotating around it. Piccolo Jr. uses another blast of his own to counter it, and they collide in the middle, as a thunderous explosion is heard in the vortex created by the collision pools in the nearby clouds. However, Chi-Chi's blast soon overpowers his and slams into him. After he falls to the ground, he is left smoking and his gi is torn. Once he is back up, he begins to shout as he turns into his giant form. At his new size, even though he isn't any stronger, he begins to dominate this fight. That is until Chi-Chi ends up knocking him down by kicking the back of his leg. After lifting him by a finger and throwing him, she taunts him into growing even larger. And it works. Once he is larger, she uses this opportunity to blast herself inside of him and retrieve the jar containing Kami. She then tosses it to Tien and he releases Kami from the jar. Regardless, Piccolo Jr. and Chi-Chi then get into a fight once more as she begins to charge yet another arcane Kamehameha. This time, she infuses some of her flame magic into it, but she waits to fire it until she's at close range. It blasts through his arm and burns away half of it, causing him to shrink down, as he then regrows his arm. They soon begin to trade blows once more, but Piccolo Jr. ends up using a blast that follows her wherever she goes. However, he flies towards him and then vanishes, causing him to get hit and damaged by his own blast. He is forced to regrow his arm once more, and once he does, they prepare to fight again. Meanwhile, up above, Choco has been circling anxiously above the entire time. She lets out a cry as her wings flare out with flames stretching out from her, forcing the others to shield their eyes. Just like before, she is growing once more, but this time she becomes a fully grown phoenix. This surprises Chi-Chi, but after landing on her shoulder, she dissolves into radiant fire and merges with Chi-Chi's aura. I mentioned before that merging with Choco gives her a surge of power and that I'd explain more about it later. This is where I decided to explain a bit more about it. Not only did her power grow, but her hair is now lifting in the heated air. Her eyes are a blazing orange gold, and the ground is cracking and scorching beneath her feet. She rushes in and begins landing blazing blows on Piccolo Jr., forcing him on the back foot. With a loud yell, he forces out a shockwave to send her backwards, as he then begins to charge his hyper-explosive demon wave. As usual, he then uses his tri-beam to make a hole for everyone to hide in. After Piccolo unleashes the blast and the smoke clears, Chi-Chi is shown to be mostly unscathed, as she used a barrier of flames to protect herself. Once again, she begins beating down Piccolo Jr. in a vicious onslaught before jumping into the air. She begins to charge yet another Kamehameha as her flaming aura spreads outwards like wings, as her aura begins to look like a fiery bird spiraling around her arms. She unleashes the Phoenix Kamehameha. An enormous, incandescent beam launches from her hands, and as it collides with him, the shockwave engulfs the island in a sea of gold and crimson light. The fire soon fades, as Piccolo Jr.'s scorched body is lying in a crater. Though he is still alive, Ochoko then separates from Chi-Chi's body as she powers down, as the Phoenix then dissolves into sparks until she is needed again. The now exhausted Chi-Chi shakily stood to her feet, and with Piccolo Jr. being unconscious, she is announced the winner. She then collapses, but this is when Yajirobe reveals that he's there as he rushes in and gives her a sensu beam. As usual, Kami tries to kill the unconscious Piccolo Jr., but Chi gets in his way. I only think Chi-Chi would spare him since she would realize that he isn't completely like his father, as he never killed anyone. So, in her mind, he still has a chance to choose to go down a different path. Regardless, Kami still ends up doubting what right he has to be the Guardian of Earth since he brought Piccolo into this world. Master Roshi then explains that if it wasn't for Kami making the Dragon Balls, Goku never would have met Bulma and gone on an adventure for them. He then wouldn't have met Chi-Chi, so she wouldn't have trained and been able to save the world. Kami takes this into consideration, but he then restores Chi-Chi's clothes since they were mostly destroyed in the fight with Piccolo Jr. Just like Goku did, she asks for another sensu beam and gives it to Piccolo Jr. As usual, he swears to get revenge as he then takes off. Kami then approaches Chi-Chi, and since she saved the world, he offers her to become the next Guardian of Earth. In her desire to continue to get stronger, I think she would take him up on this offer. I mainly think she would do so because of him saying that she could become a goddess by doing so. Godhood would likely mesh well with her magic abilities, so in her mind, she could continue to improve and develop her skills through being a goddess. Also, I think she would have a growing desire to continue to protect the world, so this would be her chance to do so. Before they leave, she and Goku say goodbye to the others. Kami then teleports her and Goku to the lookout for her to begin her training to become the Guardian of Earth. I briefly want to talk about some things that would happen between the last World Martial Arts Tournament and the arrival of Raditz. I also want to talk about how Chi-Chi's training to become the Guardian goes. One of the major things I wanted to mention that happens during these 5 years is that Goku and Chi-Chi likely still get married. However, with Chi-Chi focusing on training to become the next Guardian of Earth, she doesn't get pregnant and have Gohan. This way, she doesn't have to stop her training or slow down on it to care for a child. Now as for her training to become the Guardian, we don't really know much about how this would be done. All we knew about Kami becoming Guardian was that he had to be pure-hearted to do so, which caused him to split off his evil side. As for Dende, we don't really see how he is made into the Guardian. We just see him resurrect Shenron and recreate the Dragon Balls. Unless that was him becoming the Guardian. Anyway, my point is that how exactly the guardianship is transferred from one person to another is unknown. I don't think it would be transferred to her right away, as I think Kami would teach her things needed to be the Guardian first. When her training does start, she already has a pure heart, so they don't have to worry about purifying her heart like Kami had to. Instead, the beginning of her training focuses on getting her to understand the role of Guardian. So, she'd likely be doing a lot of meditating and learning how to somewhat quiet her warrior instincts. After all, the Guardian is mostly observing the planet instead of going down and directly intervening, but that could also be because the Guardians we've seen weren't strong enough to handle certain threats or couldn't take them on without taking themselves out, like in the case of Kami and King Piccolo or Piccolo Jr. Kami likely tests her with illusions of anger and grief, such as illusions of Goku or others dying, to try and further temper her control over these feelings. You'd want her to be able to react with wisdom instead of with rage. When he eventually starts trying to teach her the far-seeing arts to view the planet, I think this could be a bit easier for her to learn. She likely learned a bit about scrying and divination from Fortuneteller Baba to view things, so this might be a bit similar to her. Though she would still start small with just being able to view smaller regions at a time instead of the whole planet. Over time, this would expand until she could see all of Earth and perceive its energy as threads of light. With her knowing magic, Kami might also help her begin to refine it into more divine forms. Since Guardians have God Ki, when she does eventually tap into it herself, her aura when using magic likely changes in color. Normally it was like a blue-violet color, but when merged with God Ki, it becomes more of a golden white tone instead. She might also learn more divine types of magic from Kami, such as different types of barriers, purification beams, and healing light. Eventually, when Kami believes she is ready, he transfers the role of Guardian over to her. This also now links her life force to the Dragon Balls, so she would have to be more careful when she does get into fights. By now her far-seeing arts is perfected, so she can watch over the entire world with ease. Just like Kami can, she'd also learn how to teleport anywhere around the world, and even to other worlds, if need be. After all, now that she is Guardian, she would take on the indirect reporting relationship Kami had with King Tai. She would also have ties into working with King Yema, as Kami had been in direct contact with him at times. There's more I want to say about King Yema, but I'll save that for a little bit later. Anyway, even after she is Guardian, she likely continues to learn new types of magic that could help her with her position. She now has access to knowledge from around the world, which would help in this pursuit of arcane knowledge. But Kami would also continue to help her when he can. She'd likely learn about rituals that could help keep the balance between life and death, repairing spiritual rifts, and sanctifying corrupted lands. At first, being the Guardian would likely be a struggle for her, as her instinct was still to act directly instead of guiding from afar. Anyway, I briefly mentioned why she chose not to have children earlier, but I think being the Guardian could play into that decision as well. While she is married to Goku, she married him before she knew what all being the Guardian would entail. From what we know about Guardians, they tend to have long lives, though they aren't immortal. No parent would want to outlive their child, so she makes the choice to not have a child because of this and her needing to focus on her responsibility of being the Guardian. Anyway, as Guardian, I think her familiar Hochoko could kinda be seen as a symbol for the Guardian itself, along with it representing her link to life and rebirth. Overall, I think her fire magic could be a bit more like a more holy, purifying flame. Even Hochoko's flames likely take on a similar form and golden white color that match Chi-Chi's. Anyway, since Kami also taught her some more types of magic that deals with evil, I could see him passing on the knowledge of the evil containment wave. With that out of the way, that marks the end of her training under Kami. Now, back to speaking about King Yema, as it's possible that Chi-Chi might have to go through training under King Yema. I've made scenarios where people become the Guardian of Earth before, but I never picked up on something until the most recent time I reread the Raditz saga in the manga. When Kami took Goku to see King Yema, he said this to Kami: "Perhaps Kami-sama needs a little retraining in hell." This implies that Kami had to train under King Yema before, so I think Chi-Chi could have to do the same. If I would have realized that before, I would have included it in this old series where I wrote it as someone else besides Kami becoming the Guardian. Anyway, just like with Kami training Chi-Chi to be the next Guardian, we really don't know how King Yema trains people, so a lot of this is going to be making things up and speculating how his training could go. When she arrives and begins her training under him, I think the first stage would be about judgment and the complexity of souls. So, he would teach her how to sense the truth of someone's soul, so that she can see if they are good or evil. Through this, she would also see how people are rarely ever pure good or pure evil, as people are much more nuanced than that. He'd tell her that life and death, along with creation and destruction, is all about balance. They're all tied together, so she'd have to learn how to maintain that balance as Guardian. Life is too often seen as the good side of things, so she'd need to learn that death isn't inherently bad, as it can lead to better things. He'd also explain the role of judgment and how it all involves balance, just like her being a Guardian. Though even when he does have to send a soul to hell, he would explain about how they are eventually purified of their evil and reincarnated. At one point, he sends her to hell to test her to face her own darkness. He sends her without Hochoko so that she has to rely on her abilities alone, and once she arrives, she soon encounters a demon from her past. This is Tambourine, and he taunts her about him killing Krillin and her choosing to spare Piccolo Jr., which would anger her. She is left with the choice of letting her rage control her and seeking vengeance again, or by trying to purify the demon instead of destroying it. Instead of destroying it, she gets her emotions in check and tries using her purifying flames on the demon. Tambourine's soul soon vanishes in a burst of radiant sparkles, as it was purified enough to be reincarnated. After this, she is transported back to King Yema. As he then continues to explain her role as Guardian, there are times she might have to guide souls to King Yema like how Kami did with Goku, but that's in rare occasions. It doesn't seem often that a Guardian would do so, but he lets her know that she is allowed to do so if she deems it fit. Like how she learned to use purifying flames from Kami, she might learn about using more infernal flames from King Yema. Instead of it being a golden white like her purifying flames, her infernal flames are likely black instead, and they'd potentially have a deep red color mixed in, too. Though I don't see her using infernal magic alone often, as she would try learning how to use it against forces of evil or by tempering it through combining it with her purifying flames. For example, she could try creating a spell of binding chains that could can subdue demons or those that are pure evil. Then as for combining the two, perhaps she could learn to layer the flames into ones that represent both heaven and hell. These combined flames could be used to burn away any spiritual corruption without harming the soul, but it also seems like it'd be very overpowered to just burn away the corruption of someone, so the odds of her being able to do so are slim to none. It might be something she experiments with multiple times, but she wouldn't be able to come anywhere near being able to do so at this point. At the very least, she might be able to do it on those far weaker than her, but not on someone far above her in strength or those with a strong willpower. Regardless, after finishing her training under King Yema, she would return to Earth. Once she returns, she finally begins her duties as guardian as the Earth is in a time of peace. 5 years soon pass since the defeat of Piccolo Jr., but this time of peace is interrupted by an unknown person arriving on the Earth. After killing a nearby farmer that tried to confront him, the invader takes off towards the highest power level his scouter picked up. The power this invader sensed was Piccolo's, though after he lands, he realizes that this isn't who he's looking for. Piccolo blasted him, and he was going to retaliate, but his scouter then sensed an even higher power level, so he took off. With Chi-Chi having God Ki, the scouter can't read her power level, so he only noticed Goku's. Meanwhile, at Kame House, Bulma arrived to meet up with Master Roshi and Krillin. Not long after, Goku and Chi-Chi arrive as well, so they all begin to catch up with each other. Obviously, without them having a kid in this timeline, there never is the shock about Goku having a kid. Regardless, they keep talking until they are soon interrupted by the arrival of the mysterious invader. He initially starts calling Goku Kakarot, but when Krillin tries approaching him, he knocks him through the wall with his tail. Even then, Goku doesn't realize what's happening, so Master Roshi explains to him the story about how Grandpa Gohan found them. The stranger then reveals that they are part of a warrior race called Saiyans. Then as he introduces himself as Raditz, he also says that he's Goku's brother. Without Gohan being there for Raditz to take, it's likely that they might just get into their fight there near Kame House. However, I think Goku would convince Raditz to follow them to a nearby deserted island, as to not damage Kame House. Before getting into their fight, I'm going to briefly go over how strong the heroes are in terms of their power levels. I kept the power levels of Goku, Krillin, Master Roshi, and Piccolo the same as usual, which, Goku had a power level of 334 with his weighted clothing and 416 without it. Krillin's was 206, Master Roshi's was 180, and Piccolo's was 322 with his weighted clothing and 408 without it. As for Chi-Chi, since she went under slightly more intense training to become the Guardian and she trained with King Yema, I gave her a slightly higher power boost than Goku. This brought her up to 352 when she is wearing weighted clothing and 438 when she isn't wearing it. Raditz's power level depends on the source you follow, with it being either 1500 or 1600, but either way, the hero's combined power level is slightly more than his. With that out of the way, I can get into describing their fight now. Unbeknownst to the heroes, Piccolo also followed them to the deserted island and hid behind a hill. Anyway, before their fight begins, Goku and Chi-Chi both take off their weighted clothing. After Chi-Chi powered up, Choco appears above them and begins circling the battlefield. When Raditz reads her power levels, he would be confused about why he can't read her power level, and she might explain that it's because she's the goddess of this planet. Regardless, Raditz attacks first, as he then appears behind Goku and knees him into the sand. While he is hitting Goku, Master Roshi powers up into his buff form and then rushes in, landing a punch to Raditz's jaw. Krillin attempts using a Destructo Disc, but it only manages to graze his shoulder plate. Before continuing their fight, Raditz still reveals the existence of the other two Saiyans that he works with, and mentions that they're even stronger than he is. Regardless, once the fight starts again, Raditz is soon forced on the defensive. The heroes started to coordinate their attacks, as Goku and Chi-Chi fought in tandem, trading blows that Raditz narrowly parries. Master Roshi helped when he could, as he stayed to the side to look for openings. As for Krillin, he also looked for openings and fired Kamehamehas when he had the chance. Then as for Piccolo, he still noticed that the heroes were struggling to take on Raditz even when fighting together. So, even though he originally developed a technique to use against Chi-Chi, he began to charge a special beam cannon to try and catch Raditz off guard. Raditz soon uses a double Sunday against Goku and Chi-Chi, which Goku just barely dodges and Chi-Chi forms a magical barrier to deflect it. In this brief opening, Chi-Chi drops her barrier and merges her magic and ki once more, charging the arcane Kamehameha. It connects with Raditz and slams him into the sand, leaving him slightly singed. But he then bursts up laughing, much to the surprise of the heroes, as even her magic-infused ki barely scratched him. Raditz then stops holding back, and in a blur, he appears behind Master Roshi, slamming him into the ground. Krillin then rushes in and manages to land a hard kick to Raditz's chest. He retaliates instantly, firing a Saturday Crush that vaporizes the area around Krillin, and the explosion leaves a crater. When the dust clears, Krillin's lifeless body is seen lying in the crater. This makes both Goku and Chi-Chi furious, and her aura erupts. as Hochoko lets out a cry before diving in and merging with Chi-Chi once more. Her hair still lifts, but her eyes glow with a faint divine light, as they're more of a gold color instead of the fiery colors from the last time she merged with Hochoko. Chi-Chi begins to charge a Phoenix Kamehameha, the flame spiraling with radiant ki as it builds in her hands. While she is charging this attack, Goku and Master Roshi try to keep Raditz busy. They struggle to keep up, but they do land some good hits, like when Goku sends Raditz upwards with a roundhouse kick, which allows Master Roshi to slam a Kamehameha into his side. It's at this point when Piccolo reveals himself from behind the cliff, and when Chi-Chi notices him, she realized he had the same idea of trying to charge up a blast to use on Raditz, though she wouldn't recognize this attack of his. Even Raditz didn't notice Piccolo yet, as he got grabbed from behind by Goku. However, he breaks out of this and begins to rush towards Chi-Chi, trying to stop her. Goku just barely manages to dash in and intercept him, and once Master Roshi joins in, they both use a full power Kamehameha. This cracks his armor, and while he is stunned, Master Roshi uses the Thundershock Surprise to hold Raditz in place. After all, he saw him move out of the way of Krillin's Destructive Disc earlier, so he didn't want to risk that happening again. Goku then yells for Chi-Chi to use the Phoenix Kamehameha, and at the same time she finishes charging it, Piccolo finishes charging the Special Beam Cannon. The two blasts converge on him, the Phoenix Kamehameha hitting him from the front and the Special Beam Cannon hitting him from the back, as the combined force tears through Raditz with ease. When their blasts fade, Raditz falls to the ground, motionless, with a gaping hole in his chest. Chi-Chi and Piccolo both power down, so Hochoko separates from her once again, vanishing into radiant sparks. She approaches Krillin's body with a look of sorrow on her face, as she tells the others that they can't use the Dragon Balls to bring him back since they have revived him once before. The dying Raditz speaks up that he transmitted all this information to his two partners, so they'll be there in 1 year to wipe out the heroes and revive him. Chi-Chi then uses her magic to charge a small flare, and after launching it at Raditz, flames envelop its body and turn it into ash. With him dead, this gives him a year to train before the arrival of the other Saiyans. Meanwhile, out in space, the other two Saiyans discuss what they heard from Raditz's scouter, though instead of deciding to go to Earth to revive Raditz, they decide to go there to use the Dragon Balls to wish for immortality. Back on Earth, Kami then teleports himself down to the battlefield to talk with Chi-Chi, as he had an idea for how they can train in preparation for the Saiyans. As for Kami's plan for them to train, he tells Chi-Chi that it's time for her to actually meet King Kai, even though she has an indirect reporting relationship with King Kai. They have just been talking telepathically. Anyway, Kami also tells Goku to come along, as this training would be beneficial for him as well. However, before they leave, Chi-Chi goes over to Piccolo and asks him to come along. This would shock Kami and everyone else, but Chi-Chi would explain that she thinks Piccolo is starting to change. After all, he had the chance to use the Special Beam Cannon against the heroes to kill them, but he helped by using it against Raditz instead. Kami would be very reluctant to allow this, but Chi-Chi also has a say in it since she is now the Guardian. So he'd relent and transport Goku, Chi-Chi, and Piccolo to Otherworld. Like how Kami summoned Goku's soul with him to see King Yama, I could see Chi-Chi doing the same with Krillin's soul after they arrive. It would likely be hard to convince King Yama to allow all four of them to be allowed to run Snake Way and train with King Kai. However, with both Kami and Chi-Chi trying to convince him, he'd reluctantly agree. So, they'd be shown the way to Snake Way, as they then begin to run it together. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Bulma soon arrives to check on everyone after the fight, with Master Roshi being the only one left there. He is the one who explains everything that happened to her. When Bulma asks about how Raditz even found them so easily earlier, he'd mentioned the scouter on his face. As usual, she takes it with her so that they can find Yamcha and Tien. They then return to Kame House and Bulma soon gets the scouter fixed. Before they can try to find the others with it, Yajirobe arrives and tells them that Kame wants to train him, Master Roshi, Yamcha, Tien, and Chiaotzu. I know Master Roshi wasn't usually included, but with him having helped against Raditz, I think he'd be told to come train with Kami as well. Regardless, after they are all gathered, they head up to the lookout and begin to train there. With all of the heroes setting off to begin training, it becomes their major focus for the next year. I just quickly wanted to say that I have made a Patreon, so if you do want to support my channel more, there will be a link to it in the description and the comments below. Anyway, before getting into the arrival of the Saiyans, I briefly want to talk about the heroes' training with King Kai, but I won't go too much into detail with it. Overall, I think it would go mostly the same, but in the cases of Krillin and Piccolo, I think their major focus would be learning the Kaioken instead of both the Kaioken and the Spirit Bomb. I think Goku and Chi-Chi would be the only ones to try to learn both techniques. Speaking of Chi-Chi, I think learning the Spirit Bomb would come a little bit easier to her than it did with Goku. She's already used to tapping into energy from outside sources when using her magic, So getting energy from outside sources for the Spirit Bomb shouldn't be too different. Like how she has combined other ki-based abilities with her magic, she might be able to do so with the Spirit Bomb as well. I imagine a Spirit Bomb that uses both ki and magic would take energy from living things as usual, but also take magical energy from sources of magic around the world. Other than that, the four of them likely receive a slightly higher boost than what Goku does in the actual story, since they likely would be training with each other as well. At the end of their training, their power levels would be as follows. Goku's is 9,150, Chi-Chi's is 9,630, Piccolo's is 8,970, and Krillin's is 4,530. As for the heroes on Earth, their power levels stay the same as they usually were after training with Kami. The only difference is Master Roshi's, since he also trained with Kami in this timeline. His power level goes from 180 to 1,550. Regardless, when it's time for the Saiyans to arrive, Chi-Chi is able to use the Kai Kai to bring herself, Goku, and Piccolo back to Earth. As for Krillin, she likely got into contact with Fortuneteller Baba to bring Krillin back to Earth for a day so that he could still help with the fight. Then after all of them arrive on Earth, they went to get senzu beans from Korin before heading to where the others have gathered. When the Saiyans arrive in East City, they exit their pods as Nappa then destroys the city. They start following their scouters towards the higher power levels, but the heroes still group up before they arrive. Once the Saiyans arrive where the heroes are, just like with Raditz, there'd be a brief scene of confusion about their scouter not picking up Chi-Chi's power level. Regardless, there is still the scene of Nappa pointing out that Piccolo is in the MeccheD. Anyway, even with them already being there, I still think that Vegeta would have Nappa plant the Cybermen first. However, with Goku and Chi-Chi already being there, their plan is for the Cybermen to take care of the others while they fight Goku and Chi-Chi. Starting with the fight against the Cybermen, Tien still steps up to take on the first one. He actually gets a kill in this timeline since Vegeta is too busy fighting Goku to do it himself like he usually did. Krillin was going to step in to take on the next one, but Yamcha still steps in so Krillin doesn't risk dying again. With Krillin having died against Raditz, Yamcha might not let his guard down as much here since they're about as strong as Raditz was. This means he would actually defeat the Cybermen instead of dying. I think Shotzi would try to take on one next, but he would be overpowered here. Of course he could try to use his telekinesis, but he might not be able to hold something that much stronger than him. So the first casualty we get in this fight is likely Shotzi, which would anger the others. After Shotzi was killed, Krillin uses his Scatter Kamehameha, which easily kills all of the Cybermen. With how much stronger he is, it doesn't miss one of the Cybermen, so all of them are killed. Also, some of this blast normally hit the Saiyans, but with them distracted fighting the others, this would obviously anger them. Anyway, I'm going to focus on Chi-Chi's fight with Nappa first. Though both Goku and Chi-Chi will likely request the others to stay on the sidelines at first since they are the ones with the best chance of being able to defeat the Saiyans. The only exception I see to this might be Piccolo, as I don't see him listening to them. He might be somewhat softer than he was before, but I doubt to the same degree he softened up by being around Gohan in the actual timeline. As for which fight he jumps in on, I think he might hop into the fight against Vegeta, since he is the stronger of the two. Anyway, for Chi-Chi's fight against Nappa, it would be similar to how Goku fought him in the actual timeline. Since she overpowers him, he would struggle against her, especially since he doesn't have a good way to counter her magic-infused attacks. Unlike when Goku fought him, she'd never have to use the Kaioken at some point since Vegeta wouldn't make him stop fighting her like he had him stop fighting Goku. So, he never ends up crippled and gets to keep fighting Chi-Chi for longer, even though it is a losing fight for him. As for Vegeta, he would be struggling against both Goku and Piccolo, especially when they start using the Kaioken. With both him and Nappa being pushed back, he might resort to making the artificial moon even earlier. This way, when he throws it into the sky, both he and Nappa turn into a Grade 8. For Nappa, this would bring his power level up to 75,000 while Vegeta's power level is still 180,000. The heroes split up, with Tien jumping in to help Goku and Piccolo against Vegeta. This means that Krillin, Yamcha, and Master Roshi try helping Chi-Chi against Nappa. Chi-Chi would be forced to use the Kaioken at this point, and assuming she can push her Kaioken up to 4 times like Goku can, this would make her power level 38,520. That in combination with the use of her magic would put a heavy strain on her body, so I see her trying to end this fight as soon as she can, when she gets the chance. This is where she would try using the binding chain she learned from King Yena in the battle. The Great Ape would fall to the ground and struggle against the chains. Together, Chi-Chi, Krillin, Yamcha, and Master Roshi will all charge her strongest Kamehameha. Assuming they can all use the Super Kamehameha or something like it, we can figure out how strong this blast would be. In the Piccolo Jr. saga, Goku had a power level of 306 and Super Kamehameha had a power level of 910. This is just a little under 3 times as strong as his base power level. For Chi-Chi, her Phoenix Kamehameha is a stronger version of the Arcane Kamehameha, which the Arcane Kamehameha was a variation of the Super Kamehameha. Instead of making it slightly under 3 times like the Super Kamehameha, I made it slightly over, so it did make its power level 117,486. That alone is stronger than Grade 8 Nappa, but her blast will still be combined with the others' Kamehamehas. If Krillin can also use the Kaioken up to 4 times, his power level would go up to 18,120, and his Super Kamehameha would have a power level of 53,886. Then as for Yamcha, since his power level is 1,480, his Super Kamehameha would have a power level of 4,401. Lastly, for Master Roshi, I gave his max power Kamehameha a slightly lower boost than the Super Kamehameha, so the power level of his Kamehameha would be 4,340. Overall, that gives our combined Kamehameha, which I'm calling the Turtle School Kamehameha, a power level of 180,113. This would be strong enough to tear through Nappa's body, even as a Grade 8, as it's over twice as strong as he is. It rips through his chest and essentially vaporizes his heart, killing him easily. At this point, Chi-Chi and Krillin would both drop out of using the Kaioken, as the heroes turn their attention to the others fighting with Vegeta. Goku, when using the Kaioken times 4, would have had a power level of 36,600. As for Piccolo, he would have a power level of 35,880 if he could also use the Kaioken times 4. They wouldn't have been anywhere near overpowering Vegeta, but they still could cause a sizable amount of damage with a combined blast as well. For Goku, if we use the Super Kamehameha multiplier, this would make it have a power level of 106,843. Then as for Piccolo and the Special Beam Cannon, during the fight against Raditz, his power level was 408 and the Special Beam Cannon was given a power level of 1,330. So, if he used it now and got that same boost, his Special Beam Cannon would have a power level of 116,961. To give them time to charge it, Tien would have used a Solar Flare to blind Vegeta. With their combined blast having a power level of 223,804, it would damage Vegeta greatly. However, I don't think it would kill him. Just like when Goku tried using the Spirit Bomb against him, he would have regained his eyesight slightly before. So, like when Krillin tried using the Destructo Disc on him, he jumps up to avoid it. Unlike when Krillin tried that, their combined blast hits him, but it misses his vitals so he survives, albeit wounded. This would also have taken a lot out of Goku and Piccolo, so they drop out of the Kaioken as well. I think this combined blast would have happened at the same time as the others using the Turtle School Kamehameha, so now that Nappa is dead, the heroes would all regroup. The battered Goku had one last idea, which is the Spirit Bomb, so he fills in Chi-Chi on this. She agrees to this plan, since she also knows how to use the Spirit Bomb. As for the others, they would be tasked with distracting Vegeta while they charge their attacks. With that plan in place, they give the few senzu beans they got from Korin to the others. They then go to distract Vegeta while they begin to charge their respective Spirit Bombs. I hinted at this earlier, but just like Chi-Chi did with the Arcane Kamehameha, I think she would have experimented with merging the Spirit Bomb with her magic. So, while Goku's gathering energy from living things around the planet, Chi-Chi attempts gathering energy from these magical sources around the world and gathering it into a Spirit Bomb of her own. Which, I'll also call this version of the Spirit Bomb the Arcane Spirit Bomb. Instead of being blue and white like Goku's Spirit Bomb, hers is likely a violet color instead. Regardless, the hero should be able to distract Vegeta for long enough, especially since he was heavily wounded. It's possible Krillin still tries to use the Destructo Disc to cut off Vegeta's tail, and with him having the Kaioken and Vegeta being injured, it likely succeeds this time. Even after he reverts to his base form, the heroes would still distract him until Goku and Chi-Chi are finally ready to use their Spirit Bombs. When they go to combine them, they look like two celestial bodies in orbit before merging into a blue-violet orb. Once it's fully combined, it'd likely be closer in size to the one we saw Goku use on Namek. I wasn't sure what to call this Spirit Bomb, but I was thinking about calling it something like the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bomb as a reference to Goku drawing power from living, or earthly, things, and Chi-Chi drawing power from the mystical, or heavenly, things. Regardless of what it's called, when throwing it, they'd use the last of their power to use the Kaioken times 4 once more, just to make sure Vegeta can't resist it. Then when this dual Spirit Bomb collides with Vegeta, he wouldn't be able to put up much of a fight. He might resist it momentarily, but given his injuries, he is soon overtaken and vaporized by the Spirit Bomb. Chi-Chi and Goku would then collapse, as they were both exhausted and battered through their fights against the Saiyans. With the Saiyan threat now defeated, the heroes would regroup as Bulma then arrived in her plane. As they get onto her plane, Krillin might still have the idea of going to Namek to try and revive him, since they might have Dragon Balls. Though it's at this time that Fortuneteller Baba would arrive, since with how much power Krillin used to push the Kaioken up to ×4, his time ran out faster. He has to go back to Otherworld, but the others promise to try and get to Namek to revive him. Chi-Chi would telepathically contact King Kai asking where this planet is, so he'd tell her. After that, things go the same as per usual, with Goku and Chi-Chi having to go to the hospital to recover until Corn can grow some senzu beans. Piccolo would also have to recover after this fight, so he would be stuck in the hospital as well. Anyway, Mr. Popo and Kami would both be able to direct Bulma to his old spaceship. As for who goes with her to Namek, I think Tien and Yamcha would be the ones to go. Since Krillin is dead, Chiaotzu is also dead, and in a sort of gag moment, Bulma might refuse to be stuck on a spaceship for a month with Master Roshi. With it decided who is going with her, they all prepare to leave as they gather at Kame House. Besides Goku and Chi-Chi, for obvious reasons, the other heroes gather to see them off. They take off into space soon afterwards, thus beginning their own month-long journey to planet Namek. While on the way to Namek, Tien and Yamcha would likely train together through image training like Krillin and Gohan normally did. It's also possible that Yamcha and Bulma might rekindle their relationship during this trip. Also, something to briefly mention is that around this time, Vegeta normally ran into Kui before going to Namek. With Vegeta being dead, Kui is never ordered to pursue him and kill him, so he doesn't go to Namek. Anyway, after the heroes arrive, they get off the ship and Bulma uses the Dragon Radar to confirm that there are Dragon Balls there. Not long after, some mysterious soldiers arrive since their scouters picked up on their power levels. As usual, one of them shoots and destroys the spaceship, but they're both easily defeated by Tien and Yamcha. Speaking about them, I figured I should mention how strong they are now. I gave them roughly the same boost Krillin got from his training on the way to Namek, so Tien's power level is now 1,930 and Yamcha's is 1,560. Anyway, after the soldiers were defeated, the heroes noticed the strong power levels flying by, with the highest being way stronger than Vegeta was. Bulma called Master Roshi to pass this information on so that he could go warn the others. After that, Bulma hides in a nearby cave as Tien and Yamcha go looking for the closest Dragon Ball. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Master Roshi arrives at the hospital to pass this warning on to Goku, Chi-Chi, and Piccolo. Yajirobe then arrives and gives them the senzu beans, so they each take one. Now that they're healed, Goku then reveals that he asked Bulma's father to make them a spaceship, so they take off to go see him. Once they arrive, since the spaceship is essentially done, they get in and take off. It'll only take them 6 days to get to Namek, so they start training together, as Goku still had the gravity machine installed. Back on Namek, Tien and Yamcha reach the Namekian village just in time to see Frieza have his men begin to kill the Namekians. Some warrior Namekians then arrive, and they manage to defeat Frieza's basic soldiers. While they are fighting, Mori uses this opportunity to destroy the scouters of Zarbon, Dodoria, and any soldiers that had one. This angers Dodoria, and he goes to kill Mori, but Frieza tells him to take out the warriors first. He easily does so, and Mori gives him the Dragon Ball, but when he refuses to tell them where the others are located, Frieza orders him to be killed. Frieza kills one of the children and Dodoria kills Mori before going to hunt down Dende. As for Tien and Yamcha who are watching this go down, I could see it going either way on if they'd intervene or lay low. I think Tien would want to lay low, but Yamcha would be the one who intervenes. After kicking Dodoria away, he would rescue Dende, as Tien comes in to help them escape. Dodoria still chases them, but Tien would use the solar flare to blind them, thus allowing them to escape. After regaining his sight, he blasts the ocean, and because he thinks he killed them, he takes off towards the others. Tien and Yamcha then take off to go back to Bulma, and they take Dende with them. As for Dodoria, without Vegeta being there to kill him, he returns to Frieza and reports that he killed the heroes. Regardless, once the others reach where Bulma is hiding, she lets him know that she heard Goku is on his way. Dende still questions how they know about the Dragon Balls, so Bulma explains everything they know. They then come up with a plan to get the last 2 Dragon Balls since they don't have to worry about Vegeta getting in their way. Yamcha will go to get the one from the village, while Tien will go with Dende to get the one from the Grand Elder. Since Vegeta isn't there, neither of them have to worry about hiding from Vegeta, so they can go there as fast as they want. After all, with the others having used scouters, they likely would have realized that they relied on them to sense power levels. Back with Goku and the others, they get into contact with King Kai while on the way to Namek. Once King Kai learns that Frieza is on Namek, he warns them to stay away from him at all costs. Meanwhile, back on Namek, Yamcha would likely be able to convince the Namekians in the last village to get the Dragon Ball before he leaves. some of Frieza's soldiers, who were sent to scout the planet, would find him there. So, he'd take them out before he flies back to where Bulma is hiding. Eventually, other soldiers in Dodoria would find a village, but they'd kill all the Namekians there once they realized the Dragon Ball was taken by someone else, likely the ones who got in their way earlier. Dodoria reports this to Frieza, and as usual, he likely summoned the Ginyu Force to bring the new scouters. After all, Frieza normally summoned them after learning the Dragon Ball in this village was gone. Without the scouters, he'd know that he would never be able to find the heroes, but he might also reveal that he had the odd premonition that a Saiyan might soon become a threat to him. Meanwhile, Tien and Dende arrive at the Grand Elder's house, and Nail greets him as he's been expecting them. Tien explains to Guru why he is there, and he unlocks his potential after giving him the Dragon Ball. When he asks if he can bring Yamcha there, Guru would agree, so he takes off to go get him. He soon retrieves him and brings him back to the Grand Elder, who unlocks his potential as well. Based on the power levels given for Krillin after his potential was unlocked, the initial boost would bring Tien's power level up to 14,000 and Yamcha's power level up to 11,000. While this wouldn't happen until later, when their power levels finished growing from their potential being unlocked, Tien would have a power level of 81,000 and Yamcha would have a power level of 63,000. Anyway, the Ginyu Force still arrives on Namek, so Frieza tasks him with finding and killing who took the Dragon Balls. Of course, it wouldn't take them long to find Yamcha and Tien, who were currently flying away from the Grand Elders. One saving grace for them is that they don't have the Dragon Balls with them, since they were dropped off with Bulma. This doesn't stop the Ginyu Force from fighting them, however, so they play rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to go first. Goldo ends up winning, so he is the one who has to fight them. At first, their fight would likely be similar to Gohan and Krillin's fight against him, but there might be one thing going in their advantage. Tien might have a better way to handle telekinesis than Krillin or Gohan did. After all, he is likely used to dealing with telekinesis from training with Shatsu for many years. So, it's potentially possible that he might know a way to break out of Goldo's telekinesis. That'd be their best chance of winning this fight, since Vegeta obviously isn't there to come behind and kill Goldo like he usually did. Assuming he is able to break out of this, he would appear behind Goldo and blast him to vaporize him. They'd likely play rock, paper, scissors again to see who gets to fight them next, and Recoome wins. So he steps up. In a fight against Recoome, they wouldn't stand a chance yet since their potential hasn't fully unlocked. So, they would be getting beaten down at first, but Recoome likely toys with them. This gives time for Goku, Chi-Chi, and Piccolo to arrive on Namek, and once they do, they quickly arrive at where they are. By this point, Tien and Yamcha were about to be killed by Recoome, so Goku gives him a Senzu Bean. He then steps up to fight Recoome, as he was confident that he could defeat him. Before getting into this fight, I'm going to go over how strong Goku, Chi-Chi, and Piccolo got through training under increased gravity. Even though Chi-Chi and Piccolo don't have the same advantages as Goku with his Saiyan nature, I'm going to assume that they were all able to handle training under 100 times gravity. With them training together instead of it being Goku training alone, I gave them a higher boost than the one Goku normally received. By the time Goku got to Namek, his power level normally went from slightly over 8,000 to 90,000. With the higher boost I gave him in this timeline, his power level goes from 9,150 to 119,000. When giving that same boost to Chi-Chi and Piccolo, her power level goes from 9,630 up to 126,000, and his goes from 8,970 up to 117,000. While Goku confronts Recoome, Chi-Chi would confront Jace and Piccolo confronts Birder. As usual, Goku would easily be able to knock out Recoome in one hit. As for Chi-Chi, she would be able to do the same thing to Jace even without using her magic. Then in Piccolo's fight against Birder, I don't see him just knocking him out, especially after knowing how many of the Namekians were killed by Frieza's men. He might do a similar thing that Vegeta did and kill the unconscious Recoome and Jace as well. Piccolo might be good by now, but he still isn't as soft as he normally would be. I also don't see him being the one to take risks of sparing someone after they already started wiping out the inhabitants of his race. Something to briefly mention is what Frieza would be up to, since normally during this time, he went to the Grand Elders to try and figure out how to use the Dragon Balls. Without having all 7 yet, he would never go there, so Nail wouldn't be beaten to near death by Frieza. Anyway, since they didn't have the last 2 Dragon Balls, as they couldn't find Bulma, Captain Ginyu was there when the rest of his force was killed. He's still angered and shocked by the deaths of his men, but when he gets into a fight with the 3 heroes, he doesn't stand a chance. After all, Captain Ginyu had a power level of 120,000, so Piccolo and Goku are both slightly below that power level, while Chi-Chi is slightly above it. They wouldn't even need to use a Kaioken to beat down Captain Ginyu, since when the 3 fight together, he couldn't even land a hit on them. Eventually he would be knocked unconscious as well, but Piccolo would likely finish him off, too. With them being dead, Frieza likely sends out Zarbon and Dodoria to search for the heroes, since they're his only major fighters left. However, I think this could be Tien and Yamcha's time to shine for once. By now, their potentials would be fully unlocked, So when they notice Zarbon and Dodoria scouring the planet for them, they would confront them. I see Tien being the one to fight Dodoria and Yamcha being the one to fight Zarbon. Even when transformed, Zarbon wouldn't stand a chance, so both Zarbon and Dodoria would be killed by them. This leaves the only threat left on Namek being Frieza, who has most of the Dragon Balls. As for the heroes, they only have 2 of the Dragon Balls, so they would have to come up with some type of plan to get the Dragon Balls from the Tyrant, but that also risks getting into a fight with him. Frieza likely wouldn't be the most patient person, especially not after learning that the entire Ginyu Force was killed, and after Zarbon or Dodoria never returned. So, he starts looking for the heroes himself to track down the other Dragon Balls, but they hide their power levels and take this time to come up with a plan. When Frieza finally begins scouring the planet for the heroes, this could be used as a distraction to their advantage, so they likely come up with a plan based around that. Since Chi-Chi knows how to use the Kai Kai, they could send her and Piccolo out to be the ones to cause the distraction. The others would hide their power levels, so Frieza's scouter would only sense Piccolo's power level. This gives the others a chance to get the Dragon Balls, and once they do, Chi-Chi can teleport them both away from Frieza. Before they put this plan into action, Tien and Yamcha might suggest that they should also go to see the Grand Elder and get their potential unlocked. This way, if they do get into a fight with Frieza, they'll at least stand a better chance against him. So, they would all hide their power levels and go to the Grand Elders together. Once they are there, Guru likely would unlock their potential, as I don't see him having a problem with it. For their power levels after they get their potential unlocked, I'm going to assume that they get the same boost in power that Krillin did. For Chi-Chi, this initially brings her power level up to 876,000, and it eventually goes up to 5 million when her potential is fully unlocked. As for Goku, initially his power level would be 827,000 before fully raising to 4,800,000. Finally, for Piccolo, his power level initially goes up to 813,000, and once it is fully unlocked, it goes up to 4,700,000. Anyway, with that out of the way, the heroes would then leave to go and put their plan in place. Before they leave, Guru unlocks Dende's potential and sends him with him so that he can help in summoning Kurunga. Regardless, like they had planned, Chi-Chi and Piccolo would go out and he would stop suppressing his power level so Frieza's scouter would pick it up. While Frieza is intelligent, I think he would be too angry at the heroes having stalled him getting his wish, so he would chase after this. The heroes would then sneak to Frieza's ship, and after being sure that he is gone, they make their way inside to search for the Dragon Balls. Meanwhile, back at the Grand Elders, he would notice that the heroes have put their plan in place and that Frieza was looking for Piccolo. He might try to send Nail out to help them as well, but just like he did in canon, I don't think he'd leave Guru alone without there being an immediate threat to the Grand Elder. By the time the heroes do find the Dragon Balls and get them outside, Frieza would have caught up to Chi-Chi and Piccolo. However, when the sky turns dark from Dende summoning Kurunga, this would briefly catch the Tyrant off guard. Chi-Chi uses this opportunity to use the Kai Kai to teleport themselves back to the others, and when Frieza's scouter notices the heroes' power levels all in one place, he would realize that he was tricked, so he would take off flying towards them as fast as he could go. Back with the heroes, they would use their first wish to revive Krillin, since that was what they came there to do. Before they could make their second wish, the Dragon Balls turned to stone, as the Grand Elder had passed away, with him being dead, and with Nail no longer having someone to protect. He'd likely start making his way to the heroes since that was the last order Guru gave him. By the time the Dragon Balls turned to stone, Frieza arrived at where the heroes were, so he would be angered enough to fight them. While it would be smart for the heroes to fight them all together, I think Piccolo would step up first, as he'd want to fight them. He'd have the advantage in this fight since Frieza's only in his first form. In fact, Piccolo's so much stronger than Frieza in his first form that he would be dominating this fight, thus angering the Tyrant even more. However, when he briefly manages to knock Piccolo away, he would use this opportunity to transform. Being in his second form would make the fight slightly closer, but he would still be getting dominated in this fight. So, if he can get the chance to transform again, he wouldn't hesitate to turn into his third form. Unlike in the original, Piccolo would still have the power advantage here. Frieza continuously being beaten like this would only serve to anger him even more, so he might be fighting sloppily, at least. He would be until he turns into his final form when he gets the chance to do so. Based on how strong Piccolo is, Frieza likely starts out less suppressed than normal, so that he can gain the advantage. Unfortunately for the Tyrant, this would force Piccolo into using the Kaioken. Assuming he can push the Kaioken as high as Goku could at this time, the Kaioken times 20 would give him a power level of 94 million. At this level of power, Piccolo would be dominating the fight once more and pummeling the Tyrant into the ground. He might hurry to try and finish things, but Frieza would continue to use more of his power until he was using his full power. Once and for all, Frieza would come out on top again, as Piccolo would be forced onto the back foot now. especially since his body likely couldn't handle the strain of the Kaioken times 20 for too long. He'd eventually drop out of it and get beaten down even more. Of course, when he starts getting tortured by the Tyrant is when the others would jump in to attack him together. If Goku and Chi-Chi could both use Kaioken times 20, his power level would be 96 million and her power level would be 100 million. Then while Yamcha and Tien don't have a power level that could do much to Frieza, they'd likely help in this as well. Before fighting the Tyrant together would be able to push him back. After all, Goku and Chi-Chi together have a power level that is stronger than Frieza's full power of 120 million. Her magic is also something I could see catching Frieza off guard, since he likely isn't skilled in handling fighting magic either. However, they wouldn't get to continue dominating Frieza like this for long. Their bodies couldn't handle the Kaioken times 20 forever, so their Kaioken would soon flicker away, thus letting Frieza get the advantage again. While they were fighting, it's likely that Dende would have tried healing Piccolo, which Frieza might have noticed. By this time, it's likely that Nail would have arrived as well. With the heroes being in a desperate shape and seemingly losing against Frieza, he might still suggest to Piccolo that they should merge together. He doesn't have anything else left to protect except the planet, so once Piccolo agrees, it would still be Nail that merges into Piccolo. Based on power scaling I've seen, him merging with Nail made Piccolo over 12 times stronger. I'm not going to do that here, however, as that would give him a power level of 16 million or 1.2 billion when using the Kaioken times 20. 1. I don't want to make Piccolo that strong. And 2. I still want to give Goku the win. Also, when they merged in canon, they were close in power level, which they aren't at this point. Instead, I gave him a less than double boost, since Nail's power level was only about 42,000. The boost I gave him brings his power level up to 8 million or 160 million when using the Kaioken times 20. While this boost still makes him stronger than Frieza, the Kaioken times 20 wouldn't last forever. When he rushes in to fight Frieza, Goku and Chi-Chi come up with a plan. As they begin to charge their own Spirit Bombs, Chi-Chi goes a step further than using the Arcane Spirit Bomb like she did against Vegeta. Like when she used the Phoenix Kamehameha before, Ochoko merges with her and she begins to make her Spirit Bomb infused with her fire magic. For the sake of simplicity, I'm calling it the Phoenix Spirit Bomb. As Goku gathers energy from Namek and the other nearby planets, Chi-Chi gathers energy from the magic sources on these planets. I imagine this version of the Spirit Bomb to look like a miniature white star, since this Spirit Bomb involves more of her divine energy, and they both were gathering energy from the nearby planets. I decided to call their combined Spirit Bomb the Celestial Spirit Bomb. For their combined Spirit Bomb, I'd imagine it looking more like a giant blue star instead. Regardless, throughout their time of charging it, Piccolo would have been beating down Frieza. When they finally finished charging their attacks, they're just in time, as Piccolo's Kaioken was fading. So, he uses the last of his Kaioken to rush out of the way while they throw their combined Spirit Bomb at Frieza. He did slam into the Tyrant and push him down into the ocean as water boils away around the blazing sphere. Once it fades away, the heroes collapse onto the island they're on, believing they won. Ochoko would separate from Chi-Chi as they then briefly begin to plan what to do next. Before they can make many plans, Frieza appears on the island behind them, in way worse shape than he was after being hit by Goku's Spirit Bomb in the canon story. He would have burn marks and blackened areas all over his body, and instead of just part of his tail being missing, he would look mangled as other parts of his body were likely burned away by Chi-Chi's purifying flames. I imagine more of his tail to be missing, and one of his arms to be gone from the elbow down. Parts of his body, like one side of his face, could even have a partially melted appearance. Regardless, in one swift motion, he uses a death beam to blast and kill Dende, before using another on Chi-Chi. This seemingly kills her, but before they can react, he lifts Piccolo into the air and causes him to explode like he normally did to Krillin. Why I said seemingly killed for Chi-Chi is that they can't sense her ki, so they don't know she is still alive. She was also knocked unconscious from this near-fatal attack, so she would be immobile. Regardless, before Frieza goes to attack again, something would snap within Goku, since he thought his wife was killed. He then turns into the Super Saiyan form as usual. Something to briefly mention is that Goku wouldn't know what to call this form, as Vegeta wasn't there to talk about the legend of the Super Saiyan. Though it's also possible Frieza might also mention that name, but I don't think Goku would be paying attention to what he's saying. Before he begins his fight with Frieza, he tells Yamcha and Tien to take Chi-Chi's body and return to Bulma. They wouldn't hesitate like Gohan started to, so they did as he told them to. Now, as for Goku's fight against Frieza, he would have an easier time here than usual. Not only is Frieza likely even weaker from the damage he received and from the strain of using his full power for longer than normal, but Goku is stronger as well. As a Super Saiyan, he would have a power level of 240 million, which is double Frieza's full power. So, he would be getting absolutely dominated in this fight and could barely get a hit in. Even then,
I still see him catching Goku off guard by seemingly going to use his death ball against him before throwing it into the planet instead, as they continue to fight.
things generally go similar to how they usually do. The heroes, minus Goku, end up learning that Chi-Chi is still alive when Kane contacts King Kai to tell them that Mr. Popo has collected the Dragon Balls. Anyway, they still make a wish for everyone killed by Frieza and his men to be revived.
King Kai then gets into contact with the now revived Guru and asks him to wish for everyone on Namek except for Frieza to be brought to Earth.
As usual,
Goku was listening in and tells him to change the wish so that everyone except himself and Frieza will be transported back to Earth.
Guru would agree,
So he'd get into contact with Dende, as he is the closest one to Purunga.
and they would make this wish for them.
So they were all transported back to Earth. With Dende now being on Earth, he would heal Chi-Chi so she doesn't succumb to her injuries. When she comes to, they would fill her in on what happened and how she got to Earth.
Purunga then reminds them that they have one wish remaining, so they use it to transport the Namekians to a new planet. In this timeline,
Guru would briefly get to see their new homeworld. However, he would soon pass away again, but he passes on the role of Grand Elder to Mori before he does.
regardless, back on Namek,
Things in the fight with Frieza would be going even more in Goku's favor. It would be going by a lot faster too.
given how much stronger he is. Though it's likely that Frieza is still cut in half eventually,
But since he was already missing an arm,
he likely loses his remaining arm from this attack. Given Frieza's worst state in this timeline,
and since he likely took more damage from Goku, he would fall unconscious after this.
this means that he can't plead for energy as he usually did, so he's left on Namek as it gets closer to exploding. As for Goku,
With him defeating Frieza far faster than usual, he has more time to find a spaceship and escape. With him escaping the planet before it exploded,
King Tai would immediately know that he survived instead of it being left ambiguous at first. Frieza wouldn't be so lucky, though.
since he was unconscious when the planet exploded, he would die alongside it.
Instead of the heroes thinking he's dead,
King Kai would likely get in contact with Goku,
and Goku would have him pass on a message that he won't be back right away.
but he will be eventually.
So, the heroes go back to living their daily lives as they wait for Goku to return.
A year soon passes after the defeat of Frieza, and Goku still hasn't returned yet, though things in this timeline are going to be a lot different, as Frieza being dead changes a lot.
With Frieza being dead,
King Cold never would have learned that the one who defeated Frieza was from Earth.
so it's likely he takes the Empire back over, but he also can't track down Frieza's killer. This means that instead of the warrior from the future coming back to defeat them and warn the heroes, they just come back to warn the heroes.
Instead of going to the wasteland to meet Goku when he arrives, they might go to meet Chi-Chi instead.
Before getting into that, I'm going to explain who this future warrior is. Since Bulma and Yamcha are still together in this timeline, I made the future warrior a child of theirs. As usual when I keep Bulma and Yamcha together in a timeline, I still make their child a son named Trunks.
Just for the sake of simplicity,
Anyway, with that out of the way,
I can get into what he does now that he is in the past.
he might try going to the lookout to meet Chi-Chi there.
Though this would take some explaining about why he would know where it is.
From what we know of the future timeline, the lookout was likely destroyed, so future Trunks never would have known where it was. In this timeline, the only reason he might have learned its location is from his mother, Bulma, since she likely knew about it because of Yamcha having trained there. He would have tried looking for it in his timeline,
But with it being destroyed,
he couldn't find it. Regardless, when he does manage to find the lookout in the past and arrive there,
he is quickly greeted by Chi-Chi. He would explain who he is.
and that he's Bulma and Yamcha's son from the future. Though that wouldn't be a shock like him being Vegeta's son in our timeline was. Anyway, he'd give her the warning about the androids arriving in 3 years. He'd also tell her about the heart virus that ended up killing her.
When she died, the Dragon Balls went with her.
And then the others died at the hands of the androids not long after. So, he gives her a capsule of the heart virus medicine. After Trunks finishes explaining, he says he'll be back to help against the androids, as he then leaves. Chi-Chi then goes on to contact all of the other heroes and give them the warning about the androids arriving in 3 years.
Goku also arrives later that day, and while he does tell the others what he was up to while he was gone, Chi-Chi passes the warning on to him as well.
With everyone having been warned now,
They would all go to begin their training in preparation for the androids. Chi-Chi might have had 2 ideas on how to further her own training after hearing about how Goku trained on planet Yardrat. Both ideas would initially involve her going to talk to King Kai. The first idea is her trying to convince King Kai to allow her to meet and train with the other Kais.
though this also might involve her briefly training under King Kai again.
Since he didn't really get to teach her anything magic related before, and he might be able to briefly do so.
The other idea would have been to help her find planet Yardrat so that she could train there.
I think some of the techniques Goku mentioned them having would have piqued her interest, since they could go well with her magic. such as their healing or the Force Spirit Fission. There's also the possibility that she could explore both options, since with how much stronger she is now, it likely wouldn't take long to train under the Kais. As for training on Yardrat, it only took Goku a year, so it could be roughly the same for her to train there. She might be reluctant to be off of the planet for that long, since she's the Guardian, but through using her magic, she should be able to keep an eye on the Earth even when she is away. The order doesn't really matter, but I'm going to start with how she could train with the Kais. These are going to go by pretty quick, as we don't know a lot about how each Kai trains their students, but we do have some basic information about them. From what we know about the East Kai, her training seemed to focus around speed, so Chi-Chi likely learns how to weave her magic into her movement in ways that increases her speed, but also allows her to misdirect opponents with the trails of fire or light that are left behind. As for training with the West Kai, we just know that he taught Pecan a technique and fighting stance to go with it, so his training might focus on offense. So, for her, he could train her on how to make her magic more destructive, such as using it to cause condensed explosions instead of just bursts of flames. As for the South Kai, his training focused on defense, so he could teach her how to use her spiritual flames to shield herself from corruption, along with some basic healing techniques. Lastly, if she trains with King Kai again, they could work on trying to develop the Kaioken in a way that also utilizes her magic, instead of just being able to use her magic while using the Kaioken, which puts more strain on her body. I'm meaning she tried to find a way to merge the two without causing as much strain. This could manifest in something that magnifies her magical energy instead of just her physical output, but since it still does magnify her physical output, there'd always be stress on her body. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'd call this version of the Kaioken combined with her magic the Arcane Kaioken. Overall, she likely trained for about a year with the Kais, or roughly 3 months per Kai. Now, as for training on Yardrat, she'd have to start with learning the basics of spirit control, but when it comes to learning a technique, I don't think she'd learn the instant transmission, since she already knows the Kai, which is basically a more advanced way of teleporting. Instead, I think she'll learn healing from them to improve on the basic knowledge she has of it that Kami and South Kai taught her. If she gets time, she might learn the basics of Force Spirit Fission, but I don't think she would be anywhere near ready to use it in battle by the time the androids arrive. Once she finishes training on Yardrat for about a year, she'd return to Earth and spend the last year before the androids arrive training alongside the other heroes. 3 years after the defeat of Frieza soon passes, Goku, Chi-Chi, and Piccolo make their way towards Amendo Island together. While they're on their way there, Krillin meets up with them and joins them. Once they arrive, Tien, Yamcha, and Bulma were already there, and Bulma was carrying Trunks. Unlike Goku, Chi-Chi wouldn't slip up by saying the baby's name before she was told it. Also, as usual, Tien left Shotsu behind since he wouldn't be able to keep up. Another slight change to that Master Roshi might also be here, since he stayed involved in fighting for longer by helping against the Saiyans. He might also help in the fight against the androids. Before going further, I briefly want to mention that more heroes like Yamcha and Tien might know the Kaioken as well, since I think Krillin would have passed on what he knew about it. Regardless, Yajirobe soon comes in to give them sensu beans, but he doesn't stay to help fight. While he is leaving, his plane is shot down, as the heroes then spot the androids going into the city. The heroes follow them into the city, and after they kill some civilians, Yamcha discovers them. Before he can alert the others, he is still stabbed through the chest by one of the androids. The others sense his energy dropping, so they all race towards where Yamcha is. Goku has Krillin take Yamcha back to where Bulma is to give him a sensu bean. He then turns back to the androids and suggests for them to move to a deserted area, so one of them starts destroying the city. With Chi-Chi being the Guardian, I see her being the one to rush in and attack the android before telling them to follow them. The androids agree to this, and when they call the heroes by name, it confuses them about how they know that information. Krillin and Yamcha notice the others leaving, and since Yamcha needs to warn them that they can drain energy, they take off as well. Bulma then starts to berate Yajirobe for not going to help, but after he mentions that he can't fly, she apologizes. Anyway, once they reach somewhere deserted, Chi-Chi began questioning the androids about how they know them. While they're talking, Tien notices that she's already out of breath just by flying there. In this timeline, Chi-Chi might have been the main focus of Dr. Gero's plan for revenge, since she was the one who destroyed the Red Ribbon Army. Piccolo notices that he's talking like he's Dr. Gero, but he denies this and introduces himself as Android 20 and the other android as Android 19. Their fight soon starts, with Chi-Chi using the Kaioken as she rushes in at 19. It's possible she might be able to push the Kaioken higher than 20 times since she continued training to use it over the past 3 years. By now, I'm going to assume she can push it up to 50 times, since that's likely how much would be needed to take the androids on.
Of course, the stranded Kaioken will only speed up how fast the heart virus begins to take effect. So, while she has the advantage at first, Piccolo and Goku both notice how she seems to be rushing the fight. Around this time is when Yamcha and Krillin arrive, so they pass on the information that the androids can drain energy through their hands. The androids might have been built slightly different in this timeline as well. Dr. Gero might have built them to at least somewhat be able to resist Chi-Chi's magic since they knew about it. It's hard to say how he could make them resist magic more, but since she tends to use fire magic, it could have come about in ways of being more flame resistant. Also, it's still possible they could absorb her attacks as she mixes ki and magic. So, when she tries using her arcane Kamehameha, it just ends up being absorbed by 19. This allows 19 to get the advantage, and he starts to beat down Chi-Chi in return. She eventually begins to clutch her chest, which is when the others realize that she's getting sick with the heart virus. Krillin tries to give her a senzu bean, and that doesn't work, as her Kaioken then fades away. The others try rushing in to help her, but 20 gets in the way. Piccolo still tries standing up to him, but he is still shot with his eye lasers. Goku then uses the instant transmission to get around 20, as he then goes Super Saiyan and knocks 19 away from Chi-Chi. After giving Chi-Chi to Piccolo, he has Yamcha take her home to get the medicine. Now, as for Goku and 19's fight, it would be similar to 19's fight with Vegeta. Goku would still have to find a way to defeat 19 without him absorbing his energy, so he'd let the android grab him. He'd then rip the android's hands off before blasting him and destroying him when he tries to flee. When the other heroes turn their attention towards 20, he flies off to hide, so Goku gets the senzu bean. They fly after him, but without them being able to sense them, he can't find them. As usual, he ends up grabbing Piccolo from behind to absorb his energy. Piccolo telepathically contacts Goku, so he comes and knocks 20 away. After Krillin gives Piccolo a senzu bean, he starts to beat down 20. Meanwhile, future Trunks arrives on Earth. After seeing the partially destroyed state of Amenbo Island, he takes off towards the others. He eventually finds 19's head and doesn't recognize this android, so when he arrives at the battlefield, he asks who they're fighting. Bulma and Yajirobe come by in her plane, and in the confusion, Gero takes his chance to blast it down. He then flees while Trunks goes to save them, and after she is saved, she still mentions that she recognized that android as Dr. Gero himself. They then have Trunks explain what the androids from his timeline looked like, and they also ask Bulma if she knew where Gero's lab is. Tien is the one to take Bulma and Yajirobe to safety along with going to pass on the news about the androids to Yamcha and Chi-Chi. As for the others, they begin to chase after Dr. Gero, but he still manages to reach his lab first. Krillin spots him going into it, so he raises his energy to alert the others. This warning comes too late, however, as Gero awakens 17 and 18. Piccolo blasts the doors down to the lab, but the androids ignore them as they go to awaken Android 16. Gero tries to order them not to, but they disobey him and 17 kills them. Trunks tries to blast the pod and destroy it before they can wake up 16, but this would be to no avail, as they manage to get it and escape. Android 16 is still released, and after they take off, the heroes follow them. Something to briefly mention about 16 is that his main goal would be to defeat Chi-Chi since she is the one who defeated the Red Ribbon Army. Regardless, the heroes still get into a fight with the androids on the road, but it's Goku that steps up to fight 18 in this timeline. Even with Goku being there to help fight, the heroes are still easily defeated by 17 and 18, with Krillin being the only one left standing. Before they leave, Krillin questions him about why they're doing this, and 17 basically says it's just a game. Regardless, 18 still has the moment of kissing Krillin's cheek before they leave. Once they leave, Krillin goes and gives senzu beans to the others, as they begin to discuss what to do next. Goku is the one sent to move Chi-Chi from their house so that once she recovers, they can come up with a plan. When Krillin tries asking Piccolo about if he has a plan and mentions that he can tell them since they're friends, he still gets angered and leaves. Since Tien was on Namek in this timeline and Krillin wasn't, it's Tien who realizes he went to go merge with Kami. When Piccolo arrives on the lookout, Kami likely still has him wait just so he can see if these androids really are dangerous. Meanwhile, the androids still end up stealing a van, and 18 plans for them to go get clothes before they go to look for Goku and Chi-Chi. As for the heroes, Tien goes to check in with Shotzi while Goku, Krillin, and Trunks head to help take Chi-Chi to Kame House. After they load Chi-Chi into the plane, they begin to head to Kame House. While on the way there, Krillin calls Bulma to fill her in on what's happening, and this is when she asks if Trunks is there. Since he is, she talks to him and explains how someone found a vehicle with the Capsule Corp logo on it. Once she faxes the picture over, he recognizes it as his time machine even though he still had it in a capsule with him. So, he gets the address from her and goes to meet up with her while the others continue towards Kame House. When
future Trunks arrives where Bulma is. They find the time machine, and he confirms it's like his, but he also has his with him. Regardless, in the time machine they found, they still realize something blasted its way out from inside. They also found the eggshell inside it along with the year it came back to the past from. Up on the lookout, Kami still mentions to Piccolo that something terrible will soon happen on this planet, so they will have to merge soon. Back with Trunks and Bulma, they still find the insect molt and realize whatever was in it came out of its shell not long ago. Bulma then leaves in her plane while Trunks flies to go to Kame House. Back with the androids, 18 still ends up stealing new clothes, and once the cops chase them, she easily destroys their car. Then with Bulma, while on her way home, she hears a report about how all the residents of Gingertown have vanished, which is near where they found the time machine. Now that the others are at Kame House, Bulma calls the others to inform them about this. Up on the lookout, Kame finally decided to merge with Piccolo, so they do so. With Piccolo now knowing everything Kame did, he takes off to Gingertown. After arriving, the freak of nature comes out and absorbs the richest man in the town in front of Piccolo. It then tells Piccolo that he's next, which Piccolo was confused how it knew him. When the monster charges its energy, the other heroes don't notice it. However, Trunks and Krillin start flying towards where Piccolo and this monster are when they sense Piccolo's energy. Regardless, the creature doesn't explain who it is, so Piccolo charges up to fight it. While they begin to fight, the androids don't notice the power of this creature like they usually did. This creature soon uses the Kamehameha against Piccolo, and when he dodges it, the monster grabs Piccolo and drains his arm. Piccolo then convinces it to explain what it is, so it introduces itself as Cell, and explains that she was made by Dr. Gero. Why I say she is because of Chi-Chi being the main target this time. With Cell being made to kill her, Cell might have been made more like her as a result. So, she would likely be more feminine in design and could use techniques of Chi-Chi's as well, such as her magic. As for why her power can't be sensed, she has obtained a God Key from having the cells of Chi-Chi. Anyway, she also explains how she needs 17 and 18 to be complete, and then Piccolo regrows his arm as he reveals he was pretending to be weak to trick Cell into giving him information. Before continuing, something I didn't think to mention in the last part is that the androids in this version of Cell might be stronger than they usually were. With the heroes being stronger, and with more of them having access to the Kaioken like Goku did, Dr. Gero might have made the androids and Cell stronger to counter that, though he still wouldn't have had access to anything that happened on Namek. Regardless, Trunks and Krillin then arrive, and after Cell learns that Chi-Chi is still alive in this timeline, she uses the solar flare to escape. She fled to go around absorbing the energy of others while hiding from the heroes until she was strong enough to absorb the androids. After she leaves, Tien arrives, so Piccolo fills him, Krillin, and Trunks in on who Cell is and what happened. As usual, Piccolo still points out that they either need to kill Cell or 17 and 18 before she can absorb them. They then split up, with Trunks and Krillin going to explore Gero's sub-lab. While there, they find the blueprints for the androids and then destroy the lab with this timeline's version of Cell along with it. Now that the lab is destroyed, they take the blueprints they found to Bulma to see what her and her father can do with them. 3 days later, Chi-Chi is completely recovered from the heart virus and woke up. After Goku finds her awake, he explains his plan for them to use the hyperbolic time chamber for them to train. She'd likely agree, so they teleport to the others and fill them in as well. Without Vegeta being alive in this timeline, it'd be Goku and Chi-Chi that go in first, though I still don't think Goku would choose for them to spend 2 days inside of the time chamber, so they would only go in for 1. Meanwhile, at Kame House, the androids arrive looking for Chi-Chi. As usual, Piccolo comes out to confront them, and he gets into a fight with 17. He'd likely perform better in this timeline since he can use the Kaioken, but 17 still suggests that they go to another place to fight since they're destroying the island. Meanwhile, Cell notices them fighting, so she makes her way there to try and absorb the androids. Back with Piccolo and 17, the android likely still outlasts him since he has infinite energy and using the Kaioken will just drain Piccolo's stamina even faster. While they were fighting, Krillin got a call from Bulma saying that she finished the remote to deactivate the androids. However, Cell then arrives, and once the heroes at Kame House noticed this, Krillin took off to meet Bulma halfway. Tien then took off as well to go and help Piccolo in his fight against Cell. Back with Cell, Piccolo tries to warn 17 to run, but he then gets into a fight with her. Piccolo helps 17 in his fight against her, but with him being too tired to use the Kaioken again, his neck is still broken. He's blasted through the chest, and then tossed to the side. Before Cell could absorb 17, 16 stepped up to fight her. 16 still does well at first, and seemingly destroys her, so 17 and 18 still refuse to run. This is when Cell took the opportunity to absorb 17 while his guard was down. After turning into her semi-perfect form, she easily blasts 16 away, damaging him in the process.
She then turns her attention to 18, but when her trick of trying to convince her to be absorbed fails, she gets ready to fight her. However, Tien uses his Neo Tri-Beam along with the Kaioken to hold Cell in place for as long as he can. With Goku and Chi-Chi being in the hyperbolic time chamber, there isn't anyone there to rescue them, so Tien and Piccolo likely die at the hands of Cell. When they do exit the hyperbolic time chamber, they wouldn't waste any time, as they teleport to where Cell is. By the time they arrived, Cell was already going on a rampage of destroying island after island in his search for 18. She was just about to destroy the island 18 and 16 were on when they arrived. They land on the island, and after directing Cell to do the same, Chi-Chi likely steps up to fight her. Through Chi-Chi's training in the hyperbolic time chamber, she likely would have been trying to practice using the Kaioken at higher multipliers. We don't know exactly how strong the other grades of Super Saiyan between Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 are, but if Chi-Chi could push her Kaioken higher than 50 times, she could be able to match whatever multiplier Ascended Super Saiyan has. Anyway, in their fight, Chi-Chi would have the advantage power-wise. However, she wasn't going to just let Cell absorb Android 18 like Vegeta did, so she would try everything she could to stop that. While they were fighting, Krillin would still approach 18 with the remote, but instead of using it to deactivate her, he crushes it. This is when Cell notices 18, so she tries to rush towards her, but Chi-Chi and Goku get in her way. Instead of using the solar flare, she finally shows off her magic for the first time, and she uses it to create chains that bind Goku and Chi-Chi. As they fall to the ground, she rushes in and absorbs 18 before she can react. This gives Cell her perfect form, but while she was powering up, she dropped the binds on Goku and Chi-Chi. Krillin tries rushing in since she killed 18, but she easily knocks him away. Chi-Chi rushes in once more, and while using the Kaioken at the same multiplier from earlier, she merges with Hochoko again and tries using a Phoenix Kamehameha. Just like Vegeta's final flash, this doesn't kill Cell, so she then knocks Chi-Chi unconscious. Goku then rushes in to fight Cell, but with anger clouding his judgment, he loses this fight as well. While they were fighting, Krillin used this distraction to take Chi-Chi and bring her somewhere safe. After Goku reverts to his base form, Cell considered killing him, but he'd ask how they managed to improve in a short amount of time. Goku wouldn't reveal how, but Cell would ask if they could improve further if they had more time. Cell still decides to host the Cell Games 10 days from now, so she briefly explains how it'll work and tells him to keep his eyes on the news. As she then leaves, while Goku is explaining this to the others, 16 comes in and momentarily puts aside his desire to defeat Chi-Chi as he asks him to take him to Capsule Corporation. This way, he could get repaired and help them against Cell, so Krillin agrees. The next day, Cell made her arena and then went to make her TV broadcast. The rules stayed the same for it, so nothing about her broadcast changes. As for the heroes, the only others that might use the time chamber is Trunks and Yamcha, not because they think it'd help against Cell, but because they think Yamcha would want to use this time to help his son get even stronger before he returns to the future. With Yamcha having learned the Kaioken from Krillin, I could see him wanting to pass on that knowledge to Trunks. So training in the hyperbolic time chamber would be the best way for him to do so. As for Goku and Chi-Chi, he still thinks it'd be best for them to spend the next 9 days out of the hyperbolic time chamber to rest and train. Before the day of the Cell Games arrives, the military tries confronting her, but she easily defeats them. Also, the current world martial arts champion, Hercule, announced that he would challenge Cell. The heroes still gather the Dragon Balls before the Cell Games as well, so that they can use them after Cell is defeated. When the day of the Cell Games finally arrives, everyone would meet on the lookout before going to the arena. Meanwhile, at the arena, Hercule is still the first one to arrive. The next one to arrive would be Android 16, who was repaired by Bulma and her father by now. Lastly, Goku, Chi-Chi, Trunks, Krillin, Yamcha, and Master Roshi arrive at the arena. When Krillin, Goku, and Chi-Chi go to talk to Android 16, she tries to tell him to do his best, but he tells her not to forget that he was made to kill her. Even though Goku has already fought Cell once, he would still want to be the first one to fight her. Chi-Chi wouldn't have a problem with this, but Hercule then jumped in and insisted on going first. Goku likely still tries to warn him to go home so he isn't killed, but that wouldn't work. Regardless, Hercule still tries showing off before fighting Cell, but he is still swatted away in one hit. Goku then steps into the ring as he prepares to fight Cell. Nothing would really change about their fight, since even with Cell being stronger than usual, the heroes are stronger than usual as well, so it'd likely even out. Though when I say nothing would really change in their fight, I mean at first. Goku still might struggle to counter magic, so when Cell is using it, he might not be able to keep up with her. Instead of the match almost ending with a ring out that caused Cell to destroy the ring, she actually ends up knocking Goku out of the ring, which that worked out in Goku's favor anyway, since if he would have continued to fight her, he would have been killed. After all,
he normally forfeited to let Gohan fight,
but Gohan doesn't exist in this timeline, so that wouldn't have happened here.
with their fight ending earlier than usual.
Cell isn't exhausted,
So Goku might not get a senzu bean to give to her, since Chi-Chi is the next fighter who would step up to challenge Cell. This is also helpful to Chi-Chi.
After all, with her having to rely on the Kaioken,
which can quickly drain her stamina, she has a better chance of keeping up with a tired Cell.
As a brief side note,
In contrast to Chi-Chi's golden white aura,
I imagine Cell's as being a more toxic looking violet color when using her magic.
once Chi-Chi does enter the ring, she starts with using the Kaioken times 20.
However,
At Cell's level of power,
she would easily be able to counter any of her attacks or use magic barriers of her own to block them. This forces Chi-Chi to push her Kaioken up to a 50 times multiplier,
but even then, Cell is still pushing her back.
Chi-Chi soon stops holding back.
And after summoning Hochoko, she soon merges with her once more,
This allows Chi-Chi to start using the Arcane Kaioken.
which she then pushes it up to a 100 times multiplier.
The amount of power thrown off by this level of Kaioken would be forcing Chi-Chi's body to the limit of what her mortal flesh could handle at this time. So,
This would be forcing her to try and finish this fight fast.
as her energy flares around her with divine flames,
She begins to clash with Cell, who is surrounded in her own corrupted-looking flames.
in Chi-Chi's first fight against Cell,
She didn't get to use her Force Spirit Fission before Cell used her magic to restrain her.
this time,
She decides to try and use it before her Kaioken runs out or before Cell decides to restrain her.
in the reverse of their first fight,
She uses her own magic to restrain Cell.
while she is restrained,
She uses the Force Spirit Fission, ripping 17 and 18 from Cell's body.
once they are freed from Cell, she reverts to her imperfect form. As for Chi-Chi, using the Arcane Kaioken finally caught up to her,
And she collapsed into her base form.
now unable to move.
This means that the magic she was using to restrain Cell would disappear.
The now angered Cell
Who realized she wouldn't be able to beat the heroes in a fight.
decided to blow herself up and take the world out with her.
With Chi-Chi now being immobile, she can't do anything to stop Cell.
So, Goku briefly turns to the other heroes, as he realizes he's the only one left who can save the planet now.
He tells them goodbye, and then teleports in front of Cell.
He gives a brief speech of telling Chi-Chi goodbye as well, along with that he loves her and that he's sorry for having to do this.
As he then teleports Cell away.
As usual,
He brings her to King Kai's planet, and once she explodes, this also kills Goku and King Kai in the process.
normally, Cell managed to survive this, but I don't think she would in this timeline. She doesn't have Frieza's DNA.
So she doesn't have the added durability from his race.
Without that durability, I don't think Cell would be able to survive.
So she perishes as well alongside Goku.
Regardless,
With Cell now defeated,
the others help the immobile Chi-Chi to get to the lookout. Krillin will likely insist on taking the unconscious androids with them.
so he gets 16's help to bring them along.
After they leave, Hercule still claims that he is the reason for why they won. When they get to the lookout,
The androids still wake up, but they still leave after finding out Cell was defeated.
however,
Unbeknownst to the heroes, they sneak back once they see that Shenron was summoned.
the heroes' first wish is for anyone who was killed by Cell to be brought back to life. When they notice that this didn't bring Goku back,
They try to ask Shenron about it, and he says that he can't bring back anyone who has died once before.
as usual, Goku gets into contact with them through King Kai and says that he doesn't want to come back to Earth. Even with Chi-Chi having been the main target of Dr. Gero,
He'd still have realized that villains were only coming to Earth because of him.
after all,
Chi-Chi was only in the position to take out the Red Ribbon Army since she joined Goku on his adventure in the first place.
without him,
The threats of the androids and Cell might not have ever existed.
Goku then tells him that he's getting to keep his body in the afterlife and he'll see them again when they die. As for the second wish, Krillin still uses it to wish for the bombs to be removed from the androids after wishing to turn them into humans didn't work. Afterwards, when overhearing Krillin say that he thought 17 is the perfect guy for 18,
She jumps out of hiding to reveal that she and 17 are twins. She still says later to him, and takes off from the lookout with 16 and 17 following her.
now that they're done making their wishes to Shenron, the heroes all go their separate ways until the next day.
When tomorrow arrives,
They all meet up at Capsule Corporation to say goodbye to Trunks, as he then returns to the future.
the future timeline is going to be short to discuss.
After all, unlike the future Trunks we know,
The future Trunks of this timeline is a lot weaker since he's just a normal human.
I'm getting ahead of myself, though.
As this part begins when Trunks was just a baby.
All of the heroes are gathered on the lookout.
As Goku soon comes out and informs the others that Chi-Chi died from the heart virus.
With her death,
The Dragon Balls were taken with her. 6 months later, the androids then begin their attack, and when the heroes heard about this, they went to confront them.
Goku was the first one to try and fight the androids,
but he was killed by both of them.
Next was Piccolo,
but he met his fate at the hands of 18.
As for Yamcha,
he was killed by 17.
Tien also tried to fight them, though 18 killed him.
2.
Then was Krillin, but both of the androids killed him. Even Master Roshi tried to fight them, but 17 ended his life as well. The androids then turned their attention to Shotsu and finished him off. Lastly, 18 blasted Yajirobe through the chest before leaving. Unbeknownst to them, he ended up surviving from Korin coming down and giving him a sensu beam. Over the following years, attacks we've seen the androids do at places like Superworld,
Pepper Town,
and Bridgetown would still happen. While Trunks would have been training in this timeline,
since he is just a regular human, he might listen to his mother and not rush in to fight the androids.
After all, the other human heroes didn't stand a chance against them, either. Instead,
he would be helping his mother with building the time machine.
When it's finally finished,
he takes it back to the past for the first time to give Chi-Chi the heart virus medicine.
After his return,
he waits a year before he goes back again to help the heroes in their fight against the androids.
Even though he didn't manage to do a lot to help the heroes,
he still comes back a lot stronger from the hyperbolic time chamber.
This time,
he brought the shutdown remote Bulma had created to use against the androids.
So, when he hears the radio broadcast about them attacking Parsley City,
he goes there to confront them. He doesn't give them a chance to attack,
as he then uses the shutdown remote on them. With them deactivated, he's able to easily blast and destroy them, thus saving his timeline from the android threat. However, he still realizes that he'd have to deal with the threat of Cell, so he knows the world isn't safe yet. 3 years soon pass,
and as Trunks was about to go back in time to tell the heroes he defeated the androids, he calls out to Cell,
as she was nearby to ambush him. After all, he knew her plan from having seen Cell in the past.
Though when he gets into a fight with her,
he has to use the Kaioken he learned from his father in the past. He might have to push it up to a 50 times multiplier, which he likely could by now, just to match the strength of a Super Saiyan to be able to kill Cell. So,
he then fires a blast of his own at Cell when she tries to use the Kamehameha, and it easily vaporizes her.
After falling back to his base form, he goes to meet up with his mother and celebrate. Their timeline was now in a time of peace thanks to Trunks, so they can focus on helping rebuild the Earth. Sometime throughout the 7 years between the Cell Saga and the Buu Saga, if you look at non-canon material, Goku participated in the Otherworld tournament. As a prize for winning the tournament, the winner would have trained with the Grand Kai. While I'm not including the Otherworld tournament in this timeline, that saga did give me an idea. Since Chi-Chi is the Guardian of Earth and has trained with all of the other Kais in this timeline, training with the Grand Kai could be a possibility for her.
Perhaps King Kai would introduce her to him, which would set up her eventually training under him.
Now, we don't really know how the Grand Kai would train anyone.
He could teach her how to fully blend her magic and ki into one instead of just layering them. This would allow her to sustain things like the Arcane Kaioken for longer without harming herself. Other than that, I'm not really sure what he could teach her. I just thought he could help when it comes to mastering the blending of these techniques and with getting a better handle on the Kaioken because of how knowledgeable he is.
Overall, I think this training with the Grand Kai would take about a year to do.
This will also give her the time to grieve properly and process her feelings after Goku's death. Anyway,
through her training with the Grand Kai, her power will come less from passion and more from serenity. While her anger was already rare by this point, now it is seldom seen.
But it is terrifying when it is.
It's kind of like a volcano that's dormant for centuries but can be disastrous when it erupts.
By the end of her training, she'd also have made peace with Goku's death, not because she doesn't miss him, but because she's learned to carry on his memory.
After all,
she'd know his spirit is still out there and that he isn't truly gone. Also, she would no longer be driven to surpass others.
Instead, her focus would be fully on finding harmony instead of dominance. Her focus was already leaning more towards the harmonious side of things,
especially after becoming Guardian, but this is when her focus fully shifts.
This more serene tone of hers would give her a quiet mentor-like air. I see her as being something between King Kai's humor and Whis' composure. Regardless, with that out of the way, 7 years soon pass after the defeat of Cell.
Chi-Chi would have been back on Earth by now, as she still had her duties as the Guardian. Even with the Earth being in a time of peace, she would take her duties of watching the planet seriously. Anyway, the major difference in this timeline is that there isn't an equivalent of the Great Saiyaman saga.
Gohan was never born, none of the heroes had a child near his age,
so there isn't anyone to take his place.
As for Videl,
I think she would be just fine taking care of the robbers we normally see Gohan handle.
in my opinion, Videl seems to be far stronger than the average human,
So she could likely handle them if she isn't shot somewhere fatal.
Anyway,
Without Gohan there to meet Videl, Goku would never hear about the tournament and decide to come back for a day.
so the other heroes never decide to join it either since they only seem to agree to see Goku, or in the case of Piccolo,
Because Gohan asked him to go.
when the Supreme Kai comes to Earth.
It's likely his plan would have to change as well, at least at first.
Without the heroes planning to go to the World Martial Arts Tournament,
He would likely have to go and meet up with them before the tournament to explain his plan.
which, the most likely option is for him to go to the Lookout to explain his plan to Chi-Chi.
Since she is the guardian of this planet,
Just like Piccolo.
she would likely realize something is different about him.
However,
She obviously wouldn't think he is a Grand Kai like Piccolo did, since she has met the Grand Kai, so she might realize that he is the Supreme Kai.
after explaining why he is there,
Shin might still suggest for them to go to the tournament so that they can find where Babidi is hiding. Chi-Chi would get in contact with the other heroes to have them come and help as well,
at this point, it would likely be too late for Goku to come back for a day.
so he wouldn't be in the tournament either, with the heroes also knowing about the danger of Babidi beforehand.
They wouldn't let Trunks join the junior division. Regardless, whether they do get to the tournament grounds and enter it,
The bracket is mostly the same. I still see Videl being in the tournament even if Gohan didn't train her, since she was still a fighter, after all.
other than that, the only changes in the bracket would be Chi-Chi taking Gohan's place, Yamcha taking Goku's place,
And Tien taking Vegeta's place,
Master Roshi might have also come along to help,
since he still fights in this timeline, but I don't think he'd join the tournament.
Krillin still easily wins the first match against Pintar, and assuming that Piccolo is still matched up against Shin,
He'd likely still forfeit so that neither of them are tired when chasing down Babidi's henchmen.
then in Videl's match against Popovich,
She would likely do even worse than usual since she didn't get to train with Gohan.
after she loses,
Chi-Chi has her match against Kibito, though unlike Gohan, she would be in on the plan to let Yanu and Spopovich take her energy.
they soon leave and Kibito quickly heals Chi-Chi, as they don't follow them. It wouldn't take long for them to catch up.
And they all arrive in time to see Yanu and Spopovich give the energy to Babidi.
As usual, they're then killed by Babidi and Pui Pui, and once they are killed, Babidi sends the Bora to confront the onlooking heroes.
The Bora kills Kibito and then turns both Krillin and Tien into stone. Shin then warns them not to touch the statues, and when the Bora leaves, Chi-Chi and the others follow him.
Yamcha ends up fighting first,
And he goes against Pui Pui.
but he has an easy time killing him since he can use the Kaioken in this timeline.
Next would be Piccolo against Yakon, and while he wouldn't be able to light the room like Goku did with Super Saiyan, he would be able to defeat Yakon.
After all, just like Goku, he'd easily be able to sense Yakon's moves and dodge them while also landing his own. So, he would soon blast Yakon and kill him as well. Finally, Chi-Chi would get to step up to fight the Bora,
But she would have an easy time fighting him.
she'd likely have a way easier time using the Arcane Kaioken times 100 now.
And since she didn't slack on her training like Gohan normally did, the Bora wouldn't stand a chance.
He would easily be vaporized by her Arcane Kamehameha, and since he is killed, they're able to go down to the level with Babidi in the Steel Ball.
He wouldn't have gathered enough energy to release Majin Buu. Shin should be strong enough to defeat Babidi, so he would blast and kill him after they confront him.
Normally, this would end the Majin Buu saga then and there, but something else might happen in this timeline that prolongs it.
When they exit Babidi's spaceship, Shin teleports the Steel Ball with him.
With him having explained to Chi-Chi that Majin Buu had absorbed the Grand Supreme Kai and South Supreme Kai, this might give her an idea.
She'd explained to him about how she has the Fourth Spirit Fission, which should be able to separate the Supreme Kais from Buu.
Also,
Chi-Chi mentions that they might be able to revive the other Supreme Kais that Buu has killed, since if their souls weren't reincarnated, the Dragon Ball should be able to bring them back.
I only think this is a possibility since with the Dragon Balls being tied to Chi-Chi's life, and knowing that they can be upgraded by the Guardian, at her level of power she should be able to upgrade them so that there isn't a time limitation on reviving anyone. I also only think Chi-Chi would want to do this since by now she understands that the universe needs to have a balance to it.
And having all of the Supreme Kais back could help maintain that balance.
Either way,
Shin would be very reluctant to actually try to release Buu for this plan, but he might trust her and agree, since it would mean the other Supreme Kais would get to come back.
I see her upgrading the Dragon Balls and wishing back the Supreme Kais first, along with reviving Kibito as well.
Since reviving him, the North Supreme Kai,
And West Supreme Kai would use all three of their wishes. Now, as for the releasing Buu part, that would be the trickier part of the plan, so as to not risk the Earth.
Shin would likely teleport them and the sealed ball to the sacred world of the Kai.
Piccolo might also come with them to help out when Boo is released,
Since he is the strongest of the heroes besides Chi-Chi,
before they release Boo.
they would discuss what their plan is.
The first thing they would need to do is take power from Chi-Chi to put into the sealed ball and release Boo.
They'd have to heal Chi-Chi afterwards, so that once Boo is released, he can use the Force Spirit Fission on them.
With the Supreme Kais now knowing some of Boo's tricks,
They should be able to hold him off long enough for Chi-Chi to charge an attack to defeat Boo, especially with Piccolo helping them.
now that they have a plan,
They would put it into action.
albeit reluctantly on Shin's part.
When they go to gather energy from Chi-Chi, she would push her Kaioken to the maximum she could at this point.
It's hard to say what multiplier she could push it to now, but eventually it should provide enough energy for them to release Boo. While they are putting the gathered energy into the sealed ball,
Chi-Chi would take a sensu bean so that she is ready to fight Boo.
once Majin Buu is released,
Chi-Chi wouldn't give him a chance to start fighting them. She'd use the Force Spirit Fission right away to separate the Grand Supreme Kai and South Supreme Kai from Boo. This would force him to revert into his Kid Buu form, which is when the others would step in to hold him off.
like what Chi-Chi did on Namek. I see her merging with Hochoko again and charging a Phoenix Spirit Bomb. She would gather energy from the people of Earth.
And by talking to them through King Kai, she should be able to convince them to give her energy.
I think she'd have an easier time than Goku did if she reveals that she is the Kami or Guardian of Earth. In my opinion, while the people of Earth might not specifically know who the Guardian is,
I think they'd believe in them and know that there is one.
regardless, with energy gathered from everyone on Earth, and with her using the Kaioken, the Spirit Bomb would be able to vaporize Kid Buu. Once he is defeated,
I think Shin and the other Supreme Kais would thank her for bringing them back and for defeating Buu. Though Chi-Chi would also thank them and Piccolo for managing to hold off Buu while she charged her Spirit Bomb.
as thanks to her.
I think they'd offer to train her if she wanted to.
Personally,
I think she would agree, though she would still have to balance her training with doing her duties as the Guardian of Earth. Just like she did when she trained with the other Kais, she would use her magic to keep her eye on the Earth while she is away.
so,
She remains on the sacred world of the Kais to begin her training while Piccolo is transported back to Earth.
when Chi-Chi arrived to train with the Supreme Kais,
She likely would have started training with Shin first.
overall, her training with the Supreme Kais would likely be similar to her training with the Kais and Grand Kai,
She'd trained with the Supreme Kais for about 3 months each.
before training with the Grand Supreme Kai for about a year. Now,
For her training with Shin,
parts of it would be similar to how he trained Gohan. They would try training her with a Z sword, but they'd still eventually get the idea to test it, which would cause it to break and release the old Kai. He likely offered to unlock her potential, thus giving her the ultimate form. The only other major thing I can see Shin teaches in relation to magic. We know he can use magic materialization,
and that the Supreme Kais are the ones tasked with creation.
so he could try teaching her magic materialization and the basics of magic related to creation, but I don't see her learning too much about creation. As for the next Supreme Kai that teaches her,
I decided to talk about the North Supreme Kai next, since she trained with the Z sword before it broke. I thought he was a good follow-up teacher as he was shown to use a sword.
in my opinion, I thought it could be interesting for him to teach her how to use magic or ki to make weapons. Sort of like how Goku Black made a scythe out of ki. I think something like a ki glaive or spear could be interesting for her to have. Other than that, I could see him teaching her to expand on her far-seeing arts in order to observe the shifting energy of things in the universe.
Such as stars.
Given how he was shown to enjoy fishing, he might compare it to that by telling her to let the universe's energy come to her.
Since she can't catch what she would scare away.
Lastly,
He might help her develop her healing and purifying magic in ways that could help her restore balance or soothe disturbances.
if you're familiar with the Japanese practice of Reiki, imagine it like that but on a planetary level. Then as for the West Supreme Kai,
She was shown to be playful.
so I think her training could somewhat involve incorporating that into a fighting style to make Chi-Chi's movements unpredictable but also adaptable to the situation. In this style,
She'd learn to blend her magic and martial arts seamlessly, so she'd be able to blend the fluid grace of her movements with devastating bursts of her fire magic.
now, as for the South Supreme Kai, I think his training could focus more on defense.
Since he was able to survive the longest against Kid Buu,
I see him teaching her how to use her magic and ki to reinforce her body.
to make her immovable against assaults.
He could also further teach her to create things like shields or barriers as previous teachers have taught her as well. Lastly, when it comes to the Grand Supreme Kai, I see his training being more spiritual than physical. While the others tried teaching her to maintain balance,
He is teaching her how to sustain it. He might also talk about creation and destruction being two halves of the same cycle, but preservation helps keep the cycle from collapsing.
this might be where she learns about Beerus and the destruction side of things as well.
A major thing he might try to teach her is the Kai Kai Motaro, Since she knows magic, she'd likely be able to figure out how to use this.
Also, given how the Grand Supreme Kai was kind but also seemed to be able to soften Majin Buu's rage when he was part of him,
I think he could try teaching her to have a pacifying aura.
this could fit in with her healing and purifying magic,
since she could learn to calm disturbances along with healing ecosystems and spiritual corruptions.
It would further allow her to keep the Earth in check as guardian, and to even help the planet thrive.
Though she would also essentially become the opposite of what she used to be. Instead of her temper being like that of a raging fire, it's now fully calm like the heart of a flame.
Lastly, he could further teach her about creation magic so that she could use it to reconstruct decayed parts of the Earth. Overall, by the end of her training,
she would be calmer, her power would be transformative instead of just creative or destructive,
and she would be able to understand her divine powers more. With her training now complete,
she would thank the Supreme Kai's hand returned to Earth.
Of course,
she was keeping an eye on the planet while she was gone,
but now she can fully focus on her duties as the Guardian. 4 years soon pass after the defeat of Kid Buu, and on a faraway world,
the god of destruction Beerus finally woke up after his decades-long slumber.
When he sets out to do his duties,
he eventually destroys half of a planet since he liked one of their drinks but found their food too greasy.
When he destroys another planet, this is when the Supreme Kais finally realize that he is awake once again. Regardless, Beerus and his attendant Whis soon go to a planet called MeccheD.
And when Whis tries to get the chief to give up the dinosaur they hunted, the chief refuses.
He tries to transform and attack Beerus, but it's no use, and he ends up destroying the planet. While he's watching the destruction,
Beerus remembers his dream about the Super Saiyan God.
Beerus and Whis return home, and after they eat, he summons the Oracle Fish to ask about the prophecy she gave him. After hearing about the Super Saiyan God prophecy, Whis tries to say it doesn't exist,
and Beerus remembers that he ordered Frieza to destroy planet Vegeta.
Whis catches Beerus up on how Frieza was defeated by a Saiyan,
but that the Saiyan who killed him is also dead now. He'd also likely fill Beerus in on how Majin Buu was defeated. The other Supreme Kais and the Grand Supreme Kai were revived, and it was a human from Earth who defeated Buu and had them revived. This would pique Beerus' interest, but he was still focused on the Super Saiyan God for right now.
As a brief side note,
it's finally time to talk about something I hinted at in the beginning of this story.
With this series revolving around Chi-Chi becoming a god of destruction,
there couldn't be any living Saiyans, as Beerus likely wouldn't choose her as a successor if there were.
So, I'm going to briefly talk about Tarble, Broly, and Paragus in this timeline.
I normally don't talk about specials like the one Tarble was shown in, since it isn't canon,
but for the sake of this timeline I'm going to include it.
Without Vegeta being alive and on Earth,
Tarble wouldn't be able to come to him for help,
so he is killed by Abbo and Kado.
And as for Broly and Paragus, I'm just going to say that they ended up dying on Vampa at some point. That planet isn't the most hospitable,
so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise if they didn't make it.
With that out of the way, back with Beerus and Whis,
he would learn that there aren't any living Saiyans.
However,
he would learn that there's a dead Saiyan training on King Kai's planet, and this just so happens to be the one who defeated Frieza. Beerus would decide to go there and ask him about the Super Saiyan God, but he also plans to make a stop first.
Normally, Beerus planned to destroy Frieza after he woke up.
While Frieza is dead, I could see him wanting to destroy King Cold, who has taken over the Empire again after Frieza died. So, Beerus would seek out King Cold and destroy him before making his way to King Kai's planet.
Meanwhile, on Earth, all of the heroes were gathering on a cruise ship for Bulma's birthday, and on the sacred world of the Kais,
the Supreme Kais and Old Kai get into contact with King Kai about Beerus coming to his planet.
Back on Earth once again, there likely isn't going to be a scene where Emperor Pilaf notices the Dragon Balls on the cruise ship. While Trunks is there, Goten doesn't exist in this timeline,
so he obviously couldn't take him to show him the Dragon Balls. This means that Emperor Pilaf never learns that they are on the cruise ship, so they don't get on it.
Regardless, back with King Kai,
he still tries hiding Goku in his house as Beerus and Whis arrive on his planet.
As usual,
after Beerus calls for Goku to come out, he asks about the Super Saiyan God. Goku had no idea what this is, but before Beerus leaves, he still challenges him to a fight.
This goes the same as usual with him not being able to do anything to Beerus even when he goes Super Saiyan 3.
With there being no Saiyans alive and with Goku likely being the only worthwhile one to challenge to a fight,
Beerus might give up on the Super Saiyan God prophecy here and believe Whis about it being fake. However,
even with him believing the Oracle Fish's prophecy was wrong, there is still a chance he might go to Earth in this timeline. I mentioned earlier that what he heard about Chi-Chi defeating Buu and bringing back the other Supreme Kais piqued his interest. Since that caught his interest, He could decide to head to Earth to meet her, and potentially check out Earth's food while there. After they leave, King Kai would get in contact with Chi-Chi and warn her that Beerus is coming. She already knew a little about Beerus because of what the Grand Supreme Kai told her, so she would be cautious. Once he arrives, Chi-Chi would quickly be introduced to him and Whis. With what she learned about creation from the Supreme Kais and since she's the guardian of the planet, Beerus could make a show of judging if her meddling in creation has upset the balance of the world. As for her wishing for the Supreme Kais to be revived, that would have helped with balancing out the universe. To me, she didn't seem like the best Supreme Kai, so having all Supreme Kais back should help the cycle between creation and destruction work as intended, though their confrontation might end up like a debate, as Beerus would think she preserves too much. On the other hand, Chi-Chi would see it as she destroyed the things that needed to be destroyed, such as Cell and Boo, while having revived those that shouldn't have been killed. Beerus could try to make the argument that beings like Frieza, Cell, and Boo were part of the universe's way to try and keep balance. She could have a rebuttal for this that by them destroying recklessly, like Kid Buu was said to do, would have upset this balance. Eventually, their debate likely turns into a scuffle between them, especially if he mentions Frieza having worked for him, given everything Frieza did to them on Namek. I know I have been making her strong enough to defeat other villains in this series, but even with her ultimate form, there's no way she would win this scuffle. Whis would have watched this little fight of theirs, since while she's nowhere near matching his power, she did seem to hold her own. Also, Whis always seems to be keeping an eye out for potential successors to Beerus, given that was seemingly one of the reasons he trained Goku and Vegeta. He'd eventually remarked that the times Chi-Chi has destroyed things wasn't out of hunger but understanding, and that if Beerus taught her, perhaps she could learn that there is purpose in ruin. He could also suggest that Beerus might learn something from her too, since even he seems to have forgotten that there is a purpose in destruction to a certain extent. After all, when he chose planets for destruction, it was usually for the wrong reasons, like them angering him or him not liking their food. Regardless, these comments from Whis likely annoy him, but he also might agree to train her just for fun, though that training wouldn't start right away, as Beerus would still want to spend time at Bulma's birthday party to try the food. Thankfully for them, there isn't anyone to anger Beerus like Boo, so she wouldn't have to worry about getting into another scuffle with him, with the rest of the party going off without a hitch. Beerus and Whis would get to eat as much as they wanted, so Beerus would actually get to have pudding, regardless, by the time they are ready to leave. Since Beerus agreed to Whis' idea of training Chi-Chi, they'd let her come with them. After saying goodbye to the others, and after wishing happy birthday to Bulma again, she leaves with Beerus and Whis. Before getting into the next saga, I briefly want to discuss something. In this timeline, it's likely that there isn't an equivalent of the Golden Frieza saga. Frieza never learned about Earth, so his men couldn't go there to revive him. They also don't know where New Namek is, so that isn't an option for them either. Without Frieza being able to be revived, this saga is skipped. Anyway, it's time to get into the main saga of this part. After Chi-Chi left Earth with Beerus and Whis, she went to train with them. Her training with them would likely start similar to how Goku and Vegeta trained with them, which is that it's mostly Whis training her at first. Though instead of her trying to train for forms that use God Ki, since she naturally has God Ki, she would be training to combine her magic with her ultimate form. Think about it like she's trying to train for her equivalent of the Beast form that Gohan has or the Orange form that Piccolo has. While they aren't God forms, I believe that they're evolutions of the ultimate form, so that's what Chi-Chi is striving to do here. By the time the next saga arrives, I don't think she would have access to this form, but she would be close to getting it. One day, while Chi-Chi was training with Whis, two mysterious people violently landed on Beerus' planet. Beerus thought this was Chi-Chi being loud, so he briefly attacks her, but he is soon interrupted by the visitors. When Chi-Chi questions who these people are, one of them introduces herself as Vados. She explains that she is the attendant to Champa, the god of destruction from Universe 6. Things generally go the same with them getting into an argument over food and with Champa proposing a 5v5 tournament. Beerus agrees to this, so they decide where the tournament will be held and the rules for it, which are the same as usual. As for the team they end up choosing, I wasn't sure who they would choose. I still think Beerus would end up choosing Monaka to try and encourage Chi-Chi to train harder. If Vegeta could be fooled by Monaka, I think Chi-Chi could be as well. As for the rest of the team, Chi-Chi would obviously be on it, and Piccolo would still be on it as well. It was with the last two I struggled with, but I ended up deciding on Goku and Krillin. I decided on Goku since he has never come back to life for a day in this timeline, so this could be when he does so. Then as for Krillin, I just chose him since he is likely the strongest human at the time. When Goku is brought back by Fortuneteller Baba, Chi and Goku would have a brief heartfelt reunion, though it's not long after that they would head to the nameless planet for the Tournament of Destroyers.
After they arrive, they still have to do the written exam.
So they go to take it.
Before they do, one of the Universe 6 team members approaches Goku,
as he recognized him as a Saiyan. He introduces himself as Kaba and their conversation basically goes the same, minus the parts about Planet Sadala, since Goku wouldn't know about it like Vegeta did.
After they take the test, all 5 of their team would have passed, so in this timeline it's a full 5v5 tournament.
Beerus still decides for Monaka to go last,
but the others play rock, paper, scissors, and Krillin ends up being the one to go first. His fight would be against Batalmo,
but since Krillin is able to use the Kaioken, I think this match would be similar to Goku's fight against him.
So, he'd eventually manage to grab Batalmo's arm and throw him out of the ring.
Frost would be Krillin's next opponent. I don't see Krillin being one to allow Frost to transform. Instead, he might go all out from the start with the Kaioken, so he should be able to knock Frost out of the ring as well. He is likely eliminated so fast that he didn't even get to use his poison against Krillin. Since Frost was defeated like this, he wouldn't be revealed to not be a hero.
Anyway,
when MeccheD enters the ring, this is likely the end of Krillin's winning streak. I don't think Krillin would end up insulting him, so he knocks Krillin out of the ring.
The next fighter for their team would be Piccolo,
so he would enter the ring, with Piccolo also being able to use the Kaioken.
I think his fight with MeccheD would be similar to Vegeta's fight with him. He'd likely get frustrated in the fight and insult MeccheD.
And once he is weakened, he'd use the light grenade to knock him out of the ring.
After this, Kaba would enter the ring to take on Piccolo. Before their fight begins, Goku pulls Piccolo to the side and asks him to forfeit since he wants to fight another Saiyan. For old times' sake, Piccolo would likely agree and forfeit,
as it isn't likely he'll see Goku again until a long time after this.
Once Piccolo announces that he's forfeiting the fight,
Goku hurries and jumps into the ring.
Their fight would likely start off similar to Vegeta's fight against Kaba. Even though Goku is kind-hearted,
when he finds out that Kaba can't go Super Saiyan,
I think he would act in a similar way as Vegeta to make Kaba transform. I only see Goku doing this just to make it a better fight for himself. Once Kaba transforms for the first time, their fight would start again,
but Goku would still have the upper hand.
However, in a similar way to how Goku shown Caulifla and Kale the other Super Saiyan forms, I think he'd do the same here so that Kaba can see what to strive for next. So,
he'd start off with showing Kaba the Super Saiyan 2 form.
Then he would go on to show him the Super Saiyan 3 form next. Normally, this would be the end of it,
since Goku doesn't have access to the God forms in this timeline.
However,
I don't normally include things from Dragon Ball Daima in these videos since I think it isn't canon and that's a separate timeline from Dragon Ball Super.
In this case,
I decided to include Super Saiyan 4 from it since I thought it could be interesting.
Also,
with Goku being dead since the Cell Saga in this timeline, he had plenty of time to train for it. Since he was beating Kaba in just his Super Saiyan form, he is easily able to knock Kaba out of the ring in this form.
After Kaba gets back up,
he'd go back to his base form and congratulate him on the good fight. He'd then tell Kaba to keep striving to improve, as he believes he can reach the other levels of Super Saiyan.
Anyway, this brings us to the final fighter of Universe 6. As Hit enters the ring,
Goku might go Super Saiyan 4 right away, since he could sense how strong Hit is. However, he wouldn't be able to put up any fight against Hit, so he is easily knocked out of the ring with one hit. Since Hit likely used a time skip to eliminate Goku, the Galactic King still realized this, so Jacko would pass this information on to Chi-Chi. Briefly off topic, even though Resurrection F never happened, I still think Jacko would have come to Earth at some point to see Bulma, so Chi-Chi would have met him then.
Regardless, once she enters the ring,
they don't hesitate to start the fight. Even if she goes all out and uses her ultimate form at first, it likely wouldn't help against Hit.
From what I could find,
in one of the games,
Gohan was able to combine the ultimate form with the Super Saiyan form, and he was originally supposed to use it in the Battle of Gods movie. If the ultimate form can be combined with the Super Saiyan forms like that,
I'm going to assume that it can be combined with the Kaioken as well.
However, even with that at their highest multiplier,
I don't see it being anywhere near enough to challenge Hit.
It might be enough to briefly catch him off guard and put him on the defensive,
but that wouldn't last for long.
As for when she starts incorporating her magic into her hits,
it still wouldn't help much,
as the use of his time skip would allow him to easily overpower her. When she gets desperate in this fight, I think she would try to merge with Hochoko again. While it hasn't worked for her before when using the ultimate form,
if there was any time she needed it to work,
it'd be now. Just as Hit was preparing to eliminate her,
she finally manages to merge with Hochoko while in her ultimate form.
I mentioned earlier that she has been training for her equivalent of the Beast form,
and this is that form.
For the sake of simplicity,
I just decided to call this form Phoenix.
So, like how Gohan was called Beast Gohan or Piccolo was called Orange Piccolo, in this form she'd be called Phoenix Chi-Chi. I don't have art of this form yet, so I don't really have a description to give about what it would look like.
All I can really say about it is that if it gives a similar boost in power as Gohan's Beast form or Piccolo's Orange form, she should be able to beat Hit.
With her newfound speed in this form,
Hit would be put on the back foot as she begins her own assault. The only other thing I have in mind for this form is that her fire magic would likely be even more intense. Instead of defeating Hit through brute force alone,
I can see their fight coming to a point that he's forced to yield after being engulfed in flames.
Even if it doesn't come to him yielding, I don't see her forfeiting like Goku did, so their fight would end with either her knocking Hit out or with her hitting him out of the ring.
After their fight ends,
things go relatively the same,
with Champa threatening to destroy his team for losing. However, he is interrupted by the arrival of Xeno, who still says he'd like to see a tournament between all 12 universes. Unlike Goku, Chi-Chi wouldn't try to approach Xeno,
and she'd use her magic chains to stop Goku from moving when he tries to approach Xeno.
Anyway, Xeno leaves,
and Beerus still uses the Super Dragon Balls to wish for Universe 6's Earth to be restored.
They then start the trip back home, with Whis taking them to Beerus' planet.
From there, Chi-Chi would use the Kai Kai to take the others back to Earth. She'd then say her goodbyes to Goku, as Fortuneteller Baba takes him back to Otherworld. Now that the others are back on Earth, she'd likely return to Beerus' planet to continue her training with Beerus and Whis. In the future timeline, Trunks is currently running from a mysterious being. He eventually meets up with Bulma, as she tells him that they have enough fuel for a one-way trip to the past. While they are getting ready to leave, the mysterious being arrives and ends up killing Bulma. Trunks takes the fuel and flees while promising to save the world once again.
Back in the present,
Chi-Chi had finally started her training under Beerus instead of just Whis. Even with her being calm in this timeline, I still think she'd be passionate enough that Ultra Instinct might not be the best fit for her at this time.
When Beerus realized this,
he likely would have offered to directly train her just like he did with Vegeta.
I don't normally reference the manga version of Dragon Ball Super,
but I decided to briefly include something that happened in it during the Goku Black saga.
Like how Goku learned the Hakai by that saga, I think Chi-Chi could have figured out how to use it too. Especially with her training under Beerus directly, and with her knowledge of some destructive things such as fire magic.
It could be a bit easier for her, though I'm not giving her access to Ultra Ego yet, as I think it would be a bit too early in her training with Beerus for that. Back in the future, Trunks meets up with Mai as they discuss their plan.
After they eat and rest,
they head to Capsule Corporation.
Before they can use the time machine,
the mysterious being arrives, so Trunks briefly has to hold them off.
They seemingly end up killing Mai,
and once the shadows on them fade away, it's revealed that the mysterious being looks like Chi-Chi.
Unlike the original,
this Trunks wouldn't stand any chance against Chi-Chi Black, so he flees to use the time machine from the start instead of trying to fight her.
He manages to escape just in the nick of time,
as she was about to use her Black Kamehameha on the time machine. When he arrives in the past, it's his present counterpart who finds him in the time machine. With him having not fought Chi-Chi Black, he isn't unconscious, so he can explain to Bulma what is happening right away. She'd go find her communicator to get in contact with Whis, and once she finds it, she tells Chi-Chi about future Trunks being back. Chi-Chi would get ready to teleport to Earth, but an interested Beerus and Whis decide to come along with her. She'd still go to Korin's tower first to get sensu beans, but once she arrives at Capsule Corporation, everyone is surprised to see Trunks try to attack her.
She easily blocks this, and Bulma slaps him to get him to regain his composure.
He then apologizes and Bulma asks him what is going on. Before he can start explaining,
Beerus realizes someone has been messing with time since there are two Trunkses.
The two Trunkses are introduced, and Bulma still brags about her future self being the one who invented the time machine.
This shocks Whis since he didn't think humans were capable of it,
but he also points out that time travel is a serious crime.
Whis explains why it is prohibited, but he and Beerus eventually agree to let it slide after Bulma bribes him with fish sausage. Afterwards, Bulma goes on to start analyzing the time machine. While she is doing that, Chi-Chi and future Trunks talk about what has happened in his timeline since he left. The main thing he talks about is how Babidi and Dabura did arrive, but with the use of the Kaioken and the high multiplier and with help from Shin, he was able to defeat them before Boo was resurrected.
He then goes on to explain the story of Chi-Chi Black, and Chi-Chi resolves to help him.
I don't see her trying to spar with Trunks, but either way, their conversation is soon cut short.
A thunderstorm appeared, and a portal also appeared shortly afterwards.
However, the biggest surprise to Trunks was when Chi-Chi Black came out of the portal.
Now that Chi-Chi has officially met Chi-Chi Black, I'm going to take a brief break to talk about how she differs from Goku Black. From what we know about Goku Black, he had some personality traits of Zamasu,
but also some personality traits that were the opposite of his host body's traits. In that case, it was Goku.
and in this case, it's Chi-Chi.
Instead of being passionate like Chi-Chi, Chi-Chi Black would rarely shout or display emotion. Her voice is soft, almost reverent,
like the sound of someone who believes that they are Mercy incarnate. Even though Chi-Chi never had kids in this timeline, she still had that maternal, nurturing instinct to some extent. In Chi-Chi Black, it's twisted into her not purely hating mortals, but wanting to cleanse or guide them back to purity through erasure.
Goku Black had an explosive rage at times,
but hers would be more merciful, with the horror interactions being how gentle she is about killing. Chi-Chi's divine fire when utilized by Chi-Chi Black could be seen as flames of silence. She'd essentially see herself as an angel of purification, that every kill is an act of sanctification, not hatred. Speaking of her flames,
I imagine them being like an ashen white color with black embers.
They don't sear flesh but disintegrate the essence of a being instead, assuming she eventually accesses her own phoenix form. I don't think it'll involve flames like Chi-Chi's.
I think basing it off of the smoke from a fire and the ashes left behind from a phoenix's death and rebirth would be more fitting for her.
Essentially, they'd be two sides of the same coin,
with Chi-Chi representing the life and rebirth aspect of a phoenix,
while Chi-Chi Black represented the death aspect of a phoenix.
Chi-Chi's phoenix form symbolizes renewal, while Chi-Chi Black's would symbolize the final rest.
The last two things I want to mention are what her key weapon would be and what her version of Chi-Chi's phoenix familiar, Hochoko, would be like.
Like how Goku Black had a scythe, I think Chi-Chi Black would have a scepter,
but she could morph it into a double-bladed spear or polearm when needed.
As for her phoenix familiar,
it could also be tied into the ashes and death aspect of a phoenix instead of the rebirth aspect.
I decided to give her phoenix familiar a name as well,
and I wanted it to fit with Chi-Chi's name meaning milk and how Goku Black chose the name based on wine for his Super Saiyan Rosé form. The closest alcohol for this I could find was kumis,
which is made with milk. So, the name I came up with for Chi-Chi Black's phoenix was Kumira.
It's a combination of kumis and mira, which means peace or female ruler, as I thought combining the two made them sound more like a name.
With that out of the way,
we can get back into the fight between Chi-Chi and Chi-Chi Black now.
Chi-Chi Black had only managed to come back after she realized Trunks disappeared by traveling through time. Whis would also point out to Beerus that she has a time ring on one of her fingers. Regardless,
I don't see Chi-Chi holding back like Goku did, so she might go into her phoenix form from the beginning. This level of power could be a shock to her counterpart, since she didn't expect her to be this strong.
At some point in their fight, Chi-Chi Black is knocked back to Capsule Corporation.
The force from one of Chi-Chi's attacks knocks a time machine over, and Chi-Chi Black notices this. Chi-Chi went to finish her off, but before she could, the portal started to pull Chi-Chi Black back into it. Before she was taken back to the future, she blasted and destroyed the time machine.
Now in the future,
the portal closes behind Chi-Chi Black, and since she figured Trunks was stranded, she went on to continue granting her twisted mercy to mortals.
Back in the past, while discussing the broken time machine, Whis tells future Trunks about the time ring Chi-Chi Black had on,
and how only Supreme Kais can use them. Bulma soon came out with a capsule, revealing that she kept the time machine Cell used to get to the past.
Back in the future, Mai is revealed to have survived. On the other hand, Chi-Chi Black started to grow more accustomed to her power after witnessing Chi-Chi's moves firsthand. In the past again, Bulma and her father end up working on the time machine to try and fix it. While they're doing that,
there wouldn't be a scene of future Trunks telling Mai about future Mai since Trunks never met the Pilaf gang in this timeline. Then as for Beerus and Whis, Beerus found Chi-Chi Black's key to be familiar, so they both decided to do some investigating of their own. Eventually, they end up going to Universe 10 after they analyzed this mysterious key, and Chi-Chi went along with them.
Beerus and Whis knew someone who lives there that has the same key as Chi-Chi Black. While they are heading to Universe 10's Sacred World with the Kai, Whis has an idea about Black's identity and reveals that Zamasu is the apprentice of the Supreme Kai Gawasu. Meanwhile,
with Gawasu and Zamasu,
they end up talking about mortals, and once Zamasu says he wants to destroy them, Gawasu reminds them that they are not allowed to interfere. When Whis, Beerus, and Chi-Chi arrive,
Zamasu is surprised to see Chi-Chi there, which Whis notes that this is the first time they met.
Regardless,
Zamasu tries to attack her, but Gawasu stops him.
Beerus and Whis fill in Gawasu on what's happening with Chi-Chi Black, so Gawasu has Zamasu show them the time rings.
In this timeline, it wouldn't be Chi-Chi begging for a fight with Zamasu like Goku did, but instead Beerus suggesting that they spar.
Gawasu would agree as it could be training for Zamasu,
so they prepare to fight.
Back on Earth, future Trunks ends up talking with Krillin, and he is shocked to see that 18 is his wife. back with Chi-Chi and Zamasu. She uses her ultimate form to fight with him, though she also mentions that she hasn't fought a god since Beerus, which surprises Zamasu. Him also learning the knowledge that Chi-Chi became a god, since she's a guardian of a planet, likely shocks him as well. Regardless, Chi-Chi, Beerus, and Whis all notice the similarities between his ki and Chi-Chi Black's. Eventually, she ends the fight with a flame-encased punch, and Beerus mentions that he was ready to go home. On their way home, Whis points out that Zamasu was suppressing his cold heart and is indeed Chi-Chi Black. Back with Zamasu, Zamasu asks him if he cleared away his distrust of mortals, but he says he's ashamed of his inadequacy and that he'll never forget Chi-Chi. When Chi-Chi gets back to Earth, they quickly fill in future chunks on what they learned. Back with Gwasu and Zamasu, they still view the citizens of Bobbery, but their savage nature disgusted Zamasu. Even when they go into the future to see how they will develop, their fighting still disgusted him. Eventually, one of the barbarians tries to attack Zamasu, but he kills it. When they return to the sacred world of the Kai, Gwasu berates him for this. They still end up having a discussion about mortals and the properties of good and evil. Back with the heroes, they never have to worry about Xeno during this saga since he has never met Chi-Chi, so he wouldn't summon her like he did with Goku. Regardless, the time machine is soon finished, so Chi-Chi and future Trunks would prepare to go to the future. Once they arrive, Trunks is surprised to see Mai's body isn't there, but they're soon cut off by the members of Earth's Resistance attacking Chi-Chi. Trunks stops them and tells them that this isn't Chi-Chi Black. After being introduced to Chi-Chi, they go to the Resistance's headquarters, and Chi-Chi gives them the capsule of food Bulma gave to her. Chi-Chi ends up spotting Yajirobe in the crowd as well, so he explains how he survived against the androids. Regardless, she and future Trunks soon take off to go search for Chi-Chi Black. When they find her, she is above her ruined monastery, her key scepter in hand, and her own Phoenix Familiar was circling above her. Chi-Chi doesn't hesitate in preparing for this fight, as she goes into her Phoenix form from the start and summons her key glaive. She quickly begins an assault on Chi-Chi Black, but she is far stronger than last time. As they fight, she counters her attacks and morphs her key scepter into its spear form. Black soon starts her own assault in return by using her magic, and once Chi-Chi starts to falter, she plants her spear into the ground. She causes a wave of ash to sweep across the battlefield, making the area dimmer than it already was. Chi-Chi tries to use her own divine fire to push this back, but Black emerges with her own familiar, Humira. Smoke and embers envelop her, and the flames of her magic around her collapse inwards, like a star exploding. After the smoke clears away, she is now in her own version of the Phoenix form. Anything Chi-Chi tries at this point gets smothered by Chi-Chi Black's withering aura. Their fight continues until she is impaled through the gut by Chi-Chi Black's spear. Chi-Chi falls to the ground on one knee, reverting to her base form, so Chi-Chi Black gets in front of her. She prepared to use a blast to finish her off, but she is interrupted by the arrival of future Zamasu coming from the sky, as he reminds Chi-Chi Black that he'll be the one to finish off Chi-Chi. While Chi-Chi Black heads over to Zamasu, future Trunks rushes to Chi-Chi to give her a sensu bean. After Chi-Chi powers up again, she gets into a fight with Zamasu, but they're evenly matched this time. Chi-Chi Black soon joins in and they start to push Chi-Chi back, but future Trunks still jumps in to help her. Like how Chi-Chi was able to push the Kaioken up to a 100 times multiplier back in the Cell Saga, I think future Trunks would be able to do so as well. The two heroes begin to fight together, and Trunks' sword does briefly damage Zamasu. However, it soon heals, and Zamasu reveals that he is immortal. Anyway, Black goes to finish them off with her own version of the Phoenix Kamehameha, and Zamasu grabs him to hold them in place. Chi-Chi does manage to get them away with the Kai just in the nick of time. Once at the Resistance headquarters, they collapse, but Mai comes to their aid. She gets the capsule containing the time machine from Trunks, and she then sends him and Chi-Chi back to the past. Once they arrive, Trunks finds Chi-Chi and his future counterpart, so he brings them to Bulma. Meanwhile, in Universe 10, Gwasu is watching the previous battle between Chi-Chi and Hit. Zamasu notices this, and when the Super Dragon Balls show up, he asks Gwasu about them. Later that day, he goes to see Zuno and demands to know everything about the Super Dragon Balls. After threatening his life, Zuno tells him what he wanted to know, and Zamasu also asks him about Chi-Chi. Back with Bulma, she gives a sensu bean to Trunks and Chi-Chi, and they then explain everything that happened in the future. Not long after, Beerus, Whis, and Shin arrive. They fill Chi-Chi in on what Zuno told them about Zamasu, and she tells him about Zamasu's appearance in the future and his immortality. As usual, they end up realizing that Gwasu's life might be in danger, so they go to Universe 10. After they arrive, Gwasu says he hasn't seen Zamasu, but an oddly calm Zamasu then arrives. Their conversation essentially goes the same with them not going far after they leave.
and Whis confirms that Zamasu plans to kill Gawasu. Regardless, things generally go the same, and once they see Gawasu be killed, Whis rewinds time. When they get back to Universe 10's Sacred World of the Kai,
They stop him from killing Gawasu and tell him about Zamasu's plan.
Beerus then uses the Hakai to destroy Zamasu before returning to Earth.
When Trunks asks about his timeline, Beerus still insists that the future would be safe as well. But when he and Chi-Chi go to the future, they learn that Chi-Chi, Black, and Zamasu are still there.
When they confront them this time,
They learn the truth about Chi-Chi, Black, and about how Zamasu wished for her body then killed her. They then explain how she went on to team up with Zamasu and take out all of the gods in the multiverse so they could begin their Zero Mortals plan.
a similar scene happens to the one where they told Goku about them killing his friends and family. This time, Chi-Chi Black had used her Ki Spear to stab through Zamasu and pin Chi-Chi to a wall while they talked about killing her friends.
In the moment that confuses Zamasu,
This doesn't cause Chi-Chi to get angry or break down, as she has control over her anger. Instead, she raised her hand to his chest in a moment that confused them both.
in a mere moment,
She charges up and uses the Hakai. Unlike when Goku attempted it in the manga, she would have a better handle on it.
by the time they realize what's happening,
It's too late.
both future Zamasu and Chi-Chi Black are enveloped with a sphere of destruction energy. They both fracture and disintegrate into purple embers,
As even their souls are erased. Chi-Chi then collapses.
now bleeding profusely from the wound in her chest. Future Trunks yet again has to rush in to help her and give her a senzu bean so she doesn't die. After she is healed, they briefly celebrate since Trunks' timeline is restored to a time of peace.
Since Chi-Chi has to use a time machine to get back to the past, she would have to have a talk with Trunks before she left. She'd have understood what Beerus and Whis said about time travel being outlawed. She'd tell Trunks that he shouldn't come to the past again and they should keep training to protect his timeline on his own. After saying their goodbyes, she'd return to her timeline.
Once she arrives,
She would take responsibility for the time machine and use her Hakai to destroy it as well. She then fills in everyone on what happened in the future.
and then they have their own celebration at Castle Corporation for Chi-Chi managing to defeat Chi-Chi Black and Zamasu. Before getting into this part of the story, there's something I briefly want to discuss.
In this timeline,
Chi-Chi never would have reminded Zeno about him wanting to hold a tournament between all of the universes.
so the Tournament of Power would never happen in this timeline. Also, the Broly movie would never end up happening either.
As I mentioned before, I wrote it as him dying on Wampa at some point in this timeline. Now,
With that out of the way, I can get on to the main story. I normally don't talk about the manga-only sagas of Dragon Ball Super, since I like the anime version better, but I decided to include them for this scenario.
so, the next saga I'll be talking about is the Moro Saga.
In this timeline, with the Grand Supreme Kai being alive, it'd likely never be a kidnap mission like they did with Buu. Instead, with the help of Beerus, the Galactic Patrol would go directly to the Grand Supreme Kai to fill him in on what is happening with Moro.
However, when they do get the Grand Supreme Kai to help them, I could also see him suggesting that they recruit Chi-Chi for help.
When they go to meet up with her on Earth, they'd quickly fill her in on what's happening. Things from there generally go similar, with them explaining who Moro is to her and how the Grand Supreme Kai sealed away his magic. They go back to the Galactic Patrol ship, and Beerus brings Chi-Chi to see the Galactic King.
He gives her the title of a special member of the Galactic Patrol that will last until Moro's defeat. Beerus is then informed of the Macaroni gang having stolen something.
So Chi-Chi joins him and Jacko on the mission to capture them. They're roughly captured in the same way, and once the heroes are back at the Galactic Patrol headquarters, they begin to try to find Moro. Just like Goku, when she tries to find where Moro is, he notices that she is trying to find him.
As usual, Moro and his pilot Cranberry are heading towards New Namek. Once Chi-Chi realizes this,
And when Moro's ship begins to descend onto New Namek, she teleports there with the Grand Supreme Kai. Chi-Chi warns Mori about what is happening, so then the Mechians gather the Dragon Balls and flee.
when Moro lands and exits his ship,
He still tries to kill one of the Namekian children, but Chi-Chi saves them.
thankfully,
With the Grand Supreme Kai being there, they would have an easier way to defeat Moro. He was still weak at this time, since he didn't have all of his magic back yet. The Grand Supreme Kai would likely have most of his powers back, since they never would have went to Oob in this timeline, and the Buu was destroyed.
even with the Grand Supreme Kai only having most of his powers back, he should be able to steal away the magic of this weakened Moro before he could use New Namek's life energy to attack with.
After his magic power is sealed away, they could return him to the Galactic Prison.
However, I think Chi-Chi will suggest using her Hakai to destroy him so that he can never escape again. In this case,
I think the Grand Supreme Kai would agree, especially since he knows how much of a threat Moro is. A powerless Mora wouldn't be able to stop Chi-Chi from destroying him.
So this saga would end here.
Now, I normally don't do this, but I decided to combine this saga and the next into one part. The Granola saga likely wouldn't happen in this timeline since Frieza isn't around. That means that the Heaters can't use his presence to manipulate Granola into helping them.
Also, there aren't any living Saiyans for him to get his revenge against.
With that saga being skipped, this brings me to the superhero movie, which would also be cut short. Also, I'm going to try and include some of the manga-only aspects we see with Trunks, Goten, and Mai. Though in this timeline, it'd obviously be just Trunks since Goten doesn't exist and he never met Mai.
Regardless,
when it reaches the parts we see in the superhero movie,
I'll be referencing the movie instead. So, this will be a bit of a blend of the high school saga from the manga and the movie version of superhero. Even then, my discussion of the high school saga will likely be short,
since a lot of it would stay the same.
One of the major differences is that Trunks would be the only hero in this timeline,
since Goten doesn't exist.
Also,
I don't know what he would call himself since Gohan never existed in this timeline to make the Great Saiyaman name.
But I assume he still would have been inspired to become a superhero. Anyway, a minor change is that without him having met Mai, he might have a crush on another student like Rula or Filer. Though if it's Filer, they might end up in a relationship since in the original timeline she had a crush on him. Either way,
when he gets into fights with Dr. Hedo's early androids, he should easily be able to defeat them. Like his future counterpart, he likely learned the Kaioken from his father, so he'd use it against them.
So, things generally stay the same, and Dr. Hedo is eventually arrested.
Even the start of the superhero saga would stay the same, as Carmine and Magenta still recruit Dr. Hedo after he is released from prison.
6 months after he is recruited, Piccolo is out near his home meditating.
Without Gohan or Pan existing, none of the scenes involving Pan would happen. Instead, the next thing that happens is when Gamma 2 arrives and attacks Piccolo, but their fight goes the same as usual. From there, he still sneaks away, disguises himself as a guard, and infiltrates their base.
After hearing everything about the Gamma androids and Cell Max, he slips away to call Bulma. He asks if Chi-Chi is there, but since she was currently training with Beerus,
he asks Bulma to get in contact with Whis. After getting in contact with Bulma,
he goes to Korn's tower to get senzu beans.
As for Chi-Chi, her training there wouldn't be anything like the show it was with Vegeta and Goku sparring.
So, without anyone sitting around to eat ice cream and watch a fight, Whis would notice when Bulma tries contacting him. After being filled in on the situation, Chi-Chi would teleport to Piccolo, who is now on the lookout.
Before they leave, I think Piccolo would still have the idea to summon Shenron, since he would have noticed that his power couldn't stand up to the Gammas. They still find out that Bulma has the Dragon Balls, so they go to Capsule Corporation.
As usual, he makes his wish for getting his potential unlocked,
and Shenron still throws in a bonus. Then as for the remaining wishes, Bulma still uses them for minor cosmetic changes.
Regardless, Piccolo then leads Chi-Chi to the Red Ribbon headquarters. Once there,
since a staged kidnapping never happened, they'd start causing a ruckus to draw out the Gammas.
Piccolo's fight with Gamma 2 would mostly go the same,
so I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. He'd still end up unlocking his orange form and take out Gamma 2 with one punch after he does.
As for Chi-Chi's fight against Gamma 1,
she'd use her Phoenix form from the start,
so he wouldn't stand a chance against her and would be knocked out with a magic-infused punch. Now, I was briefly torn on what would happen with the Gammas.
The heroes never would have found out there was some good in them since they never would have seen the Gammas try to stop Piccolo's ploy of him going to hurt Pan.
So,
with just the knowledge of what the Gammas and the Red Ribbon Army planned to do,
I think they'd blast and kill the Gammas.
Chi-Chi would kill Gamma 1 and Piccolo would kill Gamma 2.
During this, Magenta likely still would have snuck away to awaken Cell Max,
though Dr. Hedo likely wouldn't have been there to stop him, since he might have been too distraught over the deaths of his androids to notice this. Before getting into this fight, something to briefly mention is that Cell Max is female as well since Cell was a female in this timeline. Anyway,
given Chi-Chi's level of power,
and with her Hakai, she'd easily be able to use it to destroy Cell Max after realizing her normal attacks weren't doing anything. After she is destroyed, I don't think they'd go on to kill the remnants of the Red Ribbon Army. Instead, I just think they would knock them out, including Magenta and Carmine when they caught them trying to flee.
Once they are all knocked out,
Chi-Chi would contact Krillin to get his help with transporting them to a prison.
Dr. Hedo would likely have been one of the ones knocked out as well,
so he'd have been arrested again, too.
Regardless, with the Earth now at peace again,
Chi-Chi could go back to doing her training on Beerus' planet. It's finally time to get to what everyone has likely been waiting to see in this timeline. Chi-Chi's training to become the next goddess of destruction and her ascension to that status. Now, we don't really know how one is trained to become a goddess of destruction or how one is ascended to that status, so I'm going to make things up for it. Before getting into that training, though, I want to talk about what little we know about what is needed for it. Before she could become the goddess of destruction, she might have to unlock the destroyer form. I'm basing this on what little we know about Toph, since he had a destroyer form and was the candidate to be the next god of destruction. I'm assuming he had to go under training to unlock that form first before he could replace Belmod. So, I'm going to assume that Chi-Chi has to do the same. Other than that, I also just wanted to briefly talk about the end of Z. In this timeline, the heroes will likely never go to that World Martial Arts tournament without a reincarnated Boo being there. It's also possible Hercule might not even be the world champion anymore. He normally kept winning through rigging the tournaments with Majin Buu, but since he is dead, that couldn't have happened. With that out of the way, I can get to Chi-Chi's path to becoming Beerus' successor. Speaking of that, it's hard to tell when Beerus would want to step down or why he would. Though since Chi-Chi is just a human, she obviously couldn't live forever. So for this timeline to work, he'd have to pass the torch to her in her lifetime. I don't think the decision to pass his torch on will fully come until he believes she is ready. By this point, she would have accessed both God Key and the Key of the Destroyers. She has learned about the need for balance in the universe. She learned how to use the Hakai, and how to destroy threats to the universe with it. I think all of that could play into him deciding to choose her as his successor. Anyway, when Beerus does make that decision to eventually step down, he would summon Chi-Chi to his planet. Once there, he would make the offer for her to officially become a candidate to be the goddess of destruction after he steps down. She would agree, but her first trial of this training would be with Whis instead of Beerus. With what I have in mind for this stage of her training, I think Whis would be the better suited teacher for it. This first stage would also likely be the hardest stage for her, but it would be trying to teach Chi-Chi about emotional removal. This isn't about making her completely apathetic, as she can still care about the universe and the well-being of it. It would be more about trying to remove her emotional ties to things like the Earth or her friends there. Not that it would ever come to her having to destroy the Earth, but if she did, she would have to be able to do so. This is partially why I wrote it as her not having a family in this timeline, since I don't think she ever would have been able to give up that emotional connection to her family. Don't get me wrong, it would be hard with her friends, but it would be even harder if she had a family. After she does manage this, the second stage for her training would also be with Whis. Just like Beerus knows it to an extent, Chi-Chi would have to learn how to use Ultra Instinct as well. Ultra Ego would still be her major technique, but she'd at least have to learn the basics of Ultra Instinct and be able to use it. Now with that out of the way, she could finally begin the next stage of her training with Beerus. This stage would basically be the exact opposite of the last stage of her training. She would go from working on learning Ultra Instinct to trying to learn Ultra Ego. Once she manages to access it, I assume she would also work on trying to combine it with her magic just like she did with the others. I don't know what to call this, but I assume she'd find a way to merge it with her Phoenix form. After she learns how to use Ultra Ego, Beerus would have her begin her next trial. This would be the test if she is actually able to bring herself to destroy a planet. So he would task her with destroying a list of planets he marked for destruction. Then after all of that is done, her final test would be to beat Beerus in a fight. This wouldn't just be like their first fight, but this would be a fight where Beerus actually goes all out. It's also likely this wouldn't end up being just one fight. Chi-Chi would lose these fights a lot, so she would have to keep challenging Beerus again and again. However, each time she fights him, she would be able to last longer in the fight. Again, it's hard to tell how long it would take to eventually surpass him and to be able to defeat him. If she stays persistent, though, she should be able to beat him eventually. After she does, it would be time for her to ascend to the position of the Goddess of Destruction. We don't exactly know how this ascension happens, like if it's done through a ritual or something else. I'm going to assume it's a ritual, and while it's unknown how it's done, I have some ideas for it. Before the ritual can happen, I assume Beerus would have to get the candidate for a successor approved by Zeno. Also, before they do the ritual, Chi-Chi would have some business to take care of on Earth. She would have to choose a successor of her own to become the next guardian of the planet. I see two potential options here, with it either being a Namekian from New Namek, like Dende, since that's where he still lives in this timeline, or she could choose Piccolo. I know Piccolo isn't a Dragon Clan Namekian like Kami was, but if a human could become the guardian, so could he. Also, he is the fighter who is the closest to Chi-Chi in this timeline besides Goku. I also kind of think it's fitting for him, since he has ties to it through Kami and through Shenron having given him the orange form through his wish. So I believe she would choose for Piccolo to become the next guardian of Earth. While there, she would also have to say goodbye to her friends, since her coming to Earth likely won't be that common. It's not because she wouldn't want to see them, but because she couldn't have the same personal connection with him that she used to.
Anyway, once Beerus gets Xeno's approval and Chi-Chi chooses her successor for the Guardian of Earth,
they could finally begin the ritual to make her the Goddess of Destruction. To start, I think Chi-Chi would have to give up any of her ties to the mortal realm, so she would have to surrender her mortal key somehow, perhaps by somehow permanently pouring it into an artifact. As for what happens with this artifact, it could be destroyed, or it could be kept for later just in case she goes back to being immortal.
Thankfully,
with her having learned how to merge her magic with her god key, she wouldn't lose that power. Other than that, the only other thing involved in the ritual would be transferring the life link between the Supreme Kai and Beerus to it being between Chi-Chi and the Supreme Kai. Though that also brings up the question if the life link would be between Chi-Chi and the Grand Supreme Kai, since he was brought back to life in this timeline, or between Chi-Chi and Shin. I think it would be with the Grand Supreme Kai since he is the highest ranking Supreme Kai at this time.
Regardless, once this ritual is over, Chi-Chi would get a destroyer outfit of her own. Through this ritual,
she also would have obtained immortality to some extent.
Given how Beerus has been the god of destruction for millions of years, he likely couldn't die from natural causes. So,
that would be passed on to Chi-Chi after this ritual is completed. Also, she likely receives eternal youth since I doubt the gods of destruction age. Anyway, with that out of the way,
I know I said earlier that she likely wouldn't go to Earth often after becoming the goddess of destruction, but one of the first things she has to attend to could be there. Most mortals don't seem to know about the goddess of destruction,
so I think she would have to destroy any ties to her life from when she was a mortal. I don't mean that she would have to destroy the Earth, even though that was a possibility I considered. Instead, I decided on her having to destroy things like anything that contained records or pictures of her, such as ones at the Ox King's house, or the records of her participating in the World Martial Arts tournaments. Because she has to give up any ties to her mortal life, she would also have to change her name to one fitting for a goddess of destruction. All of their names are alcohol puns, so I tried to find one that could reference Chi-Chi's name meaning milk. I ended up deciding on giving her the name Cavaletta, which is the Italian word for grasshopper. A grasshopper is a cocktail that has cream in it, and it also has creme de cacao in it. I chose it because of this since the cream part could reference her previous name meaning milk, and the creme de cacao part can reference her familiar Hochoko being named after hot chocolate. From here on out, I'm going to refer to Chi-Chi as Cavaletta. Anyway, once any ties to her previous mortal life are gone, she would go back to what used to be Beerus' planet, since she is now the goddess of destruction. Beerus would be reverted to a mortal. Before he leaves, she would thank him for everything and say her goodbyes. Once he is gone, she would finally get to begin doing her duties as Universe 7's goddess of destruction. Now that Cavaletta is the goddess of destruction, I wanted to do a brief epilogue talking about how Universe 7 would change under her rule. Unlike Beerus, Cavaletta isn't lazy, so she'd already be handling this job better than he did since she'd take it seriously.
Also, unlike Beerus,
she wouldn't destroy planets on a whim over things like their food not being good.
Instead, I see her working alongside the Grand Supreme Kai like she is supposed to so that her universe improves. When viewing potential planets that need destroyed,
she actually investigates them first. She weighs the intentions of a planet, so she isn't just seeing a world for what it is, but she's seeing it for what it could become.
I view the philosophy she has about destruction as being similar to what a phoenix is.
She is destroying what's old to make space for something better to take its place.
In her mind,
if something has the capacity to change for the better, it doesn't deserve its end. Essentially, she would be destroying worlds that won't change for the better. Under Beerus, Universe 7 was near the bottom in terms of mortal level. Under Cavaletta, I believe Universe 7 would start to become more stable, more balanced, less chaotic, and more respected by the other universes.
Planetary extinction events start to decline because the Supreme Kais would be intervening before these worlds collapse. Cavaletta would destroy parasitic or galaxy-eating species.
So, she would be wiping out beings like Frieza, Boo, or Moro who destroyed planets on a whim. Eventually, if she does interact with mortals and take on students like Beerus and Whis did,
magic might become more prevalent in Universe 7. After all, magic is the major ability that she uses,
so she would pass those teachings on, which students of hers could also pass these teachings on to others, and so on. If she keeps improving her universe like this, I could see the mortal level of her universe rising to be one of the stronger ones. Even Zeno and the Grand Minister would likely notice this eventually. As a brief side note, while Beerus is still alive as a mortal, Cavaletta could theoretically go and visit him if she ever wanted his advice on something, though Whis would obviously be an option for her to rely on for advice as well. Speaking of Whis, he would obviously continue to train Cavaletta so that she can one day master Ultra Instinct as well, which, unlike Beerus, she should be able to do so before she's been the goddess of destruction for at least 75 million years like he was. Then as for the other gods of destruction, I could see her earning their respects if she wouldn't have done things to anger the others like Beerus did by falling asleep during Xeno's All-Universe Hide-and-Seek tournament, like how we saw the gods of destruction spar in the manga. If she ever gets the chance, she might train with the other gods to learn more about them and to improve her skills. Through training with them, she might learn small lessons from them. Also, she might make propositions to hold regular meetings, such as monthly meetings, with the other destruction deities. They could talk about ethical debates for them, such as if they should ever intervene in mortal wars, if mercy can cause greater harm, or how to judge civilizations that are trapped in cycles. Now, as for her training with the other gods, we don't know a lot about some of them, so it's hard to say what she could learn from them. I was originally going to go over what each of them could teach her, but with us knowing so little about them, I decided to leave it vague and up to interpretation. Besides training with the other gods, I could also see her continuing to train around her universe to learn other magic techniques she might not have learned before. The only other thing I briefly wanted to discuss is Capaletta's relationship with Zeno and the Grand Minister. When it comes to Zeno, instead of fear, she'd likely treat him with a maternal politeness. I don't see her being one who would pander to Zeno, but she also doesn't challenge his authority, so she might be one of the few deities he actually finds fun to interact with. But as for the Grand Minister, he would respect her moral compass and discipline. After all, unlike Beerus, Capaletta was someone he could have detailed conversations with about the cosmic structure. Though, like all newly ascended gods, he'd likely monitor her extra closely at first. However, after she continues doing her job well, she would likely get the same treatment as the other gods of destruction. Perhaps she could even be somewhat treated as a peer eventually. Either way, with that all said and done, she could completely focus on her duties as Universe 7's new goddess of destruction.